The immortal power and blood essence swallowed up by the heaven refining diagram poured into Chu Feng's body and transformed into his vigorous cultivation. Under the infusion of massive immortal power, his cultivation level began to break through as fast as a rocket. In just a few breaths, Chu Feng broke through the 4th level one after another. His cultivation soared all the way, and finally broke through the shackles and entered the 10th level of fusion, the legendary ultimate level of fusion. The spiritual energy on the lonely peak rioted and poured into Chu Feng's body. The void roared, and the vast pressure swept across all directions, making the entire mountain tremble slightly. Shanyuan Menghua on the side had been stunned for a long time. He froze in place and opened his mouth wide enough to fit an egg. She watched with her own eyes as Chu Feng broke through the 5th level of realm in just a few breaths, soaring from the 5th level of combined body to the ultimate level of 10th level of combined body. This kind of breakthrough speed is simply unheard of. She has been practicing for decades and has never seen anyone able to continuously break through so easily, let alone step into the legendary ultimate state of integration in one step. At this moment, a dazzling golden light beam suddenly fell from the sky, completely covering Chu Feng's body. The boundless power of heaven and earth poured into his body like a tide, nourishing his body and soul. At the same time, the immortal power and blood essence in Yi Zhao's body had been completely swallowed up by the heaven refining diagram, and his body was completely shriveled into a withered corpse. In the end, it was completely crushed by the power of the heaven refining diagram, turned into little bits of fly ash, and dissipated between heaven and earth. The body died and the spirit disappeared, leaving no trace. On the mountain peak, only Chu Feng and Shanyuan Menghua were left. Chu Feng glanced at Shanyuan Menghua. He originally wanted to let Shanyuan Menghua return to the Lingxian imperial clan, but when he turned his eyes, he suddenly remembered something. Then, he turned his palm, and a jade pendant appeared in his palm. It was the jade pendant left to Shanyuan Tian by Shanyuan Tian's mother. Before, in the Lingxian Emperor clan, he was afraid of making too much noise, so he never moved the jade pendant. Now it is time to take a look at what the inheritance of the great emperor belonging to Shanyuan Tian is. Chu Feng raised his eyes and looked into the distance. A wisp of spiritual energy condensed on his fingertips and poured into the jade talisman that conveyed the message. Light cyan aura bloomed from the surface of the jade talisman, turning into a thin trace of light and dissipating. Shanyuan Yun is Su Qingyuan's best friend. If he wants Su Qingyuan's remnants to completely believe in Chu Feng's Shanyuan Tian's identity, Shanyuan Yun must be present. With this former best friend at his side to prove it, he could perform the scene of pretending to be Shanyuan Tian flawlessly. After doing all this, Chu Feng stood quietly on the top of the mountain, closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing. In just a few breaths, 2 figures came galloping on Lingyun. It was Shanyuan Yun and Yueying. Both of them looked in a hurry, obviously they came immediately after receiving the message. After seeing Chu Feng, Yueying couldn't help but ask. What about the evil immortal? Chu Feng glanced at the ashes remaining on the ground, and then replied lightly. He is already dead. Hearing this, Shanyuan Yun and Yueying took a breath together. An immortal died in Chu Feng's hands. The two of them looked at Chu Feng with a little fear. In the past, they only regarded Chu Feng as a junior, but now it seems that it is not as simple as they imagined. At this moment, the same thought came to both of them. Chu Feng must be related to the immortal world. Seeing the jade pendant in Chu Feng's hand, Shanyuan Yun was the first to ask. You sent a message to summon us too, but something happened? Chu Feng held the jade pendant in his palm and explained his thoughts straight to the point. I want to activate this jade pendant and explore what the inheritance is. Hearing this, Shanyuan Yun could not help but tremble. Zhuan Yuanshan's mother's name is Su Qingyuan. She was originally asked to take care of Zhuan Yuanshan, but now, she has been taken care of by Zhuan Yuanshan to death. He even recognized the enemy who killed Shanyuan Tian as his master. However, this strange feeling in her heart was quickly suppressed. Chu Feng was so powerful that she could not even think of any resistance. What's more, Chu Feng can kill the evil immortal at will, and the other party's methods may not be as good as those of his former best friend. Okay, I will definitely cooperate. Chu Feng nodded slightly and took out a jade bottle from the storage ring, which contained Shanyuan Tian's blood essence. He first took out a drop of the essence and blood, flicked his fingertips, and the essence and blood turned into a red light and blended into his body. BRBR in an instant, Chu Feng's figure and appearance began to change rapidly, and he was perfectly reproduced into Xianyuan Tian's appearance, and even his subtle expressions were imitated perfectly. BRBR, no one would be able to tell that it was a disguise if they didn't examine the soul carefully. BRBR, just in case, he still disguised Xianyuan Tian's aura. BRBR, after doing all this, Chu Feng took out a drop of Xianyuan Tian's blood essence again, and slowly dripped the essence blood onto the jade pendant in the palm of his hand. BRBR, the moment the essence and blood touched the jade pendant, a burst of brilliance suddenly erupted from the surface of the jade pendant. BRBR, the originally hidden restriction was triggered instantly, and the power of the immortal emperor that overwhelmed the heavens burst out from the jade pendant, sweeping across the entire lonely peak in an instant and sweeping thousands of miles around. BRBR, this imperial power was like the coming of heaven, causing the surrounding rocks to collapse, all the clouds and mists to collapse, and the air to freeze. BRBR, Chu Feng's body suddenly shook, the energy and blood all over his body surged, and his soul felt a strong sense of oppression. BRBR, if he had not reached the ultimate level of cultivation, he would have been forced to the ground by this imperial power. BRBR, he finally understood why Su Qingyuan specifically stated that this jade pendant could only be opened after Xianyuan Tian broke through the void refining realm. BRBR, the coercion of the immortal emperor that just broke out, if the monks below the void refining realm are unable to withstand this power at all, their souls will be shattered in an instant, and they will die on the spot. BRBR, just as the emperor's power gradually converged, a slender and beautiful shadow condensed in the void. BRBR, it was a phantom of a woman, dressed in a bright red palace dress, with fluttering skirts like flowing clouds and flying sleeves. BRBR, her appearance is peerless, and her every frown and smile carry a soul-stirring charm. She is so beautiful that it seems as if all the brilliance in the world has gathered in her. BRBR, even if it is just a lingering thought, it cannot hide his stunning appearance, which is enough to make all men in the world fall in love with him. BRBR, Chu Feng stood where he was, looking at the beautiful shadow in midair. A stormy wave suddenly arose deep in his soul, and his body trembled slightly, almost unnoticeably. BRBR, he recognized the person in front of him at a glance. It was his sworn enemy in the fairy world in his previous life, Su Qingyuan. BRBR, he never thought that the mother of Xianyuan Tian who was killed by him would be his former mortal enemy Su Qingyuan. BRBR, but even though his heart was in turmoil, Chu Feng's face did not show the slightest difference, and he still maintained Xianyuan Tian's expression. BRBR, his eyes held just the right amount of yearning and excitement, and his acting skills were perfect without any flaws. BRBR, Su Qingyuan Canyon slowly opened her eyes in midair, and first glanced below. When she saw Xianyuan Yin standing beside her, her beautiful eyes couldn't help but tremble. BRBR Xiaoyun. BRBR, when her eyes fell on Chu Feng, who had transformed into Xianyuan Tian, her body suddenly trembled with excitement, her throat rolled slightly, and a hint of tenderness instantly filled her usually cold eyes. BRBR, tears were welling up in her eyes and almost bursting out of her eyes. BRBR, Tianer, my Tianer. BRBR, seeing this, Chu Feng immediately entered the role, tears instantly filled his eyes, and he shouted to Su Qingyuan with a choked sob. BRBR, mother. BRBR, when Su Qingyuan heard this call, she could no longer suppress the excitement in her heart. Her residual thoughts turned into a white light and instantly fell in front of Chu Feng. She stretched out her slender arms and hugged Chu Feng tightly in her arms. BRBR, the soft body is close, and the faint fragrance of the emperor lingers on the tip of the nose. BRBR, Chu Feng's whole body was stiff and he was completely confused. BRBR, he had never thought that he could have such close physical contact with the immortal emperor, his mortal enemy in his previous life, and he was at a loss for a moment. BRBR, Su Qingyuan held him tightly in her arms, as if she wanted to integrate 8 tens of thousands of years of longing into this hug. BRBR, her fingertips gently stroked Chu Feng's hair, her voice choked with sobs that she couldn't utter a single word. BRBR, a long while. BRBR, Chu Feng was almost suffocated in the hug, and his chest was so tight that he finally regained consciousness. BRBR, he moved his body and asked what he had already prepared in his heart. BRBR, where have you been all these years? Why haven't you come back to me? I miss you so much. BRBR, hearing this, Xianyuan Yin couldn't help but get goosebumps all over his body. BRBR, Lian Yueying and Xianyuan Minghua's mouths twitched slightly, not even looking. BRBR, Xianyuan Minghua looked up at the sky. Before, she had only heard that Chu Feng had transformed into the appearance of Xianyuan Tiandi. BRBR, seeing it with my own eyes today, I still find it incredible. BRBR, it's not her fault that her tribe members couldn't see any flaws even if she was right in front of them. BRBR, on the side, Yueying suppressed the absurd feeling in her heart and silently watched Chu Feng act. BRBR, hearing Chu Feng's inquiry, Su Qingyuan reluctantly let go of Chu Feng. BRBR the gentleness on her beautiful face gradually faded away, replaced by a trace of hatred, and her eyes became cold. BRBR, it's not that I don't want to come back to you, but I can't help myself. BRBR after a pause, she continued. BRBR back then, Empress Shi Huang and I went to the ancient secret realm to explore opportunities. Deep in the secret realm, we unexpectedly found the secret technique of formation among the 9-character secret techniques, BRBR, but Empress Shi Huang was greedy and coveted the secret technique. She suddenly attacked me at the exit of the secret realm, BRBR, I was caught off guard. Then, she was forced into the void space. BRBR the void space is a forbidden place in the immortal world that even the Emperor can't escape from. Even I can't tear down the Bari. And return to the immortal world, let alone come to the lower realm to see you. BRBR after hearing these words, Chu Feng felt a huge wave of emotion in his heart, and his eyes were full of shock. BRBR he has already obtained the secret technique of running characters, so he naturally knows the power of the 9-character secret technique. BRBR but I never expected that I would encounter the second secret technique so soon. BRBR the secret technique of Jinzi? BRBR hearing this, Su Qingyuan looked to the west. BRBR I exhausted my source, sealed a trace of my residual thoughts in this natal Emperor Jade, and sent the Jade pendant back to the lower realm for you. BRBR although Empress Shi Huang attacked me sneakily, I was not defenseless. BRBR I have passed down the complete inheritance of the secret technique of formation characters into the holy land of the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas in the western region of this world. You can naturally find the secret technique of formation characters when you go to the holy land of ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas. BRBR hiss. BRBR even Chu Feng couldn't help but take a breath. BRBR he never thought that Su Qingyuan actually kept a hand, and the secret technique of the formation word was not taken away by Empress Shi Huang. BRBR and it was left to the Emperor Shanyuan Tian. The inheritance turned out to be the formation secret technique among the 9-character secret techniques. BRBR in order to make the play more realistic, Chu Feng suppressed the shock in his heart, and a trace of determination flashed in his eyes. BRBR I will immediately set off to the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas in the western region to find the formation character secret technique and rescue you. BRBR when Su Qingyuan saw this, her eyes were filled with relief, but she quickly shook her head. BRBR Tianer, you must not be in a hurry for success. BRBR the void space is extremely dangerous. Unless you have mastered both the secret technique of line characters and the secret technique of formation characters, you must never step into the void space even half a step before your cultivation level truly enters the fairyland. BRBR after hearing Su Qingyuan's remaining thoughts, Chu Feng pretended to obey on the surface, but in his heart there was no emotion, and he was even secretly happy. BRBR he personally beheaded the son of his mortal enemy, but now he is regarded as his own son by Su Qingyuan. By got the clue to the inheritance of the secret technique of Zhenzi. BRBR thinking of this, he subconsciously glanced at Su Qingyuan's peach butt and murmured in his heart. BRBR Su Qingyuan, when I find the secret technique of Zhenzi, I will definitely go to the void space and thank you. That is, you are just a junior, and you are still a woman. How can you suppress everyone in the clan, and how can you deal with the eager eyes of other forces in Zhongzhou? BRBR now that our Lingxian imperial clan is in crisis, we must have senior elders to take charge of the overall situation. How can we leave it to a little girl? BRBR in their view, Shanyuan Menghua has devoted himself to cultivation for many years and knows nothing about the government affairs of the clan. BRBR young and inexperienced, you have no ability to support the Lingxian imperial clan in such a critical moment. BRBR at this moment, the great elder, who was sitting in the first place on the left, slowly stood up. BRBR he is the oldest and strongest among the existing elders of the Lingxian Emperor clan, and he has a high prestige in the clan. BRBR his eyes fell on Shanyuan Menghua, with a hint of condescending arrogance. BRBR Menghua, I know that you have good intentions and want to share your father's worries, but the major events in the clan are so complex that you alone cannot control them. BRBR in my opinion, it is most appropriate for me to take over the position of clan leader temporarily. BRBR as soon as he finished speaking, the second elder also stood up immediately, echoing the words of the first elder. BRBR he has always advanced and retreated together with the great elder. Now that he saw the great elder taking the lead in attacking, he immediately stood up and waved the flag and shouted. BRBR what the great elder said is absolutely true. The great elder and I are familiar with all the affairs of the clan. With the two of us co-presiding over the affairs of the clan, we will definitely be able to stabilize the situation. BRBR elders, you must have no opinion on this, right? BRBR hearing this, the other elders nodded in agreement. BRBR that's right, the first elder and the second elder are highly respected, and it's perfect for them to take charge of the overall situation. BRBR Menghua, you should just practice with peace of mind. Major events in the clan are indeed beyond your control. BRBR if the Lingxian imperial clan is in danger today, and only the first elder and the second elder can stabilize people's hearts. BRBR these elders usually rely on the first elder and the second elder, but now that they see the two expressing their stance, they naturally fall in line, completely ignoring the clan leader's token in Xianyuan Minghua's hand. BRBR Xianyuan Minghua's pretty face instantly turned cold as he listened to the crowd's echoes. BRBR, Great Elder, are you acting like this because you want to seize the opportunity to seize power and usurp the position of clan leader? BRBR the Great Elder's face darkened, he waved his hands in feigning annoyance, and said righteously. BRBR Menghua, what are you talking about? BRBR I am devoted to the Lingxian clan, so how can I seize power? BRBR everything is for the sake of the overall situation. After the ancestor returns, all matters will naturally be decided by the ancestor. We are just worried that you are young and energetic and cannot control the situation. BRBR the second elder also immediately stepped forward, straightened his face, and reprimanded in the posture of an elder. BRBR, we are your elders after all, how can you be so ignorant of the rules? BRBR before Xianyuan Menghua could speak again, a fierce look flashed in the great elder's eyes. BRBR he suddenly circulated the peak spiritual power of the fusion realm in his body, and the vast spiritual energy burst out instantly, heading straight towards Xianyuan Menghua to suppress it. BRBR Xianyuan Menghua roots unable to resist the pressure of the great elder. She was instantly suppressed and became stiff and unable to move. BRBR her face turned red and her breathing became difficult. BRBR upon seeing this, the great elder gave a smug smile and bet her right hand in the air. The suction force exploded instantly, sucking directly towards the patriarch's token in Xianyuan Menghua's hand. BRBR Xianyuan Menghua tried her best to hold on to the token, but in the face of the absolute strength gap, all struggles were in vain. BRBR the next second, the patriarch's token broke away from her. The control fell into the palm of the great elder. BRBR the great elder played with the clan leader's token in his hand and looked at Xianyuan Menghua who could not move, with a hint of teasing in his tone. BRBR Menghua, I know that you are feeling wronged, but there is nothing you can do about it. BRBR when the ancestor returns, if you feel it is unfair, you can complain to the ancestor. BRBR as for this clan leader's token, it is related to the power of our Lingxian Emperor clan, so it will be temporarily handed over to me for safekeeping. BRBR you are going too far. BRBR Xianyuan Menghua was shaking with anger, and her eyes turned red instantly. BRBR the crystal tears rolled in her eyes, but they stubbornly refused to fall. BRBR she tried her best to break away from the pressure, but the gap in strength was as big as the sky. She was helpless and could only watch as her clan leader's token was taken away. BRBR at this critical moment, a cold voice suddenly came from outside the ancestral palace door. BRBR, are you worthy of holding the clan leader's token? BRBR everyone followed the sound and saw Chu Feng walking in from outside the door. BRBR the moment all the elders in the hall saw the person clearly, their pupils suddenly shrank. BRBR, Chu Feng, why did he appear here? BRBR in their hearts, the current tragic situation of the Lingxian clan was all caused by Chu Feng. BRBR if Chu Feng hadn't pretended to be Xianyuan Tian and disrupted the Lingxian imperial clan, BRBR their clan leader would not have joined forces with the evil immortals to destroy them. Kangla. An imperial clan. BRBR how could the clan have died if they had not gone to find the evil immortal? BRBR Chu Feng glanced at the excited elders in the hall and said in a cold tone, BRBR how dare a group of bereaved dogs scream in front of me? BRBR after the words fell, he looked directly at the great elder who was holding the patriarch's token tightly. BRBR hand over the token. BRBR the great elder was completely angered by Chu Feng's contempt. His face was ashen and he smiled in anger. BRBR Chu Feng, you destroyed my spirit immortal prodigy and killed the supreme elder of our clan, and now you dare to break into our spirit immortal imperial clan alone. I think you are impatient. BRBR today I will let you bury you here to comfort the spirits of the deceased of our spirit immortal imperial clan in heaven. BRBR before he finished speaking, the great elder no longer hesitated and violently activated his spiritual power, and the power at the peak of the fusion realm burst out without reservation. BRBR his right hand condensed into a huge spiritual palm, and he slapped Chu Feng's head fiercely, hoping to kill Chu Feng directly with one blow to avoid future troubles. BRBR a strong wind swept across the hall, tearing the air apart and making a harsh sound. BRBR all the elders thought that Chu Feng would definitely die, and there was a look of pleasure in their eyes. BRBR however, just when the great elder's spiritual palm was about to hit Chu Feng, a coercion that was 10,000 times more powerful than the great elder suddenly swept in from outside the palace door and enveloped the entire ancestral palace in an instant. BRBR immediately afterwards, Yueying walked into the main hall. BRBR with a cold face, she waved her jade hand gently, and a white light of absolute power in the Mahayana period burst out instantly, directly hitting the great elder's spiritual palm. BRBR bang, BRBR with a loud noise, the great elders. Spiritual palm, which he had devoted all his strength to, instantly shattered, and a terrifying backlash swept through his body. BRBR the great elder had no time to react, and was blasted away like a kite with its string broken. BRBR his body hit the jade wall of the main hall heavily, directly breaking through the thick wall and flying out of the ancestral hall. BRBR everyone saw that after the great elder landed, his chest was deeply sunken and several sternums were shattered. BRBR he spurted out a mouthful of blood and lay dying on the ground. He didn't even have the strength to move a finger. He might die at any time. BRBR you traitor, BRBR everyone's eyes widened and they all looked at Yuang. BRBR one move, just one move, seriously injured the great elder. BRBR I am afraid that there is only one supreme elder in the clan, Yuang. If she takes action, who will be her opponent? BRBR it's a pity that this supreme elder has already become Chu Feng's person. BRBR Yu Ying's face was cold, and she ignored the seriously injured and dying great elder. BRBR she grabbed it with her jade hand, and the clan leader's token was wrapped in spiritual energy and flew into her hand. BRBR holding the clan leader's token, she glanced at the elders in the palace. BRBR the position of leader of the Lingxian imperial clan will be succeeded by Xianyuan Menghua. Who is in favor of it and who is against it? All the elders were suppressed by the pressure of the Mahayana period. They lowered their heads and remained silent. No one dared to say a word no for fear of ending up like the great elder. BRBR I object. The second elder stood up bravely. How can you, an outsider, interfere in the affairs of our Lingxian imperial clan? BRBR as soon as he finished speaking, a trace of murderous intent flashed in Yuang's eyes, and she immediately took action. BRBR a bright white light burst out from her fingertips and went straight towards the second elder. BRBR the second elder's expression changed drastically, and he quickly used his spiritual energy to condense a thick spiritual barrier, trying to resist the blow. BRBR but his defense was as fragile as paper in the face of the power of the Mahayana stage. BRBR the white light easily penetrated the spiritual barrier and hit his chest directly. BRBR poof, BRBR with a muffled sound, the second elder's body was instantly pierced. BRBR he lowered his head with difficulty and looked at his chest. BRBR before he could speak, his life was cut off. BRBR he fell straight to the ground, completely lifeless. BRBR even until he died, his eyes were wide open and full of disbelief. BRBR he never expected that Yuang would be so cruel and kill him directly in public. BRBR when all the elders in the palace saw this scene, they were completely frightened out of their wits. BRBR she is crazy. She really dares to kill people in public. She is trying to bloodbath my Lingxian imperial clan. BRBR I agree, I completely agree with Fairy Menghua taking over as the patriarch. BRBR same for me. BRBR Yuang walked up to Xianyuan Menghua and handed the patriarch's token into her hand. BRBR from now on, if anyone dares to disobey, I will kill him. BRBR as soon as these words came out, there was a sudden silence in the hall. BRBR all the elders were silent and did not dare to breathe. BRBR Xianyuan Menghua subconsciously looked at Chu Feng. Unexpectedly, he helped her calm the situation in the end. BRBR when she thought of Chu Feng's identity, she pursed her thin lips tightly and murmured in her heart, there seems to be nothing wrong with this. BRBR before this, the Lingxian imperial clan and the Kanglin imperial clan could be said to be fighting to the death. BRBR after offending Emperor Dan, she could imagine the fate of the Lingxian emperor clan with her toes. BRBR now it is different. Although the Lingxian emperor clan has become a vassal of Chu Feng, it is also a vassal of the Dan emperor. BRBR it's hard to say, other imperial clans will not be able to ask for such an opportunity in the future. BRBR thinking of this, the resentment towards Chu Feng in her heart had dissipated unconsciously. BRBR Master, BRBR Western Region. BRBR the land is vast, and amid the rolling yellow sand, a magnificent city stands majestically, just like the pure land of the Buddha in the yellow sand. This is the Buddha Flame City. BRBR as the largest city on the border of the Western region, and the only way to reach the ancient holy land of 10,000 Buddhas and cave, Buddha Flame City gathers monks from all over the world all year round. BRBR the streets in the city are crisscrossed, with people coming and going, and noises coming and going. BRBR Chu Feng stepped into Buddha Flame City alone, suppressed his aura to the Qi refining realm, and blended in with the crowd, just like an ordinary casual cultivator, inconspicuous. BRBR Foyan City is the only place to go to the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas, and it is also the best place to get information. BRBR passing through the bustling main street, Chu Feng walked straight into the most prestigious Wangfula Inn in the city. BRBR this inn is located in the center of Foyan City. The lobby on the first floor is extremely spacious. There are dozens of tables and chairs. It is almost full at the moment. BRBR Chu Feng found a quiet place near a corner and sat down, casually ordered a pot of tea, then closed his eyes and concentrated. BRBR, it looks like he is taking a rest, but in fact he pricks up his ears, listens carefully to the conversations of the diners around him, and absorbs all the news related to the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas. BRBR, have you heard that the Buddhist conference at the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas will officially start in half a month? This is a grand event that happens once in a century in the western regions. BRBR, the entire western region and even Zhongzhou's heaven, everyone is rushing here. Who doesn't know that by becoming a Buddhist disciple of the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas, you can enter the Holy Land, obtain the inheritance of the ancient Buddha Emperor, and reach heaven in one step? Not everyone can participate. BRBR, that's right, monks who are not disciples of Buddhism and have no innate Buddhist connections are not even qualified to participate. BRBR, I heard that the rewards of this Buddhist conference are far greater. In the past, there seemed to be an ancient secret technique hidden in the Holy Land, which attracted numerous Buddhist cultivators, and even Zhao Xuelian temple sent disciples to fight for it. BRBR Chu Feng picked up the teacup and took a sip of tea. BRBR, the Buddhist conference of the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas is about to begin. Only those who are Buddhist cultivators and have Buddhist connections can participate. Only those who have been canonized as Buddhists can enter the holy place. BRBR, this also means that if he wants to find the secret of the formation, he must first pass the Buddhist conference and become a Buddhist recognized by the 10,000 Buddhas ancient cave. BRBR, while Chu Feng was silently sorting out the news, there was a sudden sound of slight footsteps at the door of the inn lobby, and two graceful female figures stepped into the Buddhawang Tower. BRBR, in an instant, the originally noisy and bustling inn lobby became eerily quiet for a moment. BRBR, almost all the monks looked towards the door, with surprise flashing in their eyes. BRBR, the leading woman, is tall and straight, plump and beautiful, with graceful curves. She is wearing a plain moon-white Buddhist robe, with fluttering sleeves that are not stained by dust. BRBR, her skin is as white as jade, her eyebrows are slender, the bridge of her nose is straight, and her pink lips are not dotted. BRBR, a face that could be said to captivate a country. It has both the sanctity and coldness of Buddhist cultivators and the gentleness of a woman. She is like an immortal Buddha who came out of the pure land of the Buddhist kingdom. BRBR, there is a faint trace of Buddha's light lingering around the body, making people dare not blaspheme easily. BRBR, the woman following her is slightly petite, with a pink and jade-like shape, and a pair of big eyes that are as smart as water. BRBR, the woman looks childish, but the weight of her chest is no less than that of the person next to her, and it is equally eye-catching. BRBR, both of them are Buddhist girls from the western regions. They came to Buddha Flame City this time for the same purpose as Chu Feng. They were going to the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas to participate in the Buddhist conference, compete for the position of Buddhist disciples, and explore the secrets of formations in the Holy Land. BRBR, these two stunning Buddhist women appeared together, and naturally became the focus of the audience instantly. BRBR, even Chu Feng, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, subconsciously raised his eyes and glanced at the two of them a few more times. BRBR, Qing Fan and Ling Tide ignored the scorching gazes around them and walked straight to an empty table diagonally opposite Chu Feng and sat down. BRBR, Lingxi's temperament is lively and lively. After sitting down, she couldn't contain the eagerness in her heart. BRBR, senior sister, what did you say about the word formation? BRBR, as soon as Lingxi finished speaking, Qingfan's face suddenly darkened. BRBR, silence. BRBR, there are many people in the inn, and everyone's attention is focused on the two sisters at this moment. BRBR, everyone around them seemed to be talking, but in fact many people were secretly paying attention to their movements. BRBR, if by such a huge opportunity, others hear about the secret technique of the formation word, it will definitely cause endless trouble, and may even lead to death. BRBR, Lingxi shrank her neck instantly when her senior sister glared at her, and quickly covered her mouth, not daring to speak louder. BRBR, she looked around and saw that many people were looking at them, so she quickly leaned close to Qingfan's ear and asked in a low voice, in a voice that only the two of them could hear. BRBR, senior sister, is the map of the secret technique really in Jialan Temple? BRBR, before Qingfan could answer, Lingxi tilted her head again and muttered in a low voice. BRBR, if the map is really in Jialan Temple, then the people in Jialan Temple may have hidden the map long ago. BRBR, Chu Feng, who was sitting diagonally across the corner, his eyes instantly froze when he heard the word formation from Lingxi's mouth. BRBR, this time he traveled thousands of miles to the western regions for the secret technique of formation characters. BRBR, unexpectedly, these two people are also looking for the secret of the formation, and they also know the whereabouts of the map of the secret of the formation. It was a young man, wearing a monk's robe, with a handsome face, gentle eyebrows, and a faint smile on his lips. BRBR his figure is slender and straight, and his movements have the indifference of a monk. BRBR this person is Xianchen, the senior brother of Jialan Temple. BRBR when Xianchen saw Qing Fan and Lingxi, an imperceptible light flashed in his eyes, which he quickly concealed. BRBR he quickly stepped forward and clasped his hands together. BRBR the two junior sisters came from afar and were not welcomed at a distance. Please forgive me. Master has ordered me to wait here for a long time. BRBR Qing Fan nodded slightly and returned the salute with his hands clasped together. BRBR senior brother, you're welcome. I hope you'll forgive me for disturbing your temple this time. BRBR Lingxi also quickly put his hands together and saluted, and shouted sweetly. BRBR, hello, senior brother. BRBR Xianchen's eyes swept across the two people's faces, and the smile at the corner of his mouth became a little deeper. BRBR his eyes stayed on Qing Fan for a moment, and the graceful curves looming under the plain Buddha clothes made his heart beat faster involuntarily. BRBR after just 100 million glances, he quickly looked away, and the smile on his face remained as gentle as before, showing no signs of anything strange. BRBR I have ordered people to prepare the meditation room, please come with me. BRBR Xianchen turned sideways and made a gesture of invitation. BRBR Jialan Temple is located in a remote place, and it is not as good as the pure cultivation place of Fanning Jingzong. I hope the two junior sisters will not find it objectionable. BRBR hearing this, Qing Fan shook his head slightly. BRBR senior brother, you are serious. People who practice don't value external things. BRBR Xianchen smiled slightly, turned around and led the way. BRBR he walked slowly and introduced Jialan Temple to the two of T. BRBR the three of them crossed the Bluestone Road, bypassed several palaces, and came to a quiet courtyard. BRBR at the end of the courtyard are three Zen rooms side by side, which exude a sense of elegance. BRBR Xianchen stopped, turned to look at the two of them, and smiled. BRBR this is the meditation room prepared for the two junior sisters. The one on the left belongs to junior sister Qing Fan, the one on the right belongs to junior sister Lingxi, and the one in the middle is the living room for the two junior sisters to enjoy tea and relax. BRBR if you need anything, come to me at any time. BRBR Qing Fan looked around and nodded with satisfaction. BRBR senior brother, you have taken the trouble. BRBR Xianchen opened the door to the living room and poured a cup of tea for each of them. BRBR if you two junior sisters don't mind, you can sit in the living room for a while and drink a cup of tea to relieve your fatigue. BRBR this tea is the Bodhi tea produced in the mountain behind Jialan Temple. It clears the mind and improves the eyesight. It also has the effect of nourishing the spiritual power of the monks. BRBR as soon as he finished speaking, Lingxi had already started drinking by himself. BRBR Qing Fan glanced at Lingxi, then at the tea soup in the cup, and hesitated for a moment. BRBR she has always been cautious and never drinks tea from outsiders easily in a strange place. BRBR but Xianchen was the senior brother of Jialan Temple, and their masters were from the same sect, so they finally let down their guard. BRBR she picked up the teacup and took a sip. BRBR the tea soup is slightly bitter at first, then turns into a sweetness, sliding down the throat into the abdomen, bringing with it a warm breath. BRBR the breath was gentle and long, nourishing her meridians and making her spiritual energy slightly active. BRBR good tea. BRBR the smile at the corner of Xuanchen's mouth became a little deeper. He turned around and walked to the incense burner in front of the Buddha statue. He took out a new piece of sandalwood, lit it and inserted it into the incense burner. BRBR the sandalwood is different from the ordinary, with a hint of sweetness. BRBR this is a Zen incense specially made by Jialan Temple. It can help stabilize the Buddha's mind and is of great benefit to practice. BRBR Qing Fan and Lingxi didn't think much about it, and Lingxi even took a deep breath. BRBR it really smells good, even better than the fragrance from our Fanning pure sect. BRBR Qing Fan nodded slightly. She closed her eyes and felt the Zen fragrance entering her body. She felt that her mind was particularly peaceful, and the fatigue from traveling for days had dissipated a bit. BRBR Xianchen sat with the two of them in the living room for a while, then stood up and left. BRBR you two junior sisters, take a rest first, I will arrange a fast meal. BRBR as if thinking of something, Qing Fan Duo asked. BRBR senior brother, can you see a handsome casual cultivator in the temple today? BRBR hearing this, Xianchen immediately thought of Chu Feng. BRBR Chu Feng is so handsome and beautiful that it is difficult for people to forget him. BRBR there is indeed a casual cultivator staying in our temple for the night. Is there any problem? BRBR hearing this, Qing Fan couldn't help but narrowed her eyes. As she expected, the other person left first and wanted to come to Jialan Temple. BRBR nothing, please excuse me, senior brother. BRBR Xianchen left, and only Chiyang Fan and Ling Tide were left in the living room. BRBR Lingxi picked up the teacup, took another sip, leaned back on the chair, and let out a long breath. BRBR, senior sister, what's wrong with you? BRBR Chiyang Fan looked at the Bodhi tree outside the window and his voice was cold. BRBR, the man we met in the inn is also at Jialan Temple, and he got here before us. BRBR here. ING this, Lingxi finally showed a trace of nervousness. BRBR, then should we go find the map now? BRBR however, Chiyang Fan shook his head. BRBR senior brother Shanshan is too enthusiastic. If we leave now, we will definitely attract his attention. Let's wait until the night is late. BRBR after a pause, she continued. BRBR Jialan Temple is so big, that person doesn't even know that the map is hidden in the Sutra Pavilion. Even if he wants to look for it, it's not that easy to find. BRBR, it's late at night. BRBR Chu Feng's figure shuttled through the night. He went from the pagoda in front of the Jialan Temple, to the medicine master's hall, to the relic stupa in the backyard, and finally to the secret warehouse of the meditation room. He spent half a day exploring the hidden treasures on the outside of the Jialan Temple, but he never found the map showing the secret location of the ancient cave formation of 10,000 Buddhas. BRBR some of those places were filled with spiritual stones, some were filled with elixirs, and some enshrined ancient Buddhist scriptures, but there was no map he was looking for. BRBR after several searches to no avail, Chu Feng set his sights on the Sutra Pavilion of Jialan Temple. BRBR the Sutra Pavilion is a 3-story pavilion. This is where Jialan Temple stores ancient Buddhist scrolls and sect secrets. BRBR Chu Feng was unable to take action during the day, so he could only wait for nightfall before sneaking in. BRBR he lurked on an ancient tree outside the Sutra Pavilion and restrained all his aura. BRBR after midnight, the elder on duty yawned, turned around and walked into the side room next to him. Chu Feng's eyes flashed, and his figure disappeared instantly. BRBR the secret of calligraphy. BRBR his figure silently entered the Sutra Pavilion and gently closed the door. BRBR the interior of the Sutra Pavilion was much larger than he imagined. BRBR rows of tall bookshelves are neatly arranged, extending from the floor to the ceiling, filled with various Buddhist scriptures, classics, and scrolls. BRBR the air is filled with the faint fragrance of ink, mixed with the smell of old paper. BRBR the moonlight seeped through the gaps in the glazed tiles on the roof of the pavilion, casting patches of mottled light and shadow on the ground. BRBR Chu Feng glanced at the rows of bookshelves and quickly browsed the labels on them. BRBR the Diamond Sutra, the Surangama Sutra, the Lotus Sutra, the Mahaprajna Sutra. BRBR these are all Buddhist classics, and there is nothing he is looking for. BRBR Chu Feng frowned slightly, but from the corner of his eye, he suddenly caught a glimpse of something placed in the center. It was a merit box. BRBR next to the merit box, there is a wooden sign with a line of large characters. 10,000 spiritual stones can obtain the map of the Holy Land of 10,000 Buddha's ancient cave. The corner of Chu Feng's mouth twitched slightly. He never thought that Jialan Temple would blatantly sell maps. BRBR and the price is clearly marked and sold here. BRBR he spent half a day searching every corner of Jialan Temple, and the map turned out to be right here, in the center of the first floor. BRBR more importantly, the merit box turned out to be a storage treasure. BRBR his spiritual consciousness searched around, but found no one. The entire Sutra Pavilion was empty except for him. BRBR there is no one guarding it, only a merit box and a wooden sign, as if to say, if you want to buy something, just invest money, and you can take it after you invest it. BRBR Chu Feng hesitated for a moment, but took out 10,000 spirit stones from the ring and put them into the merit box. BRBR the spirit stone fell into the box and made a crisp sound, which was particularly clear in the silent Sutra Pavilion. BRBR as he cast, he paid attention to the movements around him. BRBR the moment the last spiritual stone fell into the merit box, the wooden sign next to the merit box suddenly fell over. BRBR after the wooden sign fell, Chu Feng noticed that there was an arrow behind the wooden sign, and the direction of the arrow pointed directly behind him. BRBR Chu Feng suddenly turned around and looked behind him. BRBR I saw a scroll hanging directly above the door of the Sutra Pavilion, in the gap between the ceiling and the lintel. BRBR the scroll was all yellow and looked old. It was tied with a red rope and hung on a copper nail on the wall. BRBR Chu Feng raised his hand, and a burst of spiritual power flew out, sucking the scroll into his hand. BRBR he unfolded the scroll and looked at it. BRBR it was a map, marking the terrain of the 10,000 Buddha's ancient cave, as well as a location marked with a red circle. BRBR beside the red circle, there is a line of small words written, the secret technique of formation words. BRBR array secret technique map. BRBR Chu Feng's pupil shrank and his breathing became a little faster. BRBR finally found it. BRBR his throat rolled, and he carefully put the map into the ring. BRBR just as he was about to leave, he turned around and glanced at the merit box. BRBR the next moment, he waved his sleeves, and the merit box was put into the ring. BRBR after doing all this, Chu Feng turned around and walked out of the Sutra Pavilion, preparing to leave Jialan Temple. BRBR however, the moment he was about to step out of Jialan Temple, a white figure appeared in front of him. BRBR it was a woman, wearing a plain white dress, with fluttering skirts that were not stained by dust. BRBR she wore a curtain hat on her head, and the white gauze hanging down covered her face, making her appearance unclear. BRBR however, Chu Feng could tell at a glance that the other party was definitely a stunning beauty. BRBR because her figure is extremely plump, curvy, and convex at the front and back, even through the plain white dress, you can see the amazing proportions, outlining a beautiful arc in the moonlight. BRBR she stood there, like a statue carved from white jade, but with a charm that made people unable to take their eyes away. BRBR the woman held a white pure vase in her hand, with a green willow branch inserted in the vase. Her eyes fell on Chu Feng through the curtain and hat. BRBR the next moment, a majestic pressure instantly enveloped him. BRBR Chu Feng's pupils shrank and his step stopped abruptly. BRBR the 8th level of the Mahayana period. BRBR the alarm bells rang in his heart, and a strong sense of crisis surged into his heart. BRBR although I don't know who the other party is, the appearance at this time and place is definitely not a coincidence. BRBR Chu Feng did not hesitate at all, his spiritual power surged crazily, light shone under his feet, and a huge formation phantom suddenly old from his feet. BRBR the stars have changed. BRBR the difference in strength between the two is too big. He wants to strike first before the other party takes action. BRBR however, the woman in white just raised her hand gently and activated the purification bottle in her hand. BRBR the willow branch swept away, and a ray of emerald green light burst out from the willow branch, directly hitting Chu Feng's star-shifting formation. BRBR crack, BRBR the array pattern suddenly collapsed. BRBR those runes were like paper in front of the emerald green light, shattering inch by inch, turning into light spots all over the sky and dissipating. BRBR immediately afterwards, a field spread from the woman in white, covering 1,000 feet in an instant. BRBR there is a strange force in that field that suppresses the operation of all formations. BRBR Chu Feng could clearly feel that in this domain, he could no longer condense formation patterns or arrange any formations. BRBR a look of shock flashed in his eyes. The other party actually predicted his movements and even had a way to restrain him. BRBR thinking of this, he no longer hesitated, his body suddenly retreated, and he used all his strength to escape from this place. BRBR almost instantly, it appeared hundreds of feet away. BRBR strong fight? BRBR the other party is at the 8th level of the Mahayana stage, and he has only merged to the extreme state. There is a big difference in the state. How to fight? BRBR and the opponent has the means to restrain him, so he will never be his opponent in a head-on fight. BRBR the wind is blowing hard. BRBR however, as soon as he made a move, the woman in white moved. BRBR she raised her hand and struck out with a palm. Wherever the wind of the palm passed, the void shattered inch by inch, revealing pitch-black nothingness. BRBR a deep ravine was plowed into the ground, and the gravel was swept into the wind of the palm. And was instantly crushed into powder. BRBR seeing this, Chu Feng knew that he could not escape, and immediately activated the Heaven Refining Diagram. BRBR buzz, BRBR a phantom of a picture scroll unfolded from his palm and stood in front of him. BRBR the picture scroll exudes the terrifying aura of swallowing up the heaven and earth and refining all things. The wind from the palm of the woman in white hit the picture scroll, and the power was swallowed up by the heaven refining picture. It dissipated silently like a mud cow entering the sea. BRBR but before Chu Feng could react, the woman in white appeared behind him instantly and slapped him on the back of the heart. BRBR poof, BRBR Chu Feng spurted out a mouthful of blood and flew directly out, crashing into a Zen courtyard. BRBR the woman in white looked towards the Zen courtyard deep in Jialan Temple. Under the curtain, the corners of her mouth could be seen slightly raised. BRBR disciple, my teacher can only help you so far, BRBR. BRBR the branches and leaves of the Bodhi tree swayed gently in the night wind, and Qing Fan suddenly opened his eyes. BRBR her brows frowned slightly, and a trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. BRBR an inexplicable heat rose from the lower abdomen and spread to the limbs and bones. BRBR the heat came without warning, but became stronger and stronger, making her breathing become a little short. BRBR she subconsciously used her spiritual power to suppress the heat. BRBR but as soon as the spiritual power was activated, the heat became more intense, like adding fuel to the fire, burning her whole body. BRBR senior sister, what's wrong with you? BRBR Lingxi noticed Qingfan's strangeness and asked with concern. BRBR Qingfan was about to speak, but suddenly he noticed that Ling Tide's cheeks were also flushed abnormally, her big eyes were watery, and her breathing was much faster than usual. BRBR Lingxi, do you feel uncomfortable? BRBR Lingxi touched her face and then her forehead. BRBR senior sister, I seem to have a fever. BRBR hearing this, Qingfan's face suddenly became solemn. BRBR she stood up suddenly, but her legs weakened and she almost fell. She quickly held on to the edge of the table to steady herself. BRBR as if thinking of something, she immediately turned her head to look at the burned incense in the incense burner. BRBR, there's something wrong with that fragrance. Qingfan gritted his teeth, with a tremor in his voice, we fell into a trap. Qingfan's delicate body stiffened suddenly, her face turned red, and her eyes were full of shame and anger. BRBR however, Xianchen did not continue. BRBR he retracted his hand, took a step back, and greedily admired Qingfan's red figure due to the calamity of love. BRBR only when Qing Brahma's emotional calamity breaks out completely and the pure Buddhist power reaches its peak, can we achieve a steady breakthrough. BRBR taking action now will only waste an excellent opportunity. BRBR he wants to wait for the most perfect moment. BRBR Qingfan looked at his drooling look, and the humiliation in his heart almost overflowed. BRBR Xianchen, don't be so presumptuous. If our sect knew of your despicable behavior, we would definitely convert you completely. BRBR when Xianchen heard this, he sneered, his eyes filled with disdain. BRBR the two junior sisters died due to love tribulation, what does it have to do with me? BRBR in Buddhist practice, love tribulation is a taboo. BRBR the two junior sisters failed to practice at home, causing the love tribulation, becoming obsessed, and their fragrance disappeared. BRBR I brought your bodies back to the sect, and my uncle couldn't help but thank me. BRBR his master is Qingfan's senior brother. Although he and Qingfan are not from the same sect, they are close to each other, so Qingfan can let down his guard. BRBR seeing a mark appear between Qingfan's eyebrows, it was a sign of a complete outbreak of love. BRBR Xianchen's throat rolled, his eyes fell on Qingfan, and a coveted smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. BRBR he raised his hand and stretched it towards Qingfan's middle coat. BRBR the moon-white middle coat was soaked with sweat and clung tightly to her body, outlining a full curve. BRBR as long as this last layer of barrier is torn open, the delicate body that countless people covet will be completely exposed in front of him. BRBR and her pure bud. Hist power will be absorbed by him to help him break through the bottleneck that has trapped him for decades. BRBR however, just when his fingertips were almost touching the laces of his shirt, a sudden change occurred. BRBR boom, BRBR there was a loud noise, and the roof suddenly exploded. BRBR a figure was like a cannonball, drawing a parabola in the air, and then landed heavily beside the bed. BRBR the room fell into dead silence for an instant. BRBR the moonlight seeped in from the roof, casting the silhouettes of the three people on the ground, intertwined together. BRBR Xianchen's hand froze in midair, his fingertips were only an inch away from Qingfan's lace, but he could no longer move forward. BRBR his pupils shrank suddenly, the saliva on his face solidified at this moment, and he turned his head suddenly to look at the uninvited guest. BRBR Chu Feng lay on the ground, and the pain in his chest made him bare his teeth. BRBR he struggled to raise his head, glanced across the room, and then froze. BRBR the three of them looked at each other, and there was a strange and awkward atmosphere in the air. BRBR Chu Feng blinked and finally understood the situation in the room. BRBR is he ruining someone else's good deeds? BRBR excuse me, BRBR no, that's not right. BRBR his eyes fell on Qingfan's face again, and something was obviously wrong. BRBR a chaotic spiritual power fluctuation was faintly circulating around her body, which was a sign that the Buddha's heart was shaken and his spiritual power was out of control. BRBR love disaster. BRBR Chu Feng frowned slightly, and his eyes moved away from Qingfan and landed on Xianchen. BRBR his eyes narrowed slightly, and a cold light flashed from his eyes. BRBR, could this be the way Jialan Temple treats guests? BRBR a murderous intent flashed in Xianchen's eyes, and he was about to accomplish something good, but at this most critical moment, he was interrupted midway. BRBR anyone who encounters this kind of thing would want to cut the bad and good person into pieces. BRBR seeking death. BRBR Xianchen snorted coldly, and the spiritual power surged in his body. BRBR Chu Feng stood up, patted the dust on his body, and showed a hint of a smile. BRBR, how can a Buddhist disciple behave like this when he opens his mouth to fight and kill? BRBR Xianchen's face became even more gloomy when he heard this. BRBR he stopped talking nonsense, and the pressure of the 9th level of refining the void burst out like a tide. BRBR clenched a fist with his right hand, gathered his spiritual power, and punched Chu Feng. BRBR, the punch is fierce and the sound of breaking through the air is harsh, with enough power to blast huge rocks into powder. BRBR, a cruel smile appeared on the corner of Xianquan's mouth. He seemed to have seen the scene of Chu Feng being blown away by this punch and falling to the ground. BRBR, an ant who knows nothing about the world dares to ruin his good deeds. BRBR, however, a coercion that was 100 times more powerful than Xianquan erupted from Chu Feng's body. BRBR, the ultimate combination. BRBR, the color on Xianquan's face instantly faded, and his body was shaken by the coercion. Every step left a deep footprint on the ground. He took 5 or 6 steps back before he could stabilize his body. BRBR, you are in the integration stage. BRBR, the monk in front of him who looks younger than him has a cultivation level that is a whole realm higher than him. BRBR, he has been stuck in the void refining realm for so many years and has never been able to break through to the fusion stage. BRBR, but the person in front of him is already at the peak of the integration stage at a young age, and is only 1 step away from the Mahayana stage. BRBR, who are you? BRBR, he knew almost all the younger generation of monks in the western regio. But he had never seen the face in front of him. BRBR, Qing Fan was no less shocked than Xianquan. BRBR, looking at Chu Feng's back, her beautiful eyes widened. BRBR, the moment Chu Feng appeared, she recognized him. BRBR, the casual cultivator in the Wangfu Tower and who couldn't see through the qi movement with her Tianyan qi observation technique. BRBR, but she didn't expect that the other party's cultivation level was so high, even far above hers. BRBR, I never expected that the people I met briefly in the inn would meet again by accident. BRBR, at this moment, her heartbeat accelerated involuntarily. It was not the restlessness of love, but an indescribable throbbing. BRBR, I am Qing Fan, a direct disciple of the Fanning Jing sect. I hope that fellow Taoists can help me. I will thank you deeply in the future. BRBR, Chu Feng looked back at her and his eyes stayed on her face for a moment. BRBR, he did not speak, but raised his hand to pull down the bed curtain. BRBR, the plain white bed curtains hung down, covering Qingfan's charming scenery and Xuanquan's greedy sight. BRBR, Chu Feng turned around and looked at Xianquan and said coldly. BRBR, have you seen enough? BRBR, Xianquan's throat rolled and he swallowed. BRBR, who are you? BRBR, the corners of Chu Feng's mouth raised slightly. Only at this moment did he finally understand that the powerful Mahayana stage man he met in front of the temple didn't really want to kill him. BRBR, the person who killed you. BRBR, Xianquan's pupils trembled, and a strong sense of crisis surged into his heart. BRBR, the gap between the ultimate realm of integration and the peak of refining the void is like a chasm. BRBR, thinking of this, he suddenly raised his hand and struck out with a palm. BRBR, in the wind of the palm, there was a thick cloud of poisonous smoke. The poisonous smoke was dark green, exuding a pungent smell, and spread rapidly in the air. BRBR, this is his life-saving trump card, bone-rotting poisonous smoke. BRBR, even if a monk in the integration stage inhales it, his spiritual power will be disordered and he will lose his combat effectiveness in a short period of time. BRBR, the moment the poisonous smoke exploded, Xianquan suddenly retreated and rushed towards the door. BRBR, he was extremely fast, and rushed out of the door almost in the blink of an eye. BRBR, immediately, he activated his spiritual power and shouted. BRBR, Master, save me. Inside the bed curtain, the space is small and the light is dim. BRBR, Qing Fan turned his head and his eyes fell on Ling Tide beside him. BRBR, Ling Xi's delicate body twisted slightly, murmuring inarticulately, and her hands unconsciously grasped the mattress beneath her. BRBR, the illusion of lust is still tormenting her. Her brows sometimes frown and sometimes relax, as if she is experiencing something in a dream. BRBR, junior sister has been completely trapped. You help her seal the Ling Tai acupoint first, suppress her emotional calamity for the time being. BRBR, Qingfan's fingers were released from Chu Feng's clothes, tremblingly pointed in the direction of Ling Xi, and then fell down weakly. BRBR, Chu Feng's throat rolled, and his peripheral vision finally moved away from Qing Fan's body. BRBR, okay. BRBR, before she finished speaking, an extreme heat rushed into Qingfan's mind, instantly destroying the last line of defense she had worked so hard to maintain. BRBR, her pupils suddenly dilated, her throat felt sweet, and a fishy heat surged up from her chest and overflowed from the corners of her mouth. BRBR, a mouthful of bright red blood spurted out from her mouth and fell on the plain bed curtains. BRBR, the pure heart Zen technique, completely collapsed at this moment, and the Buddha's light was like broken glass, turning into countless light spots and dissipating in the air. BRBR, the pure essence of pure world Zen mind and body can no longer be controlled, like a broken jade bottle, pouring out uncontrollably. BRBR, Chu Feng looked at her appearance and did not dare to delay any longer. BRBR, a ray of spiritual power gathered at the fingertips and touched Lingxi's Tai acupoint. BRBR, the Ling Tai acupoint is where the souls of monks gather. Sealing this acupoint can temporarily block the erosion of the soul by the power of lust and suppress the outbreak of emotional calamity. BRBR, the moment the spiritual power entered the body, Lingxi's originally twisting and struggling body suddenly froze, as if a immobilization spell had been cast on her, unable to move. BRBR, her brows relaxed, and her rapid breathing gradually calmed down, from rapid and chaotic to long and steady. BRBR, the blurred eyes closed slightly, the long eyelashes trembled slightly for a few times, and then became completely quiet. BRBR, the restlessness caused by lust was temporarily suppressed, and she lay quietly on the bed, like a sleeping baby. BRBR, it's just that her little face is still flushed with a blush that hasn't faded, as if it's been coated with a light layer of rouge. BRBR, at this time, the emotional calamity is temporarily suppressed. If the emotional calamity cannot be overcome within one stick of incense, the emotional calamity that breaks out after one stick of incense will only be more terrifying. BRBR, Chu Feng retracted his fingers, and after confirming that Lingxi's condition was stable, he immediately turned around and looked at Qing Fan, who was on the verge of collapse. BRBR, please bear with me, I am very fast. BRBR, boom. BRBR, in the palm of Chu Feng's palm, Jiyang Dao fire emerged out of thin air. BRBR, he directly took out the medicinal materials given by Jia Kong from the storage bag, and suspended them one by one on the Dao fire. BRBR, under the burning of Tao fire, rare medicinal materials turned into balls of crystal clear medicinal liquid, exuding a faint medicinal fragrance. BRBR, his movements were smooth and fluid, as if he had done them thousands of times. BRBR, when Qing Fan's eyes fell on Chu Feng, his dilated pupils suddenly shrank. BRBR, what did she see? BRBR, Chu Feng held a ball of flame in his palm, used the Dao fire as the furnace, and the soul as the guide to refine the elixir with his bare hands. BRBR, seeing this, a look of shock flashed across Qing Fan's eyes, which even overpowered the surging lust in her body, making her inches a little clearer. BRBR, she looked at Chu Feng blankly, her throat rolled, her lips opened slightly, but she couldn't say a word. BRBR, the Qingyuan Ningxin Dan is a top-level 9th grade elixir. Although she does not know how to make elixirs, she also knows how difficult it is to refine this elixir. BRBR, even the top alchemy master in the western regions would need to spend several days to successfully refine it. BRBR, and the success rate of this top-level elixir is extremely low. It is a great blessing to be able to make 1 out of 10 furnaces. BRBR, but the person in front of me was able to make elixirs with just his hands and Dao fire, and his expression was so relaxed that there was no trace of nervousness at all. BRBR, am I dreaming? BRBR, at this moment, she even suspected that she was in an illusion like Lingxi, otherwise how could she see the younger generation refining the 9th grade elixir? BRBR, Chu Feng focused on the Dao fire in his palm and did not notice Qing Fan's reaction at all. BRBR, in less than a cup of tea, 2 round and shiny white Qingyuan Ningxin Dan condensed and took shape in the Tao fire. BRBR, the elixir is suspended above the flames. The elixir body is as smooth as a mirror, and fine elixir patterns can be vaguely seen flowing on the surface. BRBR, a refreshing fragrance of elixirs escaped from the elixir, instantly soothing the hot atmosphere in the Zen room. BRBR, 2 pills flew up from the Dao fire and fell into Chu Feng's palm. BRBR, he leaned over to Lingxi and put the elixir into his mouth. BRBR, the elixir melted in her mouth, and she didn't even need to swallow it. It turned into a cool spiritual power, slid down her throat into her belly, and quickly spread to her limbs and bones. BRBR, that spiritual power was like the first drizzle in spring. The Buddhist elements in Lingxi's body that had been disrupted by love tribulation gradually returned to calm under the combing of this spiritual power. BRBR, her brows relaxed completely, her pursed lips began to relax, and she fell into a deep sleep. BRBR, after Chu Feng confirmed that Lingxi was fine, he picked up another elixir, turned to look at Qing Fan, and put the elixir to her lips. BRBR, eating this elixir can resolve your love crisis. BRBR, the elixir exudes a faint Zen fragrance and is only an inch away from Qing Fan's lips. BRBR, as long as she opens her mouth slightly and takes the elixir, the love disaster can be resolved. BRBR, Qing Fan looked at him, her eyes were already watery. BRBR, it's too late. BRBR, although the elixir can resolve the love crisis, it takes time. BRBR, the moment the words fell, the emotional calamity in Jingshi Zhen's mind and body completely broke out. BRBR, after a stick of incense. BRBR, the vibrations in the bed curtains gradually subsided, and the moonlight filtered through the gauze curtains, coating the 2 entangled figures with a hazy silver glow. BRBR, a few strands of Qing Fan's black hair stuck to her cheeks, soaked with sweat, outlining her delicate outline. BRBR her eyes were closed, her long eyelashes trembling slightly, and glistening tears could be seen faintly in the corners of her eyes. BRBR Chu Feng's whole body erupted with vast spiritual light, illuminating the entire Zen room. BRBR the heaven refining diagram in his body was running wildly, swallowing up the pure Buddha essence of the pure Brahma pure world Zen mind. BRBR the Buddha Yuan poured into the heaven refining diagram, was refined into the purest power, and fed back to Chu Feng. BRBR the bottleneck of achieving the ultimate level of integration was shattered at this moment. BRBR Chu Feng's aura suddenly surged, the first level of the Mahayana stage. BRBR coercion that was far greater than before swept out of his body, instantly enveloped the entire Zen room, and even spread outside the Zen room, covering the entire courtyard. BR his spiritual power became more powerful and condensed, and every ray of spiritual power contained the pressure of the Mahayana period. BRBR at the same time, perception becomes sharper. BRBR he subconsciously looked in the direction of the Sutra Pavilion, where there were two auras of the Mahayana period. BRBR at the same time, Qingfan's spiritual power suddenly surged. BRBR when Chu Feng's Jiyang spiritual power blended with the pure Buddha essence in her body, she finally overcame the love disaster. BRBR after the emotional tribulation, everything suddenly became enlightened. BRBR her aura is rising steadily, reaching the first level of void refining, the second level of void refining, and the third level of void refining. BRBR in one day, he broke through the third level in a row. BRBR the pink eyes returned to their original state, as spotless as the sky after the rain. BRBR but the taste of eating marrow and knowing its taste was like a brand, engraved in the bottom of her heart. BRBR she looked at Chu Feng, and the desire in her eyes actually increased instead of decreasing. It was a sinking feeling that she had never experienced before. BRBR I still want, BRBR the night is deep and the moon is like water. BRBR on the roof of the Sutra Pavilion of Jialan Temple, a slightly older figure stood with his hands behind his back. BRBR the night wind blew by, the cassocks rustled, and Jia Kong looked at the deep night sky. BRBR junior sister, did you really send your disciple away like this? BRBR in the void, the figure of Master Miaozhen slowly emerged. BRBR even through the plain white dress, you can still see the amazing proportions. BRBR she held the purification bottle in her hand, landed beside Jia Kong, and raised her hand to lift the curtain. BRBR under the gauze scarf is an extremely outstanding face, with facial features as delicate as fine carving. BRBR her eyes were looking in the direction of the Zen temple deep in Jialan Temple. BRBR the faint and lingering sound drifted in the night wind, intermittently, vaguely present. BRBR the corners of her mouth were slightly raised, revealing a meaningful smile. BRBR that is the future emperor, and I am doing this all for the Fanning Jingzong. BRBR although Qingfan's talent is high, he has been stuck at the bottleneck of the peak of incarnation and has been unable to break through. BRBR Chu Feng has the destiny of the emperor. If the two of them can form a cause and effect at this time, it will be a great opportunity for Qingfan and the Fanning Jingzong. BRBR her slender fingers pinched gently, and a faint Buddhist glow appeared on her fingertips. BRBR my disciple is destined to this person. Even if I don't intervene, they will be entangled sooner or later. BRBR she retracted her finger, looked away from the direction of the Zen courtyard, and fell on Jia Kong's face. The smile at the corner of her mouth became a little deeper. BRBR you are almost giving the map to someone else, aren't you just like me? BRBR the map of the 10,000 Buddha's ancient cave is clearly priced at 10,000 spiritual stones, you can't imagine it. BRBR hearing this, Jia Kong smiled bitterly, with a bit of self-deprecation in his tone. BRBR it's a pity that I don't have a Buddhist girl in Jialan Temple. If I were a woman, I would love to pledge my body to you and get a chance to be blessed with the future emperor. BRBR ha, BRBR Miachan venerable sneered, and his figure gradually faded in the moonlight, like a reflection in the water, and disappeared into the night in an instant. BRBR on the roof of the Sutra Pavilion, only Jia Kong was left. BRBR he stood with his hands behind his back and was silent for a long time. BRBR then he lowered his head and looked at the Zen courtyard deep in Jialan Temple, clasped his hands together, and recited a Buddhist name in a low voice. BRBR Ba. The next morning. BRBR the sound of birdsong came from the window, clear and sweet, like the sound of nature. BRBR on the bed, Qingfan slowly opened his eyes. BRBR there was still a faint blush on her cheeks, whether it was the reflection of the morning light or the afterglow of last night. BRBR Chu Feng was lying beside her, his eyes were slightly closed, his breathing was long and steady, and he was obviously still sleeping. BRBR the morning light fell on his face, outlining his clear outlines. BRBR even in his sleep, there was a faint smile on his lips. BRBR Qingfan looked at him, his eyes as soft as spring water. BRBR her fingers moved slightly, wanting to touch his cheek, but she pulled back the moment she was about to touch him. BRBR, recalling those crazy scenes last night, her heart beat involuntarily faster. BRBR, however, the more she wanted to forget, the images played back over and over again in her mind, and every detail was as clear as if it was engraved in her bones. BRBR, at this moment, Chu Feng's eyelashes moved slightly. BRBR, he turned his head slightly to look at Qingfan's blushing cheeks, and raised the corners of his mouth slightly, revealing a faint smile. BRBR, the two were silent for a moment. Qingfan bit his lip and finally spoke first. BRBR, I don't know your name yet. BRBR, she called her good brother all night last night, but she never had time to ask Chu Feng's name. BRBR, Chu Feng seemed to remember the scene last night and spoke meaningfully. BRBR, my last name is Good, brother. BRBR, at first Qingfan listened very seriously, but after hearing Chu Feng's answer, his face suddenly turned red. BRBR, my name is Chu Feng, the holy son of the Kanglin imperial clan in Zhongzhou. BRBR, Chu Feng held the pink fist she waved and finally revealed his identity. BRBR, hearing this, Qingfan could not help but tremble, and a look of shock flashed in his eyes. BRBR of Ko. She had heard of the Kanglin imperial clan, one of the 9 great imperial clans. BRBR, that is the top force in Zhongzhou, with profound foundation and powerful people. BRBR, the person in front of me is still the holy son of the Kanglin imperial clan. BRBR, her throat rolled, and a storm surged in her heart. BRBR, what happened last night? BRBR, I will be responsible for you. BRBR, Chu Feng interrupted her without any hesitation. BRBR, you will be my woman from now on. BRBR, an indescribable throbbing surged in Qingfan's heart. BRBR, she quickly lowered her head, not daring to look into Chu Feng's eyes, for fear that he would see the hint of joy in her eyes. BRBR, but she refused to give in, and her tone contained a hint of warning. BRBR, you know, Buddhist girls of the Fanning Jing sect are not allowed to break the precepts. BRBR, if you break my body, if you dare to go to the sect to propose marriage, my master will definitely break 3 of your legs. BRBR, after she finished speaking, she raised her eyes slightly and glanced at Chu Feng secretly, with a trace of expectation in her eyes. BRBR, Chu Feng looked at her duplicitous appearance, and the smile at the corner of his mouth became a little deeper. BRBR, what is your master's cultivation level? BRBR, Qingfan raised his chin slightly, a trace of pride flashed in his eyes. BRBR, the 8th level of the Mahayana stage. She paused, and then added, my master is one of the best masters of Buddhism in the Western region. I can beat you to the ground with one hand. Are you scared? BRBR, Chu Feng's brows raised slightly, the 8th level of the Mahayana stage. BRBR, he suddenly remembered the woman in white who stopped him in front of the temple last night. That woman was also in the 8th level of the Mahayana stage. BRBR, to confirm his suspicion, he asked tentatively. BRBR, is your master holding a pure vase with a willow branch stuck in it? BRBR, most oh. The blush on Qingfan's face faded at this moment. She looked at Chu Feng in a daze, and it took a long time before she could say a word. BRBR, you know my master? BRBR, Chu Feng's mouth twitched slightly. Can he say that it was her master who kicked him into the room last night? BRBR, of course, he could only curse this in his heart, and then shook his head without changing his expression. BRBR, I don't know her, I just heard about it. BRBR, he paused, and the plump and delicate body that was even juicier than Qingfan could not help but appear in his mind. BRBR, however, I would like to get to know him. BRBR, Qingfan didn't know what Chu Feng was thinking, but he just lowered his eyes slightly, twisting the corners of the quilt unconsciously with his slender fingers, crumpling the plain white fabric. BRBR, when I go back, I will tell master that I will become a lay disciple of the Fanning Pure sect from now on. BRBR, her voice was a little lower, almost inaudible. BRBR, in this way, I can marry you. BRBR, looking at her appearance, Chu Feng felt a sense of warmth in his heart. BRBR, however, before he could speak, Qingfan suddenly changed the topic and his tone became more serious. BRBR, but, even so, according to the rules of the Fanning Pure sect, you can only marry me in this life. BRBR, speaking of this, she suddenly became a little nervous and cautiously tried. BRBR, do you have a Taoist companion? BRBR, hearing this question, Chu Feng was even more nervous than she was, and faces flashed in his mind instantly. BRBR, his throat rolled. He didn't want to lie to Qingfan, but he also knew that the truth might be difficult for her to accept. BRBR, although he only hesitated for a moment, Qingfan caught it. BRBR, finally, Chu Feng took a deep breath and spoke truthfully. BRBR, yes. BRBR, the light in Qingfan's eyes dimmed a bit at this moment. She withdrew her fingers from Chu Feng's palm and grasped the hem of her clothes. BRBR, the delicate red lips were pursed into a thin line. BRBR, she should have thought of it a long time ago. How could such an outstanding man, who was already a strong man in the Mahayana stage at a young age, not have a Taoist companion? BRBR, I am just a latecomer, so what qualifications do I have to ask him to be the only one with her? BRBR, I will also report this matter to Master. BRBR, silence. BRBR, in the Zen room, there was a dead silence. BRBR, Chiyang Fan saw that Chu Feng had not spoken for a long time, and the uneasiness in his heart became stronger and stronger. BRBR, her brows suddenly frowned, as if she thought of something, and a chill flashed in her eyes. BRBR, she raised her head suddenly and stared into Chu Feng's eyes, her voice a bit colder. BRBR, is there more than one Taoist companion? BRBR, still silent. BRBR, Chiyang Fan took a deep breath, his chest rose and fell violently, and the curves wrapped in the middle coat rose and fell with it. BRBR, she bit her lip and spoke tentatively again, but her voice contained an uncontrollable tremor. BRBR, too? BRBR, still silent. BRBR, Chu Feng still did not speak, but the guilty look on his face had already explained everything. BRBR, Chiyang Fan's eyes widened instantly, and his eyes as clear as water were full of disbelief. BRBR, there was only one thought echoing in her mind, more than two. BRBR, how many are there? BRBR, Chu Feng's fingers bent one by one. BRBR, Zhao Yurong, Zi Shuhe, Sun Yue, Wen Yuyan. BRBR, the names are spinning in front of my eyes like a revolving lantern, and I can't count them with one hand. BRBR, soon. Chu Feng clenched his fists tightly, his throat rolled subconsciously, and he swallowed. BRBR, even though Chu Feng said nothing, Chiyang Fan already knew the answer. BRBR, her eyes turned red instantly, and crystal tears rolled in her eyes. More and more tears gathered in her eyes, filled them up, and finally burst out of her eyes. BRBR, Chu Feng, you bastard. BRBR, as soon as she finished speaking, she rushed forward and bit Chu Feng's shoulder hard. BRBR, hiss. BRBR, Chu Feng took a breath of cold air and frowned slightly, but did not hide. BRBR, he just hugged Chiyang Fan's waist tightly and held her soft body tightly in his arms. BRBR, a long while. BRBR, Chiyang Fan finally let go of her mouth. She raised her head and looked at the deep tooth marks on Chu Feng's shoulder. A trace of distress flashed in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by stubbornness. BRBR, her eyes were red and the tip of her nose was red. She looked like a wronged kitten, pitiful but unwilling to give in. BRBR, I have given you the concentric curse of the Fanning Jing Zone. If you don't go to the Fanning Jing Zone to find me within 3 months, you will die after the curse happened. BRBR, Chu Feng glanced sideways at the bloody mark on his shoulder, but there was no trace of nervousness on his face. BRBR, the heaven refining diagram can refine all things, but the blood mark on the shoulder does not show any energy fluctuations. BRBR, Chu Feng did not expose her, but buried his face between her slender neck and planted a mark with force. BRBR, Chiyang Fan's delicate body trembled suddenly, and a numbness spread from her neck to her whole body, making her go weak and almost collapse in his arms. BRBR, she subconsciously raised her hand to push him away, with a hint of embarrassment in her voice. BRBR, no, don't, stop. With a thought, Yu Jian appeared in the palm of his hand. BRBR, the art of devouring the heart of 10,000 demons. BRBR, Chu Feng's breathing quickened slightly, and he immediately put his spiritual consciousness into the jade slip to check the content on it. BRBR, a series of mysterious runes poured into his mind, condensing into a complete technique in his sea of consciousness. BRBR, he glanced through it quickly and couldn't help but feel shocked. BRBR, Xianchaji did not lie. The 10,000 demons devouring heart art can indeed arouse the inner demons of others and make them full of inner demons. BRBR, however, the end of the jade slip also indicates the limitations of this technique. BRBR, facing a monk who is higher than yourself, if you want to arouse the inner demons of the other person, you need physical contact. BRBR, in other words, if he wants to use this magic technique to deal with a strong person above the Mahayana stage, he must first touch the opponent's body. BRBR, this restriction is neither too big nor too small. BRBR, in a life and death fight, how easy is it to reach an opponent with a higher level than yourself? BRBR, but if there is a chance to get close, this magic trick will be a fatal move. BRBR, seeing this, Xianchaji's heart suddenly tightened, and a trace of imperceptible panic flashed in her cold eyes. BRBR, she actually forgot that the heart-devouring art of 10,000 demons was stored in that ring. BRBR, now that the magic secret is in hand, what if Chu Feng turns around and leaves without helping her refine the elixir? BRBR, now that she is bound by chains and her cultivation is sealed, there is no way she can force him to fulfill his promise. BRBR, thinking of this, her throat rolled, and she wanted to say something, but when the words reached her lips, she swallowed them back. BRBR, it is superfluous to say anything at this moment. The initiative is in Chu Feng's hands, and she can NLY wait. BRBR in other words, you can only bet that he will not break his promise. BRBR Chu Feng's eyes turned, and his gaze moved away from the jade slip in his hand and fell on Qianchaji's face. BRBR he saw the flash of panic in her eyes, and the corners of her mouth raised slightly, but she did not regret it. BRBR putting the jade slip into the ring, Chu Feng raised his head and looked directly into Qianchaji's beautiful eyes. BRBR, I have always been a trustworthy person, and since I agreed to help you refine the elixir, I will never break my promise. BRBR hearing this, Qianchaji couldn't help but secretly breathed a sigh of relief. BRBR that's the best. BRBR buzz, BRBR the heaven refining diagram unfolded from Chu Feng's palm and instantly enveloped the entire second floor of the demon tower. BRBR he took out the medicinal materials from Neji one by one and suspended them on the heaven refining diagram. BRBR the rare fairy materials slowly melted under the swallowing power of the scroll, turning into balls of crystal clear medicinal liquid, exuding a faint fairy spirit. BRBR the pure medicinal liquid is like hundreds of rivers returning to the sea, converging in Chu Feng's body, condensing and merging in his dantian. BRBR in just a few breaths, the medicinal liquid had condensed into elixir in his dantian. BRBR the moment the elixir took shape, the situation above the 9 heavens changed. BRBR the originally clear night sky was instantly swallowed up by thick dark clouds. BRBR the dark clouds were layer upon layer, coming from all directions, covering all the stars in the sky. BRBR in the clouds, thunder flashed, and purple thunder and lightning shuttled through the clouds, making a deafening roar. BRBR the power of heaven descended, causing all living beings within a radius of thousands of miles to tremble and crawl to the ground. BRBR rumble, BRBR the first pill calamity fell suddenly, penetrating the heaven and earth. BRBR in the purple thunder light, arcs can be vaguely seen jumping, and wherever the lightning tribulation passes, the void breaks apart. BRBR countless people woke up from their sleep and looked to the sky in horror. BRBR Sanskrit pure sect. BRBR this is a peaceful Buddhist pure land, with towering ancient trees and Buddhist chants. BRBR Buddhist temples are built against the mountains, glowing with golden Buddha light under the moonlight. BRBR in the quiet room deep inside the sect, Venerable Miao Zhen is sitting cross-legged on a futon, making a seal with his hands and practicing with his eyes closed. BRBR suddenly, her eyes opened suddenly. BRBR a trace of shock flashed across those beautiful eyes. BRBR she walked quickly to the window, opened the window lattice, and looked at the western sky. BRBR dark clouds were surging there, lightning flashed, and a purple thunder penetrated the sky and the earth, illuminating the entire night sky. BRBR Miachan Venerable's face suddenly became solemn, and his heart suddenly tightened. BRBR the slender fingers pinched quickly, which was her best deduction technique. BRBR but her deduction was clueless. BRBR the power of the pill tribulation seemed to be deliberately blocking her exploration, so that she could not pry into it at all. BRBR this elixir tribulation seems to be suppressing me. BRBR the aura of the elixir tribulation made the spiritual power in her body stir slightly, as if she had encountered a natural nemesis. BRBR she has never felt this way before. BRBR no, I have to go and have a look. BRBR as soon as she finished speaking, her figure disappeared from the spot. BRBR the bottle and the willow branches also disappeared, leaving only the window lattice still shaking slightly. BRBR Jialan Temple. BRBR Master Jiekong stands on the top of the pagoda, looking towards the western sky. BRBR he has been practicing so far and has seen countless visions of heaven and earth, but he has never seen such a terrifying calamity. BRBR even though he was thousands of miles away, he could clearly feel the pressure. BRBR that is a sign of the birth of the 9th grade elixir, and it is a perfect quality 9th grade elixir. BRBR his throat rolled, he clasped his hands together and recited a Buddhist chant in a low voice. BRBR Umaba, BRBR under the pagoda, the monks of Jialan Temple were also alarmed. BRBR they walked out of the meditation room one after another, looked up at the western sky, and couldn't help but talk about it. BRBR what is that? Is it a heavenly calamity? BRBR there are rumors that elixirs can trigger calamities. This is at least a 9th grade elixir. BRBR 9th grade elixirs. When did such a master of alchemy appear in the western regions? BRBR look that direction, seems to be the direction of the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas. BRBR no matter who is refining the alchemy, the entire western region may be alarmed by this phenomenon. BRBR Jia Kong was silent for a moment as he listened to the discussion of the monks below, and the figure of Chu Feng appeared in his mind. BRBR, could it be him? BRBR the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas. BRBR in the Holy Land, there are towering ancient trees, gushing spiritual springs, and ancient Buddhist temples built against the mountains. In the temples, the relics of eminent Buddhist monks of all ages are enshrined. BRBR deep in the Holy Land, several Buddhas and elders with white beards and hair, dressed in cassocks, are practicing in seclusion. BRBR each of them is a powerful person in the Mahayana period, and is also the guardian of the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas. They live here in seclusion all year round and do not care about worldly affairs. BRBR however, at this moment, they opened their eyes at the same time. BRBR thus. Ye old eyes looked towards the sky. BRBR alchemy is still the calamity of the 9th grade elixir. BRBR, when did such a master of alchemy appear in the western regions? BRBR even the 9th grade alchemy master in Zhongzhou may not be able to refining a 1st grade elixir, let alone a 9th grade elixir. BRBR, could it be an immortal descending to earth? BRBR at this moment, a bright golden light rose into the sky from the direction where the elixir fell. BRBR the golden light was so dazzling that it penetrated the sky and dyed the entire night sky golden. BRBR 100% effective, perfect elixir. BRBR the shock on the faces of several Buddhas and elders could no longer be concealed, and they all stood up. BRBR the perfect 9th grade elixir. BRBR it's a blessing to be able to make the 9th grade elixir, let alone a perfect elixir that is 100% effective. BRBR, there is such a person in the western region, how can we miss it? BRBR, go and see who is making the elixir. Dongjia stretched across the sky and shrouded directly above the royal skyboat. BRBR in the cabin, Qing Fan and Lingxi were sitting at the low table chatting. BRBR Lingxi held the teacup in both hands, sipping it in small sips, her eyes curled into crescent moons, and she was talking about something happy. BRBR Qing Fan sat opposite her, holding his chin with one hand and looking out the window. Chu Feng's figure could not help but reappear in his mind, and he was still completely naked. BRBR boom. BRBR a deafening thunder exploded overhead. The sound was so loud that it was as if the sky was shattering and the whole cabin was shaking violently. BRBR the teacup on the table jumped up due to the shock, and the tea splashed out onto the table, spreading a small patch of dark color. BRBR Qing Fan and Ling Tide froze at the same time, and the smiles on their faces instantly froze. BRBR they stood up suddenly and looked out the window at the same time, their eyes full of horror. BRBR Lingxi covered her mouth with her little hand and her voice couldn't help but tremble. BRBR senior sister, is this the legendary elixir tribulation? BRBR her eyes were fixed on the purple thunder tribulation that penetrated the heaven and earth outside the window, and her heart was filled with turmoil. BRBR although I have never seen the birth of elixir with my own eyes, I have read relevant records in classics. BRBR the birth of the elixir will inevitably lead to calamities. Each thunder calamity is more terrifying than the last. Only one person in 10,000 can successfully withstand it. BRBR Qing Fan's expression was equally solemn, and the core of the calamity was directly above them. BRBR this calamity, BRBR bang. BRBR Yu Kongzhou shook violently, drowning out her next words. BRBR at this moment, Lingxi also understood. BRBR the elixir calamity fell on the Yukongzhou. The person who made the elixir was far away in the horizon but right in front of his eyes. BRBR the two looked at each other, and the same figure appeared in their minds at the same time, Chu Feng. BRBR on the entire Yukongzhou, there were only 3 of them. BRBR previously, they witnessed Chu Feng refining the 9th grade Qingyuan Ningxin Dan with his bare hands. His attainments in the alchemy were beyond their knowledge. BRBR except for Chu Feng, there can be no other person in this elixir tribulation. BRBR Ling Tide's curiosity was like a cat clawing at her, and she could no longer hold it back. BRBR she was about to walk towards the room where Chu Feng was, wanting to find out what kind of elixir Chu Feng had refined. BRBR but as soon as she took a step, a slender hand stretched out and blocked her way. BRBR Qing Fan shook his head, his tone a bit solemn. BRBR don't be rash. If he is really refining the elixir, he must be at the most critical stage of elixir creation at this moment. BRBR when the elixir calamity comes, the alchemist must concentrate on it. If you are not careful, the elixir may destroy people and injure people, and all your previous efforts will be wasted. BRBR we can just wait here and don't ruin his important event. BRBR she knew that Lingxi was just curious and had no ill intentions, but there was no room for mistakes in alchemy, especially elixir refining. BRBR hearing the words, Lingxi paused, and the eagerness on her face gradually subsided. BRBR she just looked at the surging thunderclouds in the sky, her eyes full of expectation. BRBR senior sister, do you think, can he succeed? BRBR Qing Fan stood quietly in front of the window and recited a Buddhist chant in a low voice. BRBR yes. BRBR at the same time, in the second level of the demon tower. BRBR in Chu Feng's dantian, the pure medicinal liquid has condensed and formed. BRBR a golden light rushed out of his body, straight into outside the soaring demon. Tower. BRBR Xianchaji's scarlet eyes instantly showed joy, causing the demonic energy around her to surge violently. BRBR this woo-woo devouring tribulation pill is her only hope for escape. As long as she takes this pill, the power of the elixir will be restored. The ancient seal chain that can help her erode the demon tower. Within 10 days, she will be able to completely break free from the suppression. BRBR at that time, she will definitely smash Chu Feng, the human ant who has defiled her body and wantonly humiliated her, into pieces. RBR she will use the most cruel punishment of the Rakshasa tribe to make him experience all the pain in the world, in order to dispel the hatred in her heart. BRBR thinking of this, Xianchaji can no longer suppress the eagerness in her heart. BRBR feed the elixir to me quickly. BRBR hearing the words, Chu Feng's lips evoked a playful smile. BRBR he did not speak, but raised his hand to place on the buckle of the jade belt around his waist, and gently picked it up. BRBR the jade belt was untied, and he slowly walked towards Xianchaji. BRBR every step he took was like stepping on Xianchaji's heart, making her heartbeat uncontrollably. She sped up a bit on her own initiative. BRBR at this moment, Chu Feng's robes were slightly loosened due to the loosening of the jade belt. BRBR Xianchaji's pupils shrank, and a hint of panic flashed on her cheeks. BRBR at this moment, she could only stare at Chu Feng, covering up the panic in her heart with her fierce gaze. BRBR it seemed that as long as she was fierce enough, she could cover up the shame that was almost overflowing. BRBR Chu Feng closed his eyes as he was told, but the playful smile on the corner of his mouth still did not dissipate. BRBR the surroundings fell into silence. Only the fragrance of the elixir filled the air, clear and mellow. BRBR Chu Feng stood there, closing his eyes, feeling Xianchaji's fragrance lingering on tea. He tip of his nose. BRBR the sound of Xianchaji's rapid breathing soon came to his ears. He stood there without moving, as if waiting for something. BRBR after a while, he was suddenly shocked. BRBR Chu Feng subconsciously opened his eyes, and the scene that caught his eye made him slightly distracted. BRBR the Rakshasa queen who used to be so aloof was now half kneeling in front of him. BRBR the slender neck stretched slightly, trying to absorb the liquid of the woo-woo devouring tribulation pill from his dantian. BRBR her hair was scattered, with a few strands hanging down on both sides of her cheeks, making her cold face look a little more embarrassed. BRBR because of the constraints of the chains around her body, her arms were hung high and she could not bend down. She could only maintain this awkward posture, like a black swan imprisoned by chains. BRBR Xianchaji seemed to notice that Chu Feng opened his eyes and suddenly looked up. BRBR the scarlet eyes were instantly filled with shame and anger. BRBR aha, BRBR Chu Feng had quick eyes and quick hands, and he directly raised his hand to cover her eyes. BRBR, just close your eyes and move quickly. BRBR before he finished speaking, he stepped forward. BRBR Xianchaji was shocked and angry, but the chains around her body restrained her tightly, making it impossible for her to even retreat. BRBR the time of a stick of incense flies by in an instant. BRBR the time was long or short, but it was enough to shake Chu Feng's mind. BRBR he could feel that the spiritual power in his body was stirring. BRBR just when he was about to lose control of his mind, he suddenly pulled back. BRBR he didn't miss it at all, as if everything just now was just an illusion. BRBR Chu Feng took 2 steps back and opened the distance between him and Xianchaji. BRBR under Xianchaji's shocked eyes, he took out a handkerchief from his sleeve, lowered his head and wiped his fingers carefully. BRBR, let's stop here today. BRBR Xianchaji froze on the spot, her eyes full of doubts. BRBR she looked at Chu Feng blankly, watching him fasten his jade belt and adjust his robes, feeling a strong uneasiness in her heart. BRBR she didn't understand why Chu Feng stopped when he reached the last step. BRBR shouldn't he feed her the liquid and let her take the woo-woo devouring tribulation pill? BRBR but in the next second, she understood the implication of Chu Feng's words, and her doubts instantly turned into monstrous rage that burned everything. BRBR, what do you mean? BRBR hearing this, Chu Feng's tone was a bit playful. BRBR, although I promised to help you refine the elixir, I never said when I would feed it to you. Xianchaji's whole body was shaking violently, and the trembling spread from her fingertips to her whole body, making the chains around her make a rattling sound. BRBR her face turned from red to white, from white to green, and finally turned into ashes of iron. BRBR at this moment, she finally realized that she had been completely fooled by Chu Feng. BRBR every effort was put into planning, and he put down his dignity and endured the humiliation, but in the end it all came to nothing. BRBR the woo-woo devouring tribulation pill is in Chu Feng's body, but it has nothing to do with her. BRBR, how dare you play tricks on me? BRBR Chu Feng pointed at his abdomen, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, revealing a faint smile. BRBR store the elixir here with me first. When I feel better in the future, I will consider feeding it to you. BRBR. After saying that, Chu Feng no longer looked at Xianchaji's furious look, turned around and walked towards the stairs. BRBR. Xianchaji behind her completely exploded. Her body bound by chains struggled wildly. The chains rattled and stretched straight, as if they were about to break at any time. BRBR. Her arms stretched forward desperately, her fingers bent into claws, trying to grab Chu Feng's back, but she could only grab a handful of empty air. BRBR. Chu Feng. You shameless villain, despicable ant. BRBR, come back to me and return the elixir to me. BRBR. When I get out of trouble, I will definitely skin you and make you live forever. Falling into Rakshasa purgatory. BRBR. You bastard, I will never let you go. BRBR. BRBR. Chu Feng exited the heavenly demon tower and returned to Yu Kongzhou's room in a flash. BRBR. His figure appeared in the cabin. He flipped his palm and the black jade that recorded the heart-devouring technique of 10,000 demons appeared in his palm. BRBR. He tightened his fingers, held the jade slip tightly in his hand, and then activated the HeavenRefining diagram. BRBR. Buzz. BRBR. The phantom of the picture scroll slowly unfolded from behind him, instantly covering the entire cabin. BRBR. The devouring power surged out from the scroll and tightly wrapped the jade slip. BRBR. The jade slip trembled violently and made a subtle buzzing sound. BRBR. A series of dark runes peeled off from the jade slips, wandering in the void like living creatures. BRBR. That is the cultivation method, operation key, and demon-inducing mind method of the 10,000 demons devouring heart art. Each rune contains the profound meaning of the ancient demonic path. BRBR. The heaven refining diagram was running wildly, swallowing up and refining all the runes, and pouring them directly into Chu Feng's soul. BRBR. Gong method initiation. BRBR. A massive amount of information poured into Chu Feng's mind instantly. BRBR. Those runes turned into a complete technique in his sea of consciousness. The power of the magic technique blended with his own spiritual power, making his aura become a bit sharper. BRBR. The art of devouring the heart of 10,000 demons, great success. BRBR. Chu Feng slowly opened his eyes, and a dim light flashed in his eyes, like a flame in the abyss, fleeting. BRBR. At this moment, his brow suddenly raised, the aura of the Mahayana period. BRBR. A strong coercion is rapidly approaching Yu Kongzhou from a distance. BRBR. Although the coercion was deliberately restrained, it still caused the surrounding sea of clouds to churn, as if being stirred by an invisible big hand, turbulent and retreated to both sides. BRBR. Chu Feng flashed, stepped out of the room in an instant, and appeared on the deck of the royal sky boat. BRBR. He stood with his hands behind his hands and looked at the figure approaching rapidly. BRBR. The figure became clearer and clearer in the moonlight. She was not wearing a curtain, and her delicate and holy face was revealed without any cover in the moonlight. GHT. BRBR. Chu Feng recognized this person at a glance. The full curvature of his chest made the skirt of his clothes slightly bulge, outlining a graceful arc in the moonlight. BRBR. It was the woman in white who knocked him into the Zen room with a palm outside Jialan Temple. BRBR. Now he also knows the identity of the other party, Qingfan's master, Master Miachan. BRBR. Chu Feng's eyes narrowed slightly, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. BRBR. Although that palm did not kill him, it could even be said to be just right in sending him into Qingfan's Zen room, allowing him to break through Xuanchen's conspiracy and form a causal relationship with Qingfan. BRBR. But it was a plot after all, and he never liked being led by others. BRBR. Miachan Venerable landed on the edge of the deck. She clasped her hands together and saluted Chu Feng. BRBR. I have seen my little friend. Just now the 9th level of the heavenly pill tribulation has fallen from the sky in the western region, and its power has shaken the western region. BRBR. I noticed the strange phenomenon, so I came to check it out. There is no harm in it. BRBR. Chu Feng's face was cold, and his eyes were fixed on Master Miachan, without any warmth in his eyes. BRBR. I have always repaid injustice and revenge, and the Venerable still owes me a slap. BRBR. The Venerable Miachan understood clearly in her heart. She looked at countless people and could naturally see the dissatisfaction in Chu Feng's eyes. BRBR. Chu Feng is destined to be an emperor, and his future achievements will definitely far exceed hers, and he is destined to reach the top. BRBR. But right now, Chu Feng has just broken through to the 1st level of the Mahayana, and she is the 8th level of the Mahayana. BRBR. The gap between the 7 small realms is like a chasm, and it cannot be made up by talent. BRBR. Miachan Venerable's tone was somewhat condescending and magnanimous, as if he was comforting a child who was having a tantrum. BRBR. My little friend has broken through to the Mahayana stage. It can be said that he has risen against the sky. I am very gratified. BRBR. She did not say the following words, but the meaning was already obvious. Chu Feng could never be her opponent. BRBR, but as soon as he finished speaking, Chu Feng had already used the secret technique of calligraphy. BRBR, after breaking through to the Mahayana stage, his speed became a little faster than before. BRBR, the next moment, his figure flashed past Master Miaozhen. BRBR Miaozhen Venerable felt his smooth forehead being flicked with a finger, which caused a slight pain, and he couldn't help but frown. BRBR, what a fast speed. BRBR, before she finished speaking, her whole body suddenly burst into golden light. BRBR, the light was like the scorching sun in the sky, dyeing the entire night sky golden. BRBR, in the light, a huge golden shadow condensed behind her, several feet tall, with a solemn face and slightly lowered eyes. BRBR, the golden shadow protected her whole body, like a thick and solid barrier. BRBR, if you are angry, you can take action. BRBR, not to mention 1 palm, even 10 palms. I am willing to accept it and will never fight back. BRBR, in her opinion, Chu Feng is just a junior who has just entered the Mahayana stage. BRBR, no matter how talented he is, he can never be her opponent. BRBR, whether he slapped her or not, it didn't matter to her. BRBR, she gave him this opportunity just because he was the future emperor and gave him a step down. BRBR, Chu Feng saw the disdain in her eyes, and a cold and cruel smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. BRBR, he didn't say much, and didn't even raise his hand. BRBR, with a thought, the 10,000 demons devouring heart technique comes into play. BRBR, a wisp of invisible and insubstantial evil thoughts emerged from the depths of his soul. BRBR, that demonic thought has no spear. It will power fluctuation, and even a strong person in the Mahayana stage cannot detect it. BRBR, it passed through the night sky silently, passed through the golden light around Master Miaozhen, and went straight into the depths of her soul. BRBR, at that moment, the golden light around Master Miaozhen suddenly became chaotic. BRBR, the bright golden light is like a stirred lake, turbulent and flickering. BRBR, the golden shadow behind her trembled violently, its solemn face became distorted, a trace of panic flashed in its eyes, and then collapsed. BRBR, for some reason, a flush suddenly appeared on her face. BRBR, the flush spread from her cheeks to her ears, which looked particularly dazzling against the plain white dress. BRBR Miaozhen Venerable closed his eyes tightly, his eyelashes trembled violently, and fine beads of sweat oozed from his forehead. BRBR, in her mind, the scene of that night at Jialan Temple crazily emerged. BRBR, she stood on the roof of the Sutra Pavilion, worried that her disciple Chiyang Fan would be poisoned by Xianxin, but because she was worried about the sex cause and effect, she was unable to intervene, so she could only watch in secret. BRBR, afterwards, she has been blaming herself deeply, feeling guilty that she failed to protect her disciple immediately and put Chiyang Fan in danger. This obsession became the deepest crux of her heart. BRBR, after so many years of meditation, I was disturbed by this guilt that night. BRBR, in the bottom of her heart, there was a strong sense of self-blame and anxiety, which made her confused. BRBR, I can only work hard to cultivate myself, suppress that obsession and prevent it from leaking out at all. BRBR, she thought she succeeded, thought it was just a temporary mood swing, thought that as long as she didn't think about it, it would disappear on its own. BRBR, but it has not disappeared. It has been hiding there like a seed buried in the ground, waiting for the day it reeks out of the ground. BRBR, at this moment, the power of the 10,000 demons devouring heart art is that spring rain. BRBR, the inner demons completely broke out. BRBR, no. Don't, I'm just worried about my disciple. I'm not deliberately watching. BRBR, I just want to confirm whether Chiyang Fan can save the day. BRBR, although I stayed in the dark and never showed up, I am still suffering. BRBR, seeing this, Chu Feng's heart suddenly stirred up a storm. BRBR, he never expected that the inner demon buried deep in the heart of this high-ranking venerable Sanskrit pure sect, the top powerhouse of the 8th level of the Mahayana, would be this matter. BRBR, he originally thought that Venerable Miaozhen was mentally stable, but he never expected that her inner demon was actually her guilty obsession with her disciple that night. BRBR, this thought flashed through Chu Feng's mind, and he looked at Master Miaozhen, who was almost unsteady in front of him. BRBR, taking this opportunity, the spiritual power in his body surged crazily. BRBR, revenge will be taken, he will never be soft-hearted. BRBR, Chu Feng suddenly raised his hand with a spiritual light in his palm, and struck the shoulder of Master Miaozhen with a palm. BRBR, bang, BRBR, a loud noise, like thunder exploding, echoed in the silent night sky. BRBR, the golden body that Master Miaozhen was so proud of instantly shattered under this palm, and flew away in the night wind like fireflies, fleeting. BRBR, the golden body was her most proud defense method, but at this moment, under Chu Feng's palm, it was as fragile as paper. BRBR, it was the inner demon in her body that made it impossible for her to concentrate on operating her spiritual power, which allowed Chu Feng to take advantage of it. BRBR, Chu Feng's palm firmly patted Venerable Miaozhen's shoulder. The palm force was steady and did not mean to be frivolous. BRBR Miachan Venerable let out a muffled groan. Why? A kind of uncontrollable pain. BRBR at this moment, her mind was completely lost, and the inner demons that had just been triggered by the 10,000 demons devouring hard art were still surging in her body, causing her spiritual power to be disordered, and she could no longer muster even half of her cultivation to resist. BRBR Chu Feng's palm invaded Master Miachan's body and combined with the inner demons that had been triggered before, shattering her soul's defense line into pieces. BRBR Master Miaozen's body was completely out of control. Wrapped up by that force, his whole body flew straight out of the deck of the royal sky boat like a kite with broken strings. BRBR Chu Feng followed him like a shadow, with his palms on the shoulders of Master Miachan, and they fell into the dense forest below. The previous article and this chapter have been changed. The heroine and the supporting character have nothing to do with Buddhism or any religion. BRBR below, there is a lush and dense forest. BRBR the forest is filled with the smell of moist earth and the fragrance of vegetation. Occasionally, a few insects and birds can be heard, which is particularly clear in the silent night. BRBR the two fell one after another, passing through layers of branches and leaves, and finally landed heavily on a soft grass deep in the jungle. BRBR Miachan Venerable curled up slightly and gasped for air. BRBR my chest rises and falls violently, and the plump curves wrapped in clothes rise and fall with it. BRBR after landing, Venerable Miao Zhen's inner demons triggered by the heart-devouring art of 10,000 demons completely exploded. BRBR the lust that she had suppressed for several days now surged out like a flood that burst a dam, drowning her whole body in an instant. BRBR her soul defense line completely collapsed, her consciousness was in chaos, and she could not muster even half of her spiritual power to resist. BRBR as the head of the Fanning Jing sect, she has always been dignified and holy, and is respected by countless disciples. BRBR but at this moment, she was so disturbed by her inner demons that her whole body was unbearably hot. BRBR the more she tried to suppress it, the clearer the images became and the more lingering they became, trapping her like a nightmare. BRBR the pure heart, all evil will not invade. BRBR but the power of Lingjue seemed so pale and weak at this moment, and it could not suppress the surging inner demons at all, but made her even more panicked. BRBR her voice became more and more urgent, and finally turned into an indistinct murmur. Even she herself did not know what she was saying. BRBR Chu Feng looked at her condescendingly, with undisguised sarcasm in his voice. BRBR you just said that I am willing to accept 10 slaps. BRBR before he finished speaking, he raised his hand and slapped Master Miaozen hard on the cheek. BRBR packing, BRBR his force was just enough to leave a light red palm print on the cheek of Master Miaozen, extending from the cheekbone to the lower jaw, clearly visible in the moonlight. BRBR are you awake? BRBR Miachan Venerable's head was beaten to one side, and a few stray strands of hair were flying in the air, covering half of her face. BRBR the pain from that slap was like a basin of ice water being poured down on her head, making her chaotic consciousness wake up a little in an instant. BRBR she bit her thin lips tightly, so hard that a faint trace of blood oozed from her lips. BRBR come again. BRBR pa, BRBR this palm was a little heavier than before, and the sound was crisper. BRBR Miachan Venerable also had a light red palm print on the other cheek, which was symmetrical and particularly eye-catching in the moonlight. BRBR with this palm falling, the chaotic lust in Master Miachan's eyes finally faded a bit. BRBR her pupils gradually focused, and her mind became much clearer. BRBR not even close. BRBR Chu Feng looked at her appearance and directly approached her. BRBR pa, BRBR after the palm came down, Master Miachan's body trembled slightly, but he did not turn his head again. He just closed his eyes and let the palm fall on his face. BRBR after a stick of incense. BRBR Miachan Venerable's clothes were messy, his skirts were stained with grass clippings and soil, his hair was scattered around his shoulders, and there were still a few light red palm prints on his cheeks. BRBR but her expression was calmer than ever before. BRBR thank you, fellow Taoist, for helping me break my delusion. BRBR she clasped her hands together and bowed deeply to Chu Feng with a respectful attitude, completely different from the aloof look she had just now. BRBR Chu Feng. Ji looked at her, the corners of his mouth slightly raised, and said nothing. BRBR he can completely activate the heaven refining diagram to directly devour the inner demon, and there is no need to use this method at all. BRBR but he deliberately used this method to make her suffer. These slaps were not only to vent his anger, but also to teach her a lesson. BRBR if you still need to break the illusion in the future, just come to me. BRBR Master Miaozen sat up and was about to leave, but at this moment, there was a sound of breaking through the air in the distance. BRBR the voice came from far and near, not one person, but many people. BRBR Chu Feng and Master Miachan raised their heads at the same time and looked in the direction where the sound came from. BRBR outside the dense forest, in the night sky, golden rays of light streaked through the sky like shooting stars. BRBR those are the monks from the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas. They are dressed in golden cassocks, holding Zen staffs or beads. The Buddha's light is flowing around them and their breath is strong. BRBR in just a moment, dozens of golden figures landed around the royal skyboat, surrounding the entire royal skyboat. BRBR their expressions were solemn, the magic weapons in their hands glowed with a faint Buddhist light, and they were ready to take action at any time. BRBR the leader was an old monk with white eyebrows, a golden cassock, and a bronze Zen staff in his hand. His breath was unfathomable. BRBR when Chu Feng saw this, his eyes were sharp and his hands were quick, and he pressed his big hand directly on the chest of Master Miachan. BRBR Miachan Venerable, who was just about to stand up, pressed her back to the ground again. Her back fell heavily on the soft grass, making a muffled sound. BRBR Miachan Venerable's throat suddenly rolled, and his usually calm heart was beating so fast that it almost jumped out of his chest. BRBR Xiel okayed through the tiny gaps between the branches and leaves of the dense forest and clearly saw golden figures surrounding Yakongzhou. BRBR as the leader of the Fanning Jing sect, if someone from the Buddhist sect of the 10,000 Buddhas cave saw her in such disheveled clothes and being pinned down by a man, BRBR she couldn't even imagine that scene. BRBR the reputation of the Sanskrit pure sect will be destroyed in one day. BRBR at this moment, the cabin door of Yakongzhou opened. BRBR two slender figures walked out one after another, it was Qing Fan and Lingxi. BRBR Qing Fan walked in front, looking around and frowning slightly. BRBR seniors, what are you doing? BRBR Lingxi followed her, holding Qing Fan's sleeves with her small hands, looking curiously with her big eyes. BRBR Miachan Master clearly saw his two direct disciples through the gaps between the branches and leaves of the dense forest. BRBR Qing Fan was looking in the direction of the dense forest. Although his eyes were not focused on her, it was enough to make Venerable Miachan's heart suddenly tighten, as if it was being tightly grasped by an invisible big hand. BRBR her breathing became rapid and disordered, and her chest rose and fell violently, causing Chu Feng's palms to fluctuate as well. BRBR at this moment, there was only one thought in her mind, which must not be seen by Qing Fan and Lingxi. BRBR if they saw her like this, where would she put her dignity as a master? BRBR Chu Feng looked down at her panicked look, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised, revealing a playful smile. BRBR he did not let go, but deliberately increased the strength on his hand. BRBR Miachan Venerable's delicate body stiffened suddenly, and the pleading in her eyes became a little stronger. BRBR the old monk's eyes fell on Qing Fan and he looked up and down. BRBR the 9th grade elixir calamity has just fallen here, and its power has shaken the west. Region. I wonder which master is refining the elixir here. BRBR Qing Fan's heart tightened, she knew that Chu Feng had a heaven-defying opportunity, and if his identity was exposed, it would definitely attract the covetousness of all forces. BRBR as the saying goes, the wind will destroy the wood that is beautiful in the forest. She must find a way to cover it for him. BRBR she took a deep breath and tried to look calm and calm. BRBR there was indeed an outsider immortal refining the elixir here just now. Now the immortal has drifted away without leaving any trace. BRBR however, instead of dispelling the doubts of everyone in the 10,000 Buddha's ancient cave, these remarks made them narrow their eyes. BRBR at this moment, they only have the same thought in their minds, this person is the peerless expert in alchemy. BRBR a flash of understanding flashed in the old monk's eyes, and the young man wanted to hide his clumsiness. BRBR real peerless masters are often so low-key and do not want to reveal their identity. BRBR thinking of this, his tone instantly became more respectful. BRBR, don't worry, little friend, we will never tell anyone what happened tonight. BRBR the monks behind him also nodded in agreement, each of them looking solemn, as if they were making some oath. BRBR, that's right, we haven't seen these two little friends tonight, we haven't seen anything, and we haven't heard anything. BRBR, we hope that these two little friends can go to the Buddha conference in the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas. BRBR I think if the immortal is free, please appreciate it. BRBR Qing Fan blinked his eyes, always feeling that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what was wrong specifically. BRBR I am not the one who made the alchemy. The immortal has indeed left. BRBR the more urgent her tone became, the more everyone in the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas strengthened their judgment. BRBR the old monk stroked his beard, smiled and nodded. BRBR my little friend, there is no need to say more, we all understand that we will never talk too much. BRBR after that, he led the monks and left quickly. BRBR the golden light drew arcs in the night sky and disappeared in the distant sky. BRBR Qing Fan opened his mouth and wanted to explain again, but found that no one believed her. BRBR. The more she explained, the deeper the misunderstanding became, and the eyes of those people became more and more respectful. BRBR. Looking at the departing figures, she stamped her feet anxiously. BRBR. It's really not me. BRBR. Outside the dense forest, silence was restored again, with only the rustle of the leaves blown by the night wind. BRBR. After the people in the 10,000 Buddha's ancient cave completely left, Chiyang Fan and Lingxi looked at each other. Chiyang Fan shook his head helplessly. BRBR. She originally wanted to help Chu Feng cover up. She didn't expect to get her in. BRBR. The monks in the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas may have recognized her as the immortal who made the alchemy. BRBR. She smiled bitterly and sighed, but there was nothing she could do about it. BRBR. However, the calamity had already dissipated. The two of them looked at Chu Feng's room at the same time. BRBR. At this moment, they just wanted to find out what kind of heaven-defying elixir Chu Feng had refined. BRBR. The two of them walked towards Chu Feng's room, and the sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor of the cabin. In the dense forest, Master Miachan's tense body finally relaxed. BRBR. Her body collapsed on the grass, as if all her strength had been drained away. BRBR. Chu Feng let go of her hands and stood up. BRBR. You and I have settled our grievances. BRBR. Master Miaozhen stood up on the grass, his legs were still a little weak. BRBR. She raised her hand to tuck the scattered hair behind her ears, trying to make herself look less embarrassed. BRBR. You took away my disciple's pure essence, and you still looked like you had suffered a big loss. BRBR. Chu Feng looked her up and down and said meaningfully, BRBR. I don't like the feeling of being calculated by others. How do you know that I want to get her pure essence? BRBR. Hearing this, Master Miachan asked subconsciously, BRBR. Then whose pure essence do you want? BRBR. Chu Feng looked at her appearance and suddenly took a step forward and leaned close to her ear. BRBR. Yours. BRBR. His breath was warm, gently brushing against the shell of her ear, causing a tingling sensation. BRBR. I almost forgot, I only slapped 9 times just now, and there is still one more to go. BRBR. Before Master Miachan had time to react, Chu Feng's palm touched her plump curves. BRBR. The curve oscillates, swaying slightly in the night wind. BRBR. Miachan Venerable trembled violently, and his plump body instantly tensed up, like a fully drawn bow. BRBR. By the time she came to her senses, Chu Feng had already walked away. BRBR. He actually wants mine. Senior sister, didn't you say before that the Buddhist conference is a grand event where geniuses gather? BRBR. Why are all the people here crooked and cracked? This is similar to the entrance examination of our Fanning Pure sect. BRBR. Chiyang Fan couldn't help but chuckle when he heard this, with a trace of helplessness in his eyes, and then raised his hand to point to the inner courtyard of the temple hidden in the clouds in the distance. BRBR. This is just the outer square of the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas. It is a real gathering of Buddhist disciples, divided into an outer courtyard and an inner courtyard. BRBR. The most important thing for the Buddhas and elders of the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas has never been cultivation, but Buddhist fate. BRBR. Buddha fate? Lingxi blinked. BRBR. That's right. Chiyang Fan explained, those with shallow Buddhist connections are not even qualified to enter the inner courtyard. BRBR. The real geniuses are now in the inner courtyard of the temple, waiting for the final assessment. BRBR. Most of the people here just come to try their luck, or to witness the grand occasion of the Buddhist conference. BRBR. Ling Tide suddenly realized, and then said eagerly. BRBR. Then let's go in quickly, don't let those real geniuses get the first step. BRBR. Chiyang Fan shook his head and his eyes fell on a huge stone wall in the center of the square. BRBR. It's not that easy. BRBR. She pointed at the stone wall and said. BRBR. Only by writing poems with Buddha nature on this Buddhist wall to prove that you have enough Buddhist connections can you enter the inner courtyard. BRBR. Lingxi followed her gaze and saw that the stone wall was crowded with people. Many monks were frowning and making strokes on the ground, as if they were thinking hard. BRBR. Write poetry? Lingxi's face fell instantly. Do you need to have Buddha nature? BRBR. She is the worst at this. It's okay to ask her to wield a knife and a gun, but it is simply too difficult for her to write a poem with Buddha nature. BRBR. What can we do? BRBR. Chiyang Fan looked at her like this, a smile flashed in his eyes. BRBR. She recalled the scene that night when several Buddhas and elders at the 10,000 Buddhas cave mistook her for the prodigy who had refined the 9th grade elixir and treated her with great respect, and she suddenly had an idea. BRBR. Perhaps, I can take you in. BRBR. Lingxi felt happy and asked quickly. BRBR. Senior sister, what can you do? BRBR. Chiyang Fan didn't say anything, but just stepped towards the Buddha's edge wall. BRBR. Seeing this, the surrounding monks stepped out of the way and looked curiously at this woman with an extraordinary temperament. BRBR. Chiyang Fan walked to the stone wall, closed his eyes and meditated for a moment. BRBR. Immediately, she stretched out her slender fingers, a faint golden light glowed on her fingertips, and slowly wrote a line of words on the stone wall. BRBR, the body is like a Bodhi tree, and the mind is like a mirror, which should be brushed diligently at all times to avoid dust. BRBR, the handwriting is delicate and powerful, and with each stroke, the stone wall vibrates slightly, as if responding to the power of this Buddhist verse. BRBR, when the last word was written, there was a sudden silence between heaven and earth. BRBR, then, deep in the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas, the legendary 1,000-year-old bell suddenly rang on its own, and the bell sounded. The melodious sound spread throughout the mountain gate, even frightening the birds in the forest. BRBR, auspicious clouds gathered in the sky, and golden light shone. BRBR, a vague shadow of the Bodhisattva loomed in the clouds, with lowered eyebrows, as if looking at the person who wrote the Buddha's verse. BRBR, oh my God, is this the Bodhisattva appearing? BRBR, the bells are ringing and the Bodhisattva's shadow appear. This is a sign of a profound relationship with Buddha. BRBR, who is this woman? She has such profound Buddha nature. BRBR, the crowd of onlookers was instantly excited, and they knelt down and worshipped on the ground, their eyes full of wonder. BRBR, even the monks who were still thinking hard at this moment stopped their movements and looked at Ching Fan in shock. BRBR, this is the Saint Ching Fan of the Fanning Pure sect. BRBR, unexpectedly, even people from the Fanning Jing sect came to attend the Buddhist conference. BRBR, it is indeed the most beautiful place in the western region, it is so beautiful. BRBR, at this moment, the door of the inner courtyard of the 10,000 Buddha's ancient cave opened. BRBR, an old monk with white beard and hair walked out quickly, surrounded by several disciples. BRBR, his eyes fell on Ching Fan, and excitement flashed in his eyes. BRBR, Huiming put his hands together and saluted. BRBR, Amaba, the poor monk Huiming of the 10,000 Buddha's ancient cave has met the donor. BRBR, the donor has shown the true meaning of spiritual practice and has a deep connection with Buddhism, which is really a blessing for me as a Buddhist. BRBR, Ching Fan bowed slightly and returned the gift. BRBR, Senior, you are too polite. BRBR, Huiming's eyes were full of admiration. He was also there on the night when the tax was reduced. At first, everyone guessed that it was the elixir refined by Ching Fan. BRBR, now it seems that he is more convinced of his suspicion. BRBR, the donor has a clear Buddha nature and should enter the inner courtyard to attend the conference of Buddhist disciples. BRBR, the poor monk hereby invites the benefactor to enter the inner courtyard and discuss Buddhism with all the distinguished disciples. BRBR, after that, he turned sideways and made a pleased gesture. BRBR, Ching Fan nodded, but did not move immediately. BRBR, she turned around and looked at Lingxi. BRBR, this is my junior sister, Lingxi. BRBR, Huiming also had an impression of Lingxi, and stood beside Ching Fan that night. BRBR, it turned out to be Fairy Lingxi, please come in together. BRBR, Lingxi was overjoyed and quickly thanked her. BRBR, thank you. BRBR, however, Ching Fan's eyes turned to Chu Feng, who was standing aside. BRBR, this is also the fellow Taoist who came with me, Chu Feng. BRBR, hearing this, Huiming couldn't help but look Chu Feng up and down. BRBR, in addition to his extraordinary handsome appearance, Chu Feng was a bit ordinary. BRBR, Huiming didn't want to refute Ching Fan's reputation, so he nodded. BRBR, then please come in together. BRBR, as soon as these words came out, the originally silent square exploded in an instant. BRBR, what? Why can they get in? BRBR, we are here thinking hard and writing dozens of poems but no response. He has done nothing, so why can he get in? BRBR, the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas also said that it depends on the Buddha's fate. I think it depends on the background and power. BRBR, just because we are casual cultivators, we should be turned away. This is unfair. BRBR, Huiming's expression remained unchanged, but there was a trace of embarrassment in his eyes. BRBR, of course he didn't take these casual cultivators seriously, but everyone speaks loudly. If this matter spreads, it would be said that the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas is nepotistic. It would damage the reputation of their holy land. BRBR, Ling Tide was immediately angry. She hated people who said grapes were sour. BRBR, damn it, you can't write a Buddhist verse yourself, so you still have the nerve to be jealous of us? BRBR, she was just about to continue to refute, but Chu Feng suddenly waved his hand. BRBR, you go in first. BRBR, Ching Fan was startled and turned to look at him. Chu Feng, you dashed. BRBR, Chu Feng's expression was calm, but his eyes were extremely firm. BRBR, don't worry. I will definitely be able to get in. BRBR, Ching Fan looked at him, was silent for a moment, and finally nodded. BRBR, okay, then we will wait for you inside. BRBR, after that, Ching Fan took Lingxi, and under the guidance of Huiming, stepped into the gate of the inner courtyard. BRBR, the vermilion gate slowly closed, isolating the noise. BRBR, the surrounding monks did not disperse, but gathered around, with sarcasm and disdain in their eyes. BRBR, humph, it's easy to say, who do you think you are? BRBR, at this moment, Chu Feng suddenly took a step forward and walked to the Buddha's edge wall. BRBR, he looked at the Buddhist verse left by Ching Fan and shook his head slightly. BRBR, I am a Bodhi tree. The heart is like a bright mirror, Always brush it diligently to avoid attracting dust. BRBR he read it softly, and then spoke lightly. BRBR, the understanding is good, but it is a pity that I have not yet understood the true meaning. BRBR as soon as the statement came out, the surrounding area was quiet for a moment, and then bursts of ridicule broke out. BRBR, did you hear it? He said that Fairy Ching Fan did not understand the true meaning. BRBR, isn't this person a lunatic? Fairy Ching Fan attracted the phantom of the Bodhisattva and the bells rang. He actually said that she didn't understand the true meaning? BRBR, have you figured it out? If you have the ability, write one. BRBR Chu Feng ignored the looks of the people around him as if they were looking at a madman, nor did he pay attention to the sarcasm in his ears. BRBR a ray of spiritual light condensed on his fingertips, and he began to write a Buddhist verse. BRBR Bodhi has no tree, and a mirror is not a stand. When the people around him saw this, they even sneered. BRBR, oh, you really dare to do it, and you are not afraid of blaspheming the Buddha. BRBR I don't understand what I copied. The first few sentences were written by Fairy Ching Fan, so he can save trouble. BRBR it's really embarrassing. What kind of Buddhist relationship do you want to talk about after plagiarizing? BRBR however, when Chu Feng wrote the next two sentences, a sudden change occurred. BRBR, there is nothing in the first place, so where is the dust? BRBR boom, BRBR the moment the last word fell, the entire ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas seemed to be shaken by an invisible force. BRBR the color of the sky and the earth changes, and the storm surges. BRBR the originally clear sky was instantly torn apart by countless golden Buddha lights. BRBR auspicious clouds are rolling, thousands of auspicious auras are flowing, the sky is filled with smallpox falling like rain, and the air is filled with an indescribably rich fragrance. BRBR the ancient bell hanging deep in the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas was ringing frantically on its own at this moment, as if to welcome the arrival of the Lord Buddha. BRBR what's going on? BRBR everyone was completely dumbfounded, and their jaws almost dropped to the ground. BRBR I saw that the 4 Buddhist verses written by Chu Feng on the Buddha's edge wall turned into a golden beam of light at this moment, soaring straight into the sky. BRBR immediately afterwards, an incredible scene happened. BRBR countless shadows of Buddha appear in the pillars of light. They are sitting or standing, holding lotus flowers, or sitting in lotus position. Each one is lifelike and exudes solemnity. BRBR Sanskrit sounds lingered, and the sound of scripture recitation seemed to come from ancient times, hitting the depths of everyone's soul. BRBR behind Chu Feng, the shadow of a huge Bodhi tree grew slowly, with lush branches and leaves, covering the sky and the sun. Each leaf was emitting golden Buddha light, enveloping Chu Feng's entire body, as if the Buddha had come to the world. BRBR oh my god, this is the vision of the 10,000 Buddhas Chaozong. BRBR there is nothing in the first place, so how can there be dust? This is simply the most ideal principle of Buddhism. BRBR, compared to the diligent brushing of the Ching Fan fairy, this is the true fate of Buddhism. BRBR inner courtyard of the temple. BRBR this place is completely different from the hustle and bustle of the outer courtyard. Dozens of powerful men from various Holy Land sects are sitting around the main hall, drinking tea and discussing Taoism. BRBR as soon as Lingxi saw Master Miachan, she felt as if she had found her backbone and waved excitedly. BRBR Master. BRBR she couldn't wait to sit next to Master Miachan and chirped. BRBR Master, my sister wrote a Buddhist verse, which attracted the phantom of the Bodhisattva. Those people were so envious. BRBR Miachan Venerable looked at Ching Fan, his eyes full of joy. BRBR Ching Fan's Buddha nature is indeed profound, and it lived up to my original expectations. BRBR as soon as he finished speaking, the ground of the temple suddenly shook violently, and even the glazed tiles of the main hall were shaking. BRBR then, countless golden Buddha lights penetrated the roof and shone in the main hall. BRBR what's going on? BRBR everyone in the hall was stunned, stood up one after another, and looked in the direction outside the temple in horror. BRBR on the sky, 10,000 Buddhas appeared, and the shadow of the Bodhi tree blocked the sky. The scene was thousands of times more spectacular than the vision caused by Ching Fan. BRBR Lingxi's eyes widened, her mouth opened in an O shape, and she stammered for a long time. BRBR what's going on? BRBR who on earth is this person who has more connections with Buddhism than my senior sister? BRBR it is simply the appearance of Buddha. BRBR at this time, all the monks and elders in the 10,000 Buddhas cave were completely unable to sit still. BRBR impossible, this is absolutely impossible. BRBR 10,000 Buddhas came to the sect and Bodhi appeared in the world. I have only seen this kind of vision in ancient books. BRBR, could it be that some hidden Buddhist master has come? BRBR quick, go and have a look. BRBR even Xianbei, the leader of the 10,000 Buddhas ancient cave, suddenly opened his eyes. He held a 9-ring tin staff and appeared at the door of the main hall in a flash. BRBR Xianbei led a group of Buddhas and elders and ran out of the temple quickly. BRBR at this time, the square was already filled with crows. The bird was silent. BRBR all the monks were kneeling on the ground, not daring to raise their heads. BRBR Chu Feng was about to step into the door of the temple, when Master Xianbei stopped and his eyes first fell on Chu Feng. BRBR, did this little friend see who wrote the Buddhist verse? BRBR Chu Feng looked at the Buddha edge wall behind him and raised his hand to point. BRBR, if you said those 4 sentences, they were written by me. BRBR Xianbei was shocked and stared at Chu Feng. BRBR, what did you say? BRBR, he said no more, turned around and ran quickly to the base of the wall, his eyes falling on the 4 Buddhist verses. BRBR, the Buddhist verses written by Chu Feng were under Qing Fan, so Xianbei saw the 2 Buddha verses at a glance. BRBR, the body is like a Bodhi tree, and the heart is like a mirror stand. It should be brushed diligently at all times to avoid dust. BRBR, Bodhi has no tree, and the mirror is not a stand. There is nothing there, so where is the dust? BRBR, when his eyes touched the last 2 sentences, his body shook violently. BRBR, this. BRBR Xuanbei's lips bled and he clasped his hands together. BRBR, what are originally nothing, what a where to cause dust. BRBR, the Buddhas and elders behind him also gathered around. When they saw the writings on the stone wall, they all showed the same shocked expression. BRBR, is this person the reincarnated Buddha? BRBR Xianbei took a deep breath, turned around, and looked at Chu Feng from initial suspicion to awe. BRBR, he put his hands together and bowed deeply. BRBR Ba, Xianbei, the first of the ancient caves of 10,000 Buddhas, my fellow Taoist, is destined to be my Buddha. BRBR Chu Feng raised his eyes slightly and asked. BRBR, can I go in? BRBR, hearing the words, Chief Xianbei nodded quickly. BRBR, quick, please take a seat in the hospital. BRBR at this time, Lingxi was sitting next to Master Miachan, still guessing in his mind which master had caused such a big vision. BRBR suddenly, she saw a figure flash at the door of the hall, and a person walked in surrounded by Chief Xianbei and others. BRBR, that's Chu Feng? BRBR, she waved her hands quickly and shouted loudly. BRBR Chu Feng, here. BRBR Chu Feng passed through the crowd and walked directly towards the direction of Master Miachan. BRBR at this time, Lingxi had not yet reacted. She just felt that Chu Feng was so lucky that he actually got in. BRBR, but Qing Fan and Miachan were completely shocked. BRBR Qing Fan stared at Chu Feng, his heart filled with turmoil. BRBR, it turns out that his connection with Buddhism is so deep. BRBR, it is indeed him. BRBR Miachan Venerable watched Chu Feng walking step by step, with a complex look of fear flashing in his eyes. BRBR, the people of Emperor Yun are indeed extraordinary. Don't come here. BRBR Chu Feng walked closer and sat calmly on the other side of Master Miachan in full view of everyone. BRBR, he raised his hand and held it like a claw, and then his fingers slightly bent. BRBR, Senior, we meet again. BRBR, seeing this, the blood in Master Miachan's body seemed to have solidified, and he felt as if a wild beast was sitting next to him. BRBR, she took a deep breath, feeling as if her chest was being ravaged by the air. BRBR, fellow Taoist, it is true that we have a deep connection with Buddha. BRBR, until this moment, Lingxi only reacted belatedly. BRBR, she couldn't help but exclaimed, and then approached Chu Feng. BRBR, you, what Buddhist verses did you write? In the main hall of the inner courtyard of the 10,000 Buddha's ancient cave, everyone's eyes fell on Chu Feng. BRBR Chu Feng picked up the teacup in front of him and took a sip with a calm attitude. BRBR, he put down the teacup and raised his eyes to look at Lingxi, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised with a careless smile. BRBR, I just felt that there was something wrong with Qing Fan's Buddhist verse, so I changed a few words and made it into a poem. It's not a big deal. BRBR, however, as soon as these words came out, there was a moment of silence in the hall. BRBR Qing Fan's expression became extremely complicated at that moment. BRBR, she looked at Chu Feng blankly, her beautiful eyes full of disbelief. BRBR, her Buddhist verses are her own insights gained from years of practice and her understanding of Buddhist principles. BRBR, I thought it was a superior theory, enough to make countless people look up to it. BRBR, but Chu Feng said that he just felt it was inappropriate, so he revised a few words and made up a poem. BRBR, how many words should be modified? BRBR, a few words can trigger the vision of 10,000 Buddhas? BRBR, an indescribable sense of frustration welled up in her heart. She had been practicing cultivation since she was a child and was extremely talented. Her master placed high hopes on her and she had never obeyed anyone among her peers. BRBR, but the appearance of Chu Feng made her feel powerless again and again. BRBR, his cultivation level is higher than hers, his attainments in alchemy are unparalleled, and now he even has a deeper relationship with Buddha than she does. BRBR, and he only changed a few words in her Buddhist verses, and he reached a height that she might not be able to reach in her entire life. BRBR, how could she not be hit by this? BRBR, Ching Fan's fingers curled up slightly and clenched his sleeves, his knuckles turning white. BRBR, she just felt tight in her chest, as if there was a huge boulder pressing there, making her breathless. BRBR, the next moment, she stood up suddenly, even Ling tied beside her was startled. BRBR, senior sister, what's wrong with you? BRBR, I'm going to read that Buddhist verse. BRBR, Ching Fan pursed his lips tightly and raised his feet to walk out of the hall. BRBR, everyone also looked curious. They only saw the vision, but not the verse itself. BRBR, what exactly are written in those 4 sentences that can inspire thousands of Buddhas to worship? BRBR, this question is like a cat's claw scratching at everyone's heart. BRBR, Xianbei, the leader, saw this and smiled slightly. BRBR, he raised his hand and lightly drew his thin fingers in the void. BRBR, golden Buddha light emerged from his fingertips and condensed into a curtain of light over the hall. BRBR, in the light curtain, the handwriting on the wall of Buddha's edge is clearly projected. 2 Buddhist verses, one above and one below, stand side by side. BRBR, everyone, this is the Buddhist verse written by fellow Taoist Chu. BRBR, everyone's eyes fell on the light curtain. BRBR, the main hall fell into a deathly silence. BRBR, the silence lasted for 3 full breaths, and then there was a burst of noise. BRBR, there is nothing in the first place, so where is the dust? What a realm this is, what kind of understanding this is. BRBR, Fairy Ching Fan's always brushing diligently is already a superior Buddhist principle, but these 4 sentences of fellow Taoist Chu are not. Directly pointing to the original heart, enlightenment and enlightenment, this is simply a world of difference. BRBR, one is lingering outside the door, and the other has entered the room. No wonder Taoist friend Chu can arouse the vision of thousands of Buddhas. The depth of this Buddha's connection is indeed clear at a glance. BRBR, who is this person? I have never heard of this person in the Western regions. Is he the reincarnation of a certain Buddhist power? I have only seen this vision in ancient books. I am afraid that only the birth of a true Buddha can trigger such a resonance in the world. BRBR, those usually calm and steady eminent monks all had their faces flushed at this moment, and they were so excited that they could not control themselves. BRBR, the powerful men from various major forces looked at Chu Feng from the initial inspection to appreciation, and even had the intention of recruiting him. BRBR, Ching Fan stood there and looked at the 4 Buddhist verses in the light curtain, his whole body frozen on the spot. BRBR, her lips opened slightly, but she couldn't say a word. BRBR, in the beautiful eyes, shock, frustration, suddenness, bitterness, all kinds of emotions are intertwined together, like knocking over the 5-flavor bottle. BRBR, Bodhi has no tree, and a bright mirror is not a stand. BRBR, she murmured in a low voice, repeating these 2 sentences repeatedly, and suddenly realized that her Buddhist verse was really shallow. BRBR, after a while, she slowly sat back on the futon, lowering her head and saying nothing. BRBR, Myachan Venerable sat beside the main seat, his eyes also fell on the 4 Buddhist verses. BRBR, her expression seemed calm, but the slightly trembling eyelashes revealed the turmoil in her heart. BRBR, those attachments that I once had in my heart, those things that I couldn't let go of, are nothing but fleeting clouds in the face of true Buddhist principles. BRBR, her eyes moved away from the light screen and fell on Chu Feng beside her. BRBR, the young man was holding a teacup with a leisurely expression, as if the shock and noise in the hall had nothing to do with him. BRBR, a complex emotion surged in her heart. In addition to curiosity, there was also a trace of thrilling that even she didn't want to admit. BRBR, no, what was I thinking? BRBR, Myachan master quickly withdrew his gaze, took a deep breath, and suppressed those distracting thoughts. BRBR, her cheeks were slightly red, but she pretended to be calm. BRBR, she is from Ching Fan. How could I, the master, have such thoughts? BRBR, seeing that everyone's emotions gradually calmed down, Chief Xianbei spoke slowly, overpowering the discussion in the hall. BRBR, since such a Buddhist verse has appeared in this world, it shows that today is a great blessing for our Buddhist sect. BRBR, the Buddha conference at the 10,000 Buddhas ancient cave can also begin. BRBR, after hearing this, everyone looked seriously and focused their eyes on Xianbei. BRBR, Xianbei paused, glanced at every young talent present, and then continued. BRBR, Lao Na discovered a secret realm under the temple, called the spiritual realm of 10,000 Buddhas. BRBR, Lao Na plans to take the opportunity of this Buddhist conference to invite the younger generation of geniuses to come in to experience and explore opportunities. BRBR, as soon as this statement came out, everyone was in an uproar. BRBR, the 10,000 Buddhas spiritual realm, isn't that the legendary secret realm? BRBR, I heard the name of the 10,000 Buddha's spiritual realm when I was young. It is said that there are countless ancient inheritances hidden in it. BRBR, countless people have searched for the location of the secret realm, but have always found nothing. Unexpectedly, it is located underground in the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas. BRBR, no wonder the 10,000 Buddhas ancient cave holds a conference of Buddhist disciples. It turns out that it is to open up this secret realm. BRBR, young prodigies come here to practice. This is a great opportunity. If you can get the ancient inheritance, you can reach the sky in one step. BRBR, Xianbei raised his hand to signal everyone to be quiet. BRBR, everyone. The entrance to the secret realm is BRBR. Just when he was halfway through his words, the void suddenly fluctuated. BRBR, although the fluctuation was not obvious, there were many powerful people here, and he immediately felt something was wrong. BRBR, especially Xianbei. He swallowed back what he wanted to say and stared solemnly at the void in front of him. BRBR, the next moment, the space fluctuations moved away, and the void seemed to be distorted, with many wrinkles appearing. BRBR, at this moment, even the younger generation of geniuses noticed something was wrong, and suddenly showed a look of horror. BRBR, what is this? BRBR, the heaven and earth are changing. This is a sign of the heaven and earth changing. BRBR, is there some great disaster coming? BRBR, however, this was just the beginning. BRBR, then, the ground began to tremble violently. BRBR, the stone slabs on the ground were shaken so much that cracks appeared, and the tables and chairs in the hall were swayed. The teacup fell from the table and shattered into pieces. BRBR, the cracks on the wall spread like spider webs, and dust fell from the roof. The whole hall was shaking, as if it would collapse at any time. BRBR, rumble. The elixir was red-gold in color and exuded a strong medicinal fragrance. BRBR, the 8th grade healing elixir, Red Flame Restoration Pill. BRBR, this elixir is made from the bloodline power of the Red Flame Golden Ni clan and combined with more than a dozen elixirs. It has a miraculous effect on healing wounds. BRBR, even though he is the prince of the Red Flame gene Ni, he can only receive 2 Red Flame Restoration Pills as a reward every year. BRBR, taking out this elixir at this moment shows his sincerity. BRBR, Ling Tide looked at the elixir, the alertness in her eyes slightly weakened, but she still did not move away. BRBR, Qing Fan's eyes fell on Jin Yan's face, and then he looked at the elixir in his hand. BRBR, thank you, fellow Taoist, for my injury. I don't need such a precious elixir at all. BRBR, she raised her hand, took out a white healing elixir from her ring, put it into her mouth, and swallowed it gently. BRBR, that was the healing elixir of the Fanning Pure sect. Although the grade was not high, it was enough to temporarily suppress the injuries in her body. BRBR, the elixir enters the throat and turns into a cool breath, spreading along the meridians, and the dull pain in the chest gradually dissipates. BRBR, Jin Yan watched Qing Fan reject his elixir, and a trace of disappointment flashed in his eyes, but he quickly covered it up. BRBR, he took the elixir back to Neji. He was not unhappy at all, but admired Qing Fan's character even more. BRBR, Jin Yan, the 3rd prince of Red Flame Gene Ni in the lower south region. BRBR, Ling Tide glanced sideways at Jin Yan, who introduced herself, and twitched the corner of her mouth slightly. BRBR, who asked you? BRBR, Jin Yan's face froze, and he couldn't help but look embarrassed. BRBR, Qing Fan stood up, cupped his hands, and then spoke. BRBR, Qing Fan of the Western Region Sanskrit Pure Sect, this is my junior sister, fellow Taoist, please don't be familiar with her. BRBR, a smile appeared on Jin Yan's face and he spoke quickly. BRBR, I won't take this very to heart because of his straightforwardness and innocence. BRBR, however, just when he wanted to say something more, he found that Qing Fan's attention was not on him at all. BRBR, Qing Fan glanced around, but his heart became heavier and heavier. Chu Feng and her master were not here at all. BRBR, her brows furrowed, and a trace of anxiety flashed in her eyes. BRBR, fellow Taoist, have you ever seen my master, the Venerable Miao Zhen, and a young man named Chu Feng? BRBR, Jin Yan shook his head and then reminded. BRBR, when the space was in chaos, everyone was randomly teleported to different areas of the secret realm. BRBR, I think they should have been teleported to other places in the secret realm. BRBR, he paused, looking at the growing anxiety in Qing Fan's eyes, and quickly added. BRBR, Fairy Qing Fan, don't worry. Although this place is dangerous, it has its own operating rules. BRBR, in my opinion, we can only find a way out of trouble by waiting for the Buddhas and elders from the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas or their respective elders to come and explore. BRBR, of course he did not come alone. He also had guardians from the clan around him, but he was dragged to other places by the space turbulence. BRBR, now, where they are, there are still many space turbulences around them. If they act rashly, they will be easily strangled, which is too dangerous. BRBR without a cultivation level above the Mahayana stage, rash action is almost equal to death. BRBR Ching Fan bit his lips and was silent for a while. Moment. BRBR she knew what Jin Yan said was right, but her heart could not calm down. BRBR how could she sit here and wait with peace of mind now that the master's whereabouts were unknown? BRBR not to mention. Chu Feng's face appeared in her mind, as if an invisible hand was holding her heart tightly, making her unable to breathe. BRBR no, I can't sit here and wait. BRBR my master and Chu Feng are missing. I must find them. BRBR seeing this, Jin Yan hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth and said, BRBR in this case, I am willing to help the fairy. BRBR Ling Tide seemed to have read through his thoughts and sarcastically said directly, BRBR I advise you not to have any ideas about my senior sister. My senior sister already has a Taoist companion. His name is Chu Feng, a 9th grade alchemist. BRBR as soon as these words came out, Jin Yan's heart beat suddenly. BRBR Ninef. 9th grade alchemy master. BRBR he subconsciously looked at Ching Fan, but saw Ching Fan knocking Lingxi hard on the head. BRBR what nonsense are you talking about? BRBR however, Jin Yan clearly saw a hint of shyness on her face. BRBR at this moment, something seemed to be broken. When he looked inside, he realized that it was his heart that was broken. BRBR Jin Yan took a deep breath and squeezed out a smile that was uglier than crying. BRBR I will help the fairy find fellow Taoist Chu Feng. BRBR the other side. BRBR after the space turbulence subsided, Chu Feng opened his eyes and found that he was in a completely unfamiliar place. BRBR this is a room, a wedding room to be precise. The room. BRBR the room is not big, but it is extremely delicately decorated. BRBR there are big red words of joy on the walls, and red silk hangs from the beams, fluttering gently in the breeze. BRBR there are 2 red candles on the table. The candles have long been extinguished. There were only 2 pools of solid candle tears left. BRBR Chu Feng's eyes swept across the room, and finally fell on the figure beside him, Venerable Miachan. BRBR she stood in the center of the room, her plain white dress looking particularly eye-catching against the red silk. BR Master Miachan looked around, looking at the room that was decorated like a wedding room, and felt an inexplicable misunderstanding in her heart. BRBR especially when she saw Chu Feng, there was only one thought left in her mind, are he and I going to get married? BRBR however, as soon as this idea came to her mind, Ching Fan's face appeared in her mind. BRBR immediately, she shook her head, suppressed the thought, and hid it in her heart. BRBR where are Ching Fan and Lingxi? BRBR at this moment, a strong uneasiness surged in her heart. BRBR then he quickly walked to the door and raised his hand to open the door. BRBR not far outside the door is a transparent barrier. The barrier flows like water waves, covering 100 miles in radius. BRBR Miachan Venerable's face changed slightly, and there was a hint of solemnity in his voice. BRBR is this, a space barrier? BRBR Chu Feng's eyes fell on the barrier, he pondered for a moment, and then he spoke. BRBR the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas has overlapped with the secret realm. This barrier should be a restriction left by the ancient power to isolate this area from the outside world. We were transported here by the turbulent flow of space. BRBR I must get out. BRBR her body flashed, turned into a white light, and rushed towards the barrier. BRBR this barrier is a test of the Taoist heart. Only if the Taoist heart is stable can it pass through. BRBR she was running the Jade Girl's secret to purifying heart, her eyes full of confidence. BRBR even though Chu Feng had ravaged her in every possible way that day, he had a clear mind, so how could he not be able to pass through this barrier? BRBR however, just when her jade hand touched the barrier. BRBR countless runes on the barrier suddenly lit up, pouring out of the barrier like living creatures, flowing along her fingertips and into her body. BRBR Miachan Venerable's body stiffened suddenly, and his whole body froze in place as if a restraining spell had been cast on him. BRBR. Her eyes became empty, her pupils dilated, and her consciousness was pulled into another world in an instant. BRBR the Taoist heart was lacking, and she fell into the illusion of her own Taoist heart. BRBR pictures flashed rapidly in her mind. BRBR the moonlight is like water, and the night wind is like silk. BRBR she heard the muffled gasps coming from the Zen room, her cheeks began to heat up, and her body could not help but tremble slightly. BRBR then the scene changed, and the moonlight spilled through the gaps in the branches and leaves, casting mottled light and shadow on the ground. BRBR she was pushed to the ground by Chu Feng, and his hand was pressed on her chest, ravaging her wantonly. BRBR the cheeks were slapped one after another. In addition to the face, there was also the butt, and, BRBR Chu Feng's voice seemed to be heard in his ears. BRBR your disciple is very smooth. Master Miaozen's delicate body fell from midair as if all its strength had been drained away. Brr, the plain white dress was flying in the wind, and the black hair was scattered, like a kite with a broken string, falling rapidly towards the ground. Brr, her eyes were closed tightly, her brows were furrowed, and the flush from the fantasy still remained on her face. Brr, his lips were slightly opened and he murmured softly. It was obvious that he had completely fallen into a fantasy and could not extricate himself. Brr, Chu Feng sighed, and used the secret technique of calligraphy in an instant. His body disappeared like a stream of light. Brr, the next second, he had appeared under Master Miachan. Brr, my arms stretched out and firmly caught the soft and plump body. The place where I started was as warm and soft as jade. Brr, her body is as light as a feather, but it also has the unique plumpness of a mature woman. Brr, Chu Feng could clearly feel her body temperature, which was much higher than that of ordinary people, as if there was a fire burning in her body. Brr, he looked down at the unconscious Master Miaozen in his arms and shook his head helplessly. Brr, why can't you just listen to what I have to say? Brr, just now, he had planned to run the heaven-refining diagram to devour the inner demons in her body, and then find a way to help her stabilize her Taoist heart. Brr, I didn't expect that the other party was so impatient. He didn't even give him a chance to speak. He broke through the barrier and fell into the illusion. Brr, Chu Feng carried Venerable Miachan back to the wedding room and placed her on the bed. Brr, a few strands of her hair stuck to her sweaty cheeks, making her holy face even more poignant. Brr, the heaven-refining diagram enveloped the body of Venerable Miaozen, devouring and refining the inner demons surging deep in her soul. Brr, those inner demons are distracting thoughts caused by lust, and they are all swallowed up by the heaven-refining diagram at this moment. Brr, although the inner demons were eliminated, Master Miachan still did not wake up. Brr, her eyes were still closed, her brows were still frowning, and her lips were still trembling slightly, as if she was still experiencing something in a fantasy. Brr, the plump and delicate body sometimes tenses and sometimes relaxes, and her fingers unconsciously grasped the brocade quilt under her body, like a drowning person desperately grabbing the last straw. Brr, Chu Feng frowned slightly. The inner demon was just the reason for her to fall into the illusion. What really trapped her was the power of the barrier. Brr, that barrier pulled her into an illusion woven from her deepest desires. Even if her inner demons were swallowed up, if she could not break her obsession in the illusion, she would never wake up. Brr, there is only one way to get her out of the illusion, to get involved with her own body. Brr, Chu Feng took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and the power of his soul surged out from the center of his eyebrows, establishing a connection with the soul of Master Miachan. Brr, his soul turned into a stream of light and entered her illusion. Brr, with a blink of an eye, Chu Feng found himself in a familiar place, Jialan Temple. Brr, the moonlight is like water, shining on the bluestone road with a cold silver glow. Brr, the pagoda in the distance casts a long shadow under the moonlight, and the air was filled with a touch of sandalwood, just like the Jialan Temple that night. Brr, Chu Feng stood on the roof of the sutra pavilion, glanced around, and soon discovered the Miao Zen master in the illusion. Brr, she hid outside the window of the Zen room, pressed her body tightly against the wall, held her breath, and carefully looked into the window. Brr, her face was full of nervousness, but her eyes shone with an indescribable light. Brr, through the window, you can see in the Zen room, the bed curtains are drooped, and two figures are entangled together. Brr, that was Chu Feng and Qing Fan in the illusion, and the lingering sound floated out from the cracks in the window, intermittent in the night wind. Brr, Miachan Venerable's cheeks were getting redder and redder, his breathing was getting faster and faster, his chest was rising and falling violently, and the plump curves wrapped in a plain white dress were rising and falling along with it. Brr, her fingers clenched the hem of her clothes, and her nails were almost embedded in the fabric. Brr, you obviously want to leave, but your legs feel like they are nailed to the ground, and you can't take a step forward. Brr, I can only let those pictures shake in front of my eyes and let those sounds echo in my ears. Brr, Chu Feng looked at the appearance of Master Miachan in the illusion and sighed secretly in his heart. Brr, this is her inner demon. That night, it became a crack in her heart. Now it is infinitely amplified by the power of the barrier, trapping her in this illusion. Brr, Chu Feng jumped down from the roof and landed silently behind her. Brr, Miachan Venerable seemed to notice something, and his body stiffened suddenly. Brr, she turned her head, and the moment she saw Chu Feng, her pupils suddenly shrank, and her face was full of panic. Brr, why are you here? You're not inside. Brr, she pointed to the window and jerked her hand back, as if she had been burned. Brr, at this moment, Venerable Miaozen looked away, just lowering his head and looking at his toes, like a child who was caught doing something wrong. Brr, Chu Feng moved forward slowly, approaching her step by step. BRBR until he walked up to her and looked at her condescendingly. BRBR, what do you think? BRBR Myachon Venerable's mind was in chaos, with countless thoughts surging. BRBR, did he see me peeking? BRBR, will he think I'm mean? BRBR Myachon Venerable's throat seemed to be blocked and he couldn't squeeze out a single word. BRBR, no way, you are already with Chiyang Fan, we can't possibly. BRBR, her words were intermittent and incoherent, and even she herself didn't know what she was talking about. BRBR Myachon Master instinctively wanted to push Chu Feng away, but her body was completely unresponsive and was as stiff as a stone. BRBR Chu Feng did not retreat, but took another half step forward. BRBR, then what are you peeking at here? BRBR, the hot breath was like an electric current, instantly spreading from the ear to the whole body, causing Master Myauzen's delicate body to tremble suddenly. BRBR, her cheeks flushed suddenly, and the redness spread from her cheeks to her ears, which looked particularly dazzling in the moonlight. BRBR, I didn't, don't talk nonsense. BRBR Myachon Venerable wanted to turn her head to avoid the hot breath, but her neck was frozen and she couldn't turn it. BRBR looking at her panicked look, Chu Feng's smile deepened. BRBR, the gaze was neither urgent nor slow, but it carried an aggressiveness that made people unable to escape. BRBR Myachon Venerable's breathing became more and more irregular, and his chest heaved more and more violently. BRBR, she could feel that her reason was collapsing bit by bit, and the lust that had been suppressed for many years was awakening bit by bit. BRBR, I don't want it anymore. BRBR, her delicate body was constantly trembling, from fingertips to toes, every inch was trembling, like dead leaves swaying in the autumn wind. BRBR Chu Feng looked at her appearance and was silent for a moment. BRBR then, he slowly took half a step back, widening the distance between the two. BRBR, his voice was calm, and there was no hint of emotion or anger. BRBR, then shall I leave? BRBR, as soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. BRBR. The moment he turned around, there was an exclamation from behind. BRBR, no. BRBR Myachon Venerable's hand suddenly stretched out and grabbed his sleeve with astonishing force. BRBR Chu Feng stopped for a moment and did not look back. BRBR, the surrounding scene suddenly changed at this moment. BRBR, the moonlight disappeared, the Bodhi tree disappeared, and the Zhaolan temple disappeared. BRBR, everything is like smoke blown away by the wind, fleeting. BRBR, what replaced it was a bright red celebration, with red silk, red candles, red tents, red quilts, and the big red word posted on the wall. BRBR Chu Feng looked around. He was very familiar with it. This was the wedding room in the secret realm. BRBR, his eyes swept around. Everything was exactly the same as the wedding room in reality, except for one difference. BRBR, the surrounding barrier was originally 100 miles outside the wedding room, isolating the entire area from the outside world. BRBR, but at this moment, the barrier shrank unexpectedly, shrinking from 100 miles away to a mere inch, clinging tightly to the wall of the wedding room, enveloping the entire room. BRBR, the golden Buddha light flows on the barrier, exuding soft but irresistible power. BRBR Chu Feng's brows wrinkled slightly, and a trace of doubt arose in his heart. BRBR, had the secret realm been broken? BRBR, but when he saw the shrinking barrier, he could be sure that they were still in the illusion. BRBR, however, the illusion has changed, from Zhaolan temple to a wedding room in a secret realm. BRBR, the illusion is woven from the inner desires of Master Myauzen. The scene in Zhaolan temple corresponds to the inner demon she peeped into. BRBR, the scene in the wedding room corresponds to her desire. BRBR Chu Feng turned around and looked at Master Myachon. BRBR, she still stood there, one hand still holding his sleeve, her eyes full of panic and color. BRBR, if Chu Feng wants to help Master Myachon break through the illusion, he must satisfy her inner desires. BRBR, but there is still an obstacle in her heart, Chiyang Fan. BRBR, that is her disciple and one of the closest people to her in the world. BRBR, that obstacle trapped her tightly, preventing her from taking that step. BRBR Chu Feng's eyes fell on the barrier covering the wedding room, and he had an idea in his mind. BRBR, if you want to break through the barrier and save Chiyang Fan, you must first break through your inner demons. BRBR Master Myauzen raised his head and looked into his eyes full of confusion. BRBR, my inner demon? BRBR Chu Feng nodded, the corners of his mouth slightly raised, he opened his arms, as if he wanted to get whatever he wanted. BRBR, your inner demon is me. BRBR Myachon Venerable's pupils shrank slightly. She looked at Chu Feng's handsome face, and a complex emotion surged in her heart. BRBR, there is shame, fear, struggle, and a desire that is almost overflowing. BRBR, I am just trying to save Chiyang Fan. To save Chiyang Fan, to save Chiyang Fan. BRBR, her eyes were red, tears were rolling in her eyes, but she stubbornly refused to fall. BRBR, then she moved. BRBR her hand suddenly let go of her clothes, and she rushed forward and fell into Chu Feng's arms. BRBR dong, BRBR Chu Feng's back hit the wall, making a dull sound. BRBR before he could speak, Master Miaozhen had already blocked his lips. BRBR Master Miaozhen's heartbeat was as fast as a drum, and the sound echoed in her ears, making her almost faint. BRBR those beautiful eyes were full of mist, like a lake filled with spring water, sparkling and filled with indescribable emotions. BRBR there were tiny teardrops hanging on her eyelashes, which shone with crystal luster under the candlelight. In the blink of an eye, one teardrop rolled down, slid down her cheek, and dripped on the back of Chu Feng's hand. BRBR BRBR Chu Fei. Ying looked at her, the corners of his mouth raised slightly. BRBR continue. BRBR Miachan Venerable's throat rolled and he swallowed a gulp of saliva. BRBR she closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and then leaned forward again. BRBR Chu Feng's hand slipped from her cheek and fell on her slender waist. BRBR her waist was incredibly soft, and when she grasped it, it seemed that it would break if she used more force. BRBR the skirt of her clothes fell down, revealing her smooth shoulders. BRBR the skin was as white as jade, glowing slightly like fine suet jade. BRBR Master Miachan's body trembled suddenly, and an electric current spread from her shoulders to her whole body, making her almost collapse. BRBR the two bodies were completely entangled, surging on the red brocade quilt. An hour later, Master Miachan finally broke free from the endless fog of illusion. BRBR her eyelashes trembled violently for a few times, like a drowning person struggling to surface, and then she opened her eyes suddenly. BRBR in those beautiful eyes, they were confused at first, then clear, and finally settled on an indescribably complex look. BRBR she saw the bright red bed curtain above her head, and her consciousness came back like a tide, bringing every scene in the fantasy to her eyes. BRBR those pictures were so clear that every detail was engraved in her mind like a soldering iron. BRBR she remembered Chu Feng's body temperature and every touch his fingertips left on her skin. BRBR those pictures were so real that her body still retains that shuddering sigh. BRBR what have I done? BRBR she struggled to sit up, and the brocade quilt slipped from her shoulders, revealing a large area of fair skin. BRBR looking down, her pupils suddenly shrank. BRBR her clothes were messy and could not cover her body at all. BRBR the plain white dress was crumpled and the skirt was wide open. The laces of the middle coat were untied at some point and hung loosely on the shoulders, as if they would slip off at any time. BRBR what makes her even more ashamed is that her body is covered with red marks, which are particularly dazzling on her fair skin. BRBR Miachan Venerable's cheeks instantly turned red, making those marks more conspicuous. BRBR with trembling fingers, she pulled up the brocade quilt and wrapped it tightly around herself, revealing only a face that was so red that it was almost bleeding. BRBR what's going on? BRBR as if thinking of something, she immediately checked the pure yuan in her body and found that the pure yuan was still there, and then breathed a long sigh of relief. BRBR but for some reason, there was a hint of loss in his eyes. BRBR however, the feeling of guilt in my heart quickly covered up the trace of loss. BRBR she didn't understand why the two of them were just going through the motions in a fantasy world, and why there were so many traces on her body in reality. BRBR isn't the illusion illusory? BRBR her mind was in chaos, with countless thoughts surging, but she couldn't figure out a clue. BRBR I could only hug the brocade quilt and huddle in the corner of the bed, like a frightened child, trembling uncontrollably. BRBR Qing Fan, I'm sorry, BRBR she is Qing Fan's master, but she is in the illusion with Chu Feng. BRBR at this moment, Chu Feng's voice suddenly sounded. BRBR, since you have broken the illusion, we can go out now. BRBR Miachan Venerable took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down, then raised his head and looked at Chu Feng who was standing not far from the bed. BRBR Chu Feng turned his back to her, standing with his hands behind his hands, looking at the barrier outside the window, as if nothing had happened. BRBR Miachan Venerable's throat rolled and he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. BRBR her voice was hoarse and trembling, with an unspeakable shame, but she still gritted her teeth and said it. BRBR, thank you, fellow Taoist, for helping me get rid of this inner demon. BRBR every word seemed to use up all her strength. After she finished speaking, she lowered her head, not daring to look at his back. BRBR however, the next moment, Chu Feng suddenly turned around and leaned close to her ear. BRBR, just now, you called me good brother. BRBR as soon as these words came out, a surge of heat suddenly rose from the top of Master Miachan's head, and his ears turned red. BRBR don't, stop talking, BRBR her voice was even lower, almost pleading. BRBR don't tell anyone about what happened in the illusion. If Qing Fan knows about it, I would rather die. BRBR her body was trembling slightly, from her fingertips to her toes, every inch was trembling, like a foul len leaf in a storm. BRBR Chu Feng looked at her flushed cheeks and discovered that this Mahayana stage great master was so easy to handle. BRBR, don't worry, your majesty, I won't say anything, but you owe me a favor, and you will have to repay it in the future. BRBR his tone was understated, as if everything that happened in the illusion was just a passing cloud. BRBR but it was this calm attitude that caused an indescribable complex emotion to surge up in Master Miachan's heart. BRBR she didn't know whether she should be relieved or feel lost. BRBR don't worry, in the future, if you ask for anything, I will help you. BRBR as if thinking of something, Chu Feng showed a meaningful smile. BRBR really? BRBR Miachan Venerable didn't know what he was thinking, so he nodded heavily. BRBR of course it's true. There is no way to repay the kindness of saving a life. BRBR Chu Feng raised his finger and pointed at his cheek, approaching the red lips of Master Miaozhen. BRBR then kiss the following first to express your gratitude. BRBR when Master Miachan heard this request, his beautiful eyes suddenly widened and his delicate body subconsciously leaned back. BRBR you, what did you say? BRBR Chu Feng immediately washed his face at night, and his tone became a bit colder. BRBR I just said that I can't help but now I can't even satisfy such a small request. BRBR he chuckled and said meaningfully. BRBR you can't repay the kindness of saving your life? BRBR the corner of Venerable Miachan's mouth twitched slightly. Although the two of them were flying in the clouds and mist in the illusion, it was just an illusion after all. BRBR she has already felt sorry for Qingfan mentally. Does she have to feel sorry for Qingfan physically? BRBR fellow Taoist, we can't make the same mistake again and again. BRBR but then she changed the topic again, with a trace of determination flashing in her eyes. BRBR this I.'s the last time. In the future, I will never agree to such a ridiculous request of yours again. BRBR hearing this, Chu Feng couldn't help but raise his brows, and then tilted his head slightly. BRBR seeing this, Master Miachan got out of bed and raised his head to Chu Feng's face. BRBR the distance between the two became closer and closer, and she subconsciously closed her eyes. BRBR however, at the moment when the red lips were about to be printed on Chu Feng's cheek, Chu Feng suddenly turned his head. BRBR Miachan Venerable opened his eyes immediately, but it was too late, Chu Feng printed it directly. BRBR BRBR after a stick of incense. BRBR a bite mark appeared on Chu Feng's thin lip, and a trace of blood gushed out. BRBR Miachan Venerable was sitting on the edge of the bed, breathing heavily. BRBR she quickly took out a set of clean clothes from the ring, and changed out of the messy clothes with trembling hands. BRBR when she finally finished tidying up and stood up, her expression had returned to its former coldness and calmness. BRBR however, the thin lips were glowing with redness, and there seemed to be a trace of bloody smell left on the tip of the tongue. BRBR, let's leave quickly. BRBR she walked past Chu Feng, not daring to look into his eyes at all. BRBR this time, the barrier didn't stop her. BRBR the runes flickered slightly the moment she touched the barrier, and then parted to both sides like water waves, making way for her. BRBR the moment her footsteps stepped out of the barrier, her whole body seemed to have been relieved of a huge burden, and even her breathing became much easier. BRBR in the distance, there are rolling mountains, exotic flowers, and grasses everywhere, and the air is filled with rich aura. BRBR but she had no intention of appreciating these, as she was preoccupied with Qingfan's safety. BRBR I wonder how Qingfan is doing now. BRBR at this moment, when she thought of Qingfan, the figure of Chu Feng could not help but appear in her mind. BRBR the inner demon seemed to be getting more and more serious. BRBR forcibly suppressing the charm in her heart, she took out the messenger jade talisman from the ring, injected her spiritual power into it, and wanted to contact Qingfan. BRBR light cyan aura bloomed from the surface of the jade talisman, turning into a slender trace of light and dissipating in the void. BRBR then, there was no more. BRBR the trace of light floated in the void for a moment, then seemed to hit an invisible wall, slowly dissipating without any response. BRBR she tried again, twice, and 3 times, but every time she tried nothing, with no news. BRBR Miachan Venerable's face changed slightly, and his brows furrowed tightly. BRBR the space is in chaos, and the spiritual power of the messenger jade talisman cannot penetrate the layers of space barriers. BRBR the space here is in chaos, and the jade talisman that conveys the message is invalid. BRBR we must find Qingfan as soon as possible. Her cultivation level is still shallow, and so is Lingxi's. If we encounter danger in this secret realm, BRBR Chu Feng nodded, and the two of them moved, turning into 2 streams of light, and flew into the distance into the sky. BRBR the 10,000 Buddha's spiritual realm is much larger than they imagined, and it seems to have no end. BRBR the two flew all the way, their consciousness scanning every inch of the land below, but no trace of Qingfan and Lingxi was found. BRBR as time went by, she became more and more anxious. BRBR, where are they? BRBR at this moment, the two of them flew over a valley, and Chu Feng's eyes suddenly focused. BRBR, he paused and stopped in midair, his eyes falling on a hall deep in the valley. BRBR, it is a bronze-colored palace, made entirely of bronze. After countless years, it is still tall and majestic. BRBR, Chu Feng's ES fell on the bronze palace, and a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. BRBR, he could feel that there was an extremely majestic power contained in the palace. Although that power was restricted and sealed, it still had a lingering flavor that made people feel heart-stopping. BRBR, there is an ancient inheritance here. BRBR, Master Miachan glanced at the bronze palace and frowned slightly. BRBR, she only had one thought in her mind to find Qing Fan, and she didn't want to worry about anything else. BRBR, Qing Fan is important, let's not waste time. BRBR, Chu Feng did not move, and the next words made Master Miachan's footsteps suddenly stop. BRBR, if the inheritance of this place can attract people from the secret realm, it may also allow Qing Fan to discover this place. BRBR, the secret realm is too big, and our aimless search is like looking for a needle in a haystack. It is difficult to find Qing Fan. BRBR, it is better to create some noise and let Qing Fan come to us on his own initiative. BRBR, Miachan Venerable turned around and looked at Chu Feng, with a trace of thought flashing in his eyes. BRBR, she pondered for a moment and had to admit that what Chu Feng said made sense. BRBR, the 10,000 Buddha's spiritual realm is vast, the space is chaotic, and the jade talisman for sending messages is invalid. They fly down blindly like this, not knowing when they will find it. BRBR, and if an ancient inheritance is opened here, it will inevitably cause strange phenomena in the world. As long as Qing Fan is in the secret realm, he may see it and come here on his own initiative. BRBR, it makes sense. BRBR, the two of them landed in front of the door of the bronze palace, and their eyes fell on the closed bronze door. There was a line of small words on it, those who are destined can enter. BRBR, Chu Feng stepped forward and raised his hand to hold the bronze ring on the door. BRBR, the veins in his arms popped out, spiritual pow. R surged, and all the power of the first level of the Mahayana was poured into his hands. BRBR, but the bronze ring wire did not move, as if it was welded to death, without even a trace of shaking. BRBR, he frowned slightly, increased his strength, and his spiritual power surged out like a tide, but the bronze door remained motionless, and even the runes on the door did not light up. BRBR, Miachan Venerable also looked puzzled and couldn't help but speak. BRBR, you wrote such a profound Buddhist verse, but you are not considered a destined person. The requirements of this ancient inheritance are too harsh. BRBR, Chu Feng shook his head, did not speak, just stepped aside and signaled Master Miachan to try it. BRBR, Master Miaozhen stepped forward, raised his hand to hold the bronze ring, and twisted it gently. BRBR, click. BRBR, the bronze ring turned, and the runes on the bronze door suddenly lit up, covering the entire palace. BRBR, the heavy bronze door opened slowly, making a dull roar. BRBR, Chu Feng. Chu Feng stared at Master Miachan blankly. The door that he couldn't open was opened by her with just a twist. BRBR, he has such a profound connection with Buddha, but he cannot open this door. BRBR, this means that this door is not looking at Buddha's fate, but other things. BRBR, Chu Feng seemed to have thought of something, and his heart suddenly shook. BRBR, he subconsciously activated the Xianyuan Qi Luck Eye, and two undetectable black rays of light flashed through his eyes, looking directly towards Master Miaozhen. BRBR, at this glance, Chu Feng couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. BRBR, I saw that the whole body of Venerable Miaozhen was surrounded by a rich golden halo of luck. BRBR, in the light, the faint shadows of dragons and phoenixes could be seen hovering, and the auspicious clouds and auspicious aura lingered, as if she was the darling of heaven. BRBR, Chu Feng's throat rolled and he swallowed a mouthful of saliva with difficulty. BRBR, he finally knew that what was needed to open this bronze door was not Buddhist fate, but luck. BRBR, although he possesses the immortal martial spirit, in terms of luck, he is far inferior to the master of the Fanning Jing sect in front of him. BRBR, Miachan Master noticed Chu Feng's gaze, lowered his head and looked at his hands, and then at the open bronze door. BRBR, is this door difficult to open? BRBR, Chu Feng took a deep breath, suppressed the shock in his heart, and shook his head. BRBR, it's not difficult, not difficult. BRBR, he raised his feet and stepped into the corridor first. Golden light poured out from the depths of the corridor, shrouding his figure and casting a long shadow. BRBR, Miachan Venerable did not have time to think too much and quickly followed. BRBR, the moment the two stepped into the bronze palace, the sight in front of them made Chu Feng and Master Miachan stop at the same time. BRBR, the hall is a vast and boundless secret space of Buddhism and Taoism. The sky is high and far away, and the stars are dotted, making you feel like you are in the depths of the universe. BRBR, there is a transparent glass floor under your feet. Through the glass, you can see the surging sea of clouds below. There is a faint golden light flowing in the sea of clouds. BRBR, in the center of the space, there is an ancient gilded sutra tower suspended. BRBR, the prayer tower is 9 feet high and is surrounded by colorful Buddhist flames. BRBR, the pressure from the Buddha's flame spread across the entire secret realm, as if an ancient Buddha was sitting here, looking down at the intruders. BRBR, that coercion made Venerable Myachan, a powerful figure at the 8th level of the Mahayana, feel palpitations in his heart, and the spiritual energy in his body began to stir slightly. BRBR, seeing her pupils shrink slightly, there was unconcealable shock in her voice. BRBR, this is the 10,000 Buddhas suppressing prison sutra. BRBR, Chu Feng glanced sideways at her, a trace of doubt flashing in his eyes. BRBR, Myachan Venerable took a deep breath, tried to calm the waves in his heart, and explained. BRBR, the Sutra of 10,000 Buddhas suppressing hell, is the legendary supreme technique used by ancient Buddha emperors to suppress all demons in hell. BRBR, the sutra has been lost for a long time. The entire Buddhist community in the western region is looking for its whereabouts. Unexpectedly, it is hidden in this secret place. BRBR, she paused, her eyes falling on the sutra pillar, her eyes full of complexity. BRBR, if the sutra comes out, the entire Buddhist world in the western region will go crazy for it. BRBR, Chu Feng's eyes also fell on the sutra pillar, and a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. BRBR, he could feel that there was an extremely ancient power contained in the sutra pillar. BRBR, although that power was restricted and sealed, but there is still a trace of it, which makes people's hearts palpitate. BRBR, this inheritance is determined. BRBR, the two people approached the sutra pillar and stopped 3 feet away from it. BRBR, the colorful Buddha flames on the sutra pillar suddenly surged. The flames shot up several feet high and enveloped the entire sutra building. BRBR, the Sanskrit words were peeled off from the sutra building, turning into golden runes, and finally condensed into lines of text, which were suspended in front of the two people. BRBR, that was the 10,000 Buddhas Prison Suppression Sutra. The inheritance rules require you to pass 3 tests before you can inherit them. BRBR, Chu Feng narrowed his eyes slightly, and then murmured. BRBR, the first test is the heart calamity. You need to face your deepest obsessions and inner demons, and not be swallowed up by desires. BRBR, the heart calamity is automatically triggered by the sutra pillar, and will transform into the most realistic illusion based on the inner world of the person who enters the barrier. BRBR, only those with a stable Taoist heart and no distracting thoughts can pass. BRBR, his eyes moved slightly and continued to recite the Tao. BRBR, the second test is the Tao seal, which requires one's own soul to inherit the imprint of the true meaning of 10,000 Buddhas. BRBR, the sutra pillar will condense the core meaning of the 10,000 Buddhas sutra to suppress prison into a Buddhist seal, which will be directly imprinted on the soul of the person who enters the barrier. BRBR, the soul is not strong enough, and will be impacted by the Buddha's power at the moment of the imprint. The soul will be injured in the least, and the body will explode and die in the worst case. BRBR, just these 2 tests, let Myachan master. She was determined to give up. BRBR, although Chu Feng had resolved her inner demon before, BRBR, but she knew very well that a crack had already appeared in her heart. BRBR. And after being collided by Chu Feng in the illusion, the crack could no longer be healed. Or if she is allowed to undergo these 3 tests, she may not be able to pass the first concern. BRBR, Chu Feng does not know what Venerable Myachan is thinking. His eyes fall on the 3rd test. BRBR, the 3rd fate method needs to be recognized by the ancient Buddha bones in the temple. The Buddha bones are hidden deep in the scriptures and are the ancients who created the 10,000 Buddhas suppressing prison sutra. The relics of great power. BRBR, those who are not practicing Buddhism and have great perseverance will not be recognized by it. BRBR, after reading the rules, Master Myachan frowned. BRBR, each of these 3 tests is more dangerous than the last. Are you sure you want to try it? BRBR, the corners of Chu Feng's mouth raised slightly, revealing a faint smile. BRBR, you have come, how can you come back empty-handed? BRBR, he stepped forward, sat down cross-legged in front of the sutra pillar, and closed his eyes. BRBR, the next moment, the calamity of the heart came. BRBR, in the depths of Chu Feng's soul, countless images flashed rapidly. BRBR, he saw himself in his previous life standing at the pinnacle of the fairy world, overlooking all living beings. BRBR, Empress Shi Huang's own hands pushing him into the abyss. He saw the moment when his soul shattered, his consciousness dissipated, and he fell into endless darkness. BRBR, that was his deepest obsession, revenge. BRBR, the hatred for Empress Shi Huang was burning in his heart. BRBR, at this moment, the power of the heart tribulation ignited the flame, letting it burn fiercely, almost swallowing up his reason. BRBR, but Chu Feng's mind was as stable as a rock, and those scenes flashed before his eyes, unable to stir up any waves in his heart. BRBR, in just a moment, the heart tribulation disappeared. BRBR then, the sutra pillar suddenly shook, and thousands of Sanskrit words were peeled off from it. It condensed into a huge golden Buddha seal in the sky. BRBR the Buddha seal was shaped like a lotus, with layers of petals, and each petal was engraved with fine Sanskrit characters. BRBR the Buddha seal rotated slowly, and then suddenly fell into the center of Chu Feng's eyebrows. BRBR at that moment, Chu Feng's body suddenly shook. An unimaginably majestic Buddha power surged into his soul, like a giant dragon rushing through his body, trying to tear him into pieces. BRBR the Buddha power contained the true meaning of the 10,000 Buddhas Prison Suppression Sutra, which the soul of an ordinary monk could not bear. BRBR buzz, BRBR the heaven refining diagram condensed on top of Chu Feng's head and opened. He began to swallow and refine the Buddhist power. BRBR the Buddha's seal was imprinted on Chu Feng's soul bit by bit. He allowed the Sanskrit words to leave their mark on his soul, and his mind remained clear. BRBR after an unknown amount of time, the Buddha's seal was finally completely imprinted. BRBR Chu Feng's breathing gradually became calmer, and a new energy appeared in his soul. The power, which is the true meaning of the 10,000 Buddhas Prison Suppression Sutra, has been integrated with him. BRBR he exhaled a long breath, but his heart did not relax at all. BRBR Miao Zen master on the side clenched his fists, seeming to be even more nervous than Chu Feng. BRBR now. Having passed the 2 tests, her beautiful eyes were always staring at that handsome face, and she didn't dare to breathe. BRBR, you must succeed. BRBR as soon as she finished speaking, a golden light slowly emerged from the depths of the sutra building, and the Buddha's bones were suspended in the air. BRBR then, the Buddhist verses written on the Buddha's edge wall condensed behind Chu Feng. BRBR after the Buddha's verse appeared, the Buddha's bones suddenly made a crisp buzz, echoing in the secret space. BRBR all 3 tests have been passed, and the inheritance has begun. BRBR at that moment, the entire bronze palace erupted with billions of golden Buddha lights. BRBR the Buddha's light poured out from the prayer pillar, penetrated the sky of the secret realm, and shot straight into the sky. BRBR the beam of light was so dazzling that it stretched across the sky and the earth, dyeing the entire secret realm a golden color. BRBR in the pillar of light, countless phantoms of Buddha appeared. BRBR countless petals fall from the sky, each petal exudes golden light, and turns into a golden lotus when it falls on the ground. BRBR the golden lotuses are in full bloom, and their fragrance overflows, decorating the entire secret land into a pure land of Buddhism. BRBR the phantom of the ancient Buddha Emperor appeared in the clouds. The Buddha Emperor sat high in the 9th heaven, surrounded by colorful Buddha flames, with lowered eyebrows and lowered eyes, overlooking all living beings. BRBR in the secret realm, everyone raised their heads and looked at the golden beam of light that spanned the sky and the earth, their eyes full of horror. BRBR Chu Feng sat cross-legged under the prayer pillar, his whole body wrapped in the true meaning of 10,000 Buddhas. BRBR those golden Buddha lights poured into his body like flowing water, instilling all the methods of the 10,000 Buddhas Prison Suppressing Sutra into his sea of consciousness. BRBR at this moment, he directly entered the state of enlightenment, and his soul was completely integrated with the 10,000 Buddhas Sutra of Prison Suppression. BRBR not long after, 3 figures came galloping over the secret realm, following the vision. BRBR the leader is none other than Xianbei, the first of the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas. BRBR he was holding a 9-ring tin staff, followed by 2 old monks. They were the 2 Buddhas and elders from He ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas, and they were both in the Mahayana stage. BRBR the 3 of them landed in front of the bronze hall, looked through the open door, and saw Chu Feng sitting cross-legged under the sutra pillar at a glance. BRBR the benevolent expression on Xianbei's old face instantly shattered, replaced by a kind of greed that was difficult to conceal. BRBR that's the Sutra of 10,000 Buddhas to suppress the prison. BRBR the 10,000 Buddhas ancient cave has been looking for tens of thousands of years of ancient inheritance. It is said that the supreme technique can allow Buddhist disciples to ascend to heaven in one step. BRBR he originally thought that this inheritance was just a legend, but now it was right in front of him, and it was about to fall into the hands of an outsider. BRBR why can an outsider inherit the inheritance that should belong to them on the territory of his 10,000 Buddhas ancient cave? BRBR Xuanbei's spiritual power suddenly rioted, and the pressure of the 8th level of Mahayana swept across the entire place like a tide, making the gravel on the ground tremble slightly. BRBR other things in the secret realm, I can do without, but this inheritance must be left behind. BRBR the 2 Buddhas and elders behind him also showed enthusiasm. If this inheritance can be attributed to the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas, the strength of the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas will definitely increase several times, and it is even expected to become the #1 Buddhist sect in Zhongzhou. BRBR Xianbei suddenly raised his hand, holding it with his 5 fingers. The golden Buddhist power gathered crazily in his palm, turning into a huge Buddhist hand seal. BRBR, the big hand seal suddenly pushed out and blasted straight towards Chu Feng, who was in the process of enlightenment. BRBR, he wants to forcibly interrupt Chu Feng's enlightenment and snatch the inheritance. Venerable Miaochan's body flashed and stood in front of Chu Feng like a fleeting silhouette. BRBR, she raised her sleeves and waved, and a spiritual barrier condensed in the hall. BRBR boom, BRBR Xuanbei's Buddhist big handprint slammed hard on the spiritual power barrier, making a loud noise that shook the sky. The sound was like thunder exploding from the sky, causing the entire bronze palace to tremble violently. BRBR, two forces of the 8th level of the Mahayana stage collided together, creating a shockwave centered on the two of them and sweeping in all directions. BRBR, the space around the two people was violently distorted, revealing dark space cracks. BRBR Miaochan Venerable's body shook slightly, and the ground beneath her feet cracked into two deep grooves. Her feet sank deeply into the gravel, but she did not take a step back. BRBR, behind her is Chu Feng, who is enlightening, and she cannot retreat. BRBR Xuanbei's eyes narrowed, and then he stared at Master Miaozhen coldly. BRBR, does the donor really want to stop me? BRBR, a trace of disdain flashed in Master Miaochan's eyes, and then he said sarcastically. BRBR, the first of the dignified ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas has cultivated Buddhism into the belly of a dog. BRBR ha, BRBR Xianbei sneered, for the sake of the inheritance of Buddhism, let alone killing Master Miaochan, what if everyone in the secret realm was slaughtered? BRBR ba. BRBR Xuanbei's Buddhist big handprints were palm after palm. Wherever the wind of the palm passed, the void collapsed. BRBR, while the two men were fighting fiercely, the two Buddhas and elders of the 5th level of the Mahayana stage took action at the same time. BRBR, they walked around to both sides of Venerable Miaozhen, one on the left and the other on the right. They formed seals with their hands and recited a scripture. BRBR purifying world and soul transferring curse. BRBR, this is a forbidden met. Hot in the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas. This method can forcibly purify the soul of a monk with the true meaning of Buddhism, erase his original will, and convert him into a disciple of Buddhism. BRBR, those who are converted will lose themselves and completely become Buddhist believers. BRBR, a golden light condensed between the hands of the two Buddhas. BRBR, the light was soft and holy, but it carried a strange and creepy aura. BRBR, when Master Miaochan saw this, he was very anxious. BRBR, if Chu Feng is hit by this technique, not only will the inheritance of the 10,000 Buddhas Sutra of prison suppression be taken away, but he himself will also become a puppet of the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas. BRBR, old bald donkey, how dare you? BRBR, ignoring Xianbei's slap, Master Miaochan suddenly turned around, exposing his back to the wind of Xianbei's palm. BRBR, she gathered all her spiritual power and blocked the two light beams of the soul purifying curse. BRBR, the power of the purifying soul transferring curse was shattered by Master Miaochan, but at this moment, Xuanbei's palm force also hit Master Miaochan's back. BRBR bang, BRBR with a dull loud noise, Venerable Miaochan's body suddenly leaned forward, and a mouthful of blood spurted out from her mouth. BRBR, her clothes were torn on her back, revealing her fair skin underneath, with a deep purple palm print clearly printed on her skin. BRBR, at this moment, there was a rapid sound of breaking through the air in the distance. BRBR, several figures followed the vision and landed on the ruins in front of the bronze palace. The leader was Jin Yin. BRBR, behind him, followed a graceful figure. BRBR, that is a beautiful demon woman with a beautiful appearance, with a natural charm between her eyebrows. BRBR, her figure is plump and graceful, and her amazing proportions can be seen even through her dress. BRBR, this person is Jin Yan's protector, Foxiu. Ekin. BRBR master. BRBR Qingfan and Lingxi also rushed over. When they saw Master Miaochan vomiting blood, their faces instantly turned pale. BRBR, the two people exclaimed and flew towards Master Miaozhen. BRBR master, are you okay? BRBR Miaochan Venerable supported his injury and raised his hand to pull Qingfan and Lingxi behind him. BRBR, don't worry about me, you protect Chu Feng. BRBR Qingfan's delicate body trembled slightly, and she turned to look at Chu Feng, who was sitting cross-legged under the sutra pillar. BRBR, she didn't know what happened, but she could tell that the three old monks at the 10,000 Buddhas cave must be shameless. BRBR Xianbei took a step forward, and the pressure of the Buddha's power around him became more and more terrifying. BRBR Master Miaochan, Chu Feng is destined to be my Buddha. It would be better if you don't stop my Buddha from carrying forward the Dharma. BRBR then, the two Buddhas and elders behind him also agreed. BRBR, the 10,000 Buddhas Prison Suppression Sutra is the inheritance of the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas, and it should be inherited by my Buddhist disciples. BRBR, why do you risk your life for an unrelated person? BRBR, hearing this, Lingxi jumped up and pointed at the noses of the three people and cursed. BRBR, you bald donkeys are really shameless? BRBR, that's nice to say, we have invited the geniuses to enter the secret realm for trial, and now when they see others getting the inheritance, they want to take it away. BRBR haha, BRBR as he spoke, more and more people rushed over. BRBR it's just that everyone is just watching the show, but no one is willing to take action. BRBR both sides are the top forces in the western region. They can't afford to offend either side, so they can only help the two. BRBR Chiyang Fan looked at the injury on Venerable Miaochan's back, and his heart suddenly tightened. BRBR she gritted her teeth and turned to look at Jin Yan. BRBR fellow Taoist Jin Yan, I implore you to let senior who helped BRBR Chiyang Fan is willing to swear in the name of Fanning Jingzong that he will be rewarded generously in the future. BRBR she has never asked for help, but at this moment, for the sake of her master and Chu Feng, she is willing to put down all her dignity. BRBR looking at Chiyang Fan's appearance, Jin Yan felt an indescribable feeling of distress in his heart. BRBR he escorted Chiyang Fan all the way, but the other party was never willing to owe him a favor. BRBR now, the opportunity has finally come. BRBR Fox Xuechan took in all this, frowned slightly, and a trace of hesitation flashed in his eyes. BRBR she leaned closer to Jin Yan's ear and lowered her voice. BRBR Third Prince, after all, this is the territory of the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas. It is not appropriate for us demon clan to interfere, so as not to cause unnecessary trouble. BRBR however, from the first sight of Chiyang Fan, Jin Yan determined that this woman was his destined Taoist companion. BRBR the cold and holy temperament made him feel itchy and wanted to hold her in his arms immediately. BRBR but he also knew that Chiyang Fan seemed to only have eyes for the man named Chu Feng. BRBR that person is his biggest love rival. BRBR get rid of Chu Feng. BRBR this idea has already taken root in Jin Yan's heart. Now that he finally got the opportunity, how could he let it go so easily? BRBR the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas wants to snatch the inheritance. This is the perfect opportunity to kill someone with a borrowed knife. BRBR he turned his head to look at Fox Xuechan, with a solemn expression, he clasped his hands into fists and bowed deeply. BRBR I beg Aunt Chan to help them. BRBR that handsome face was full of righteousness and awe-inspiring glory, and there was no flaw in it. BRBR Fox Xuechan was slightly startled, a trace of surprise flash head in her eyes. BRBR she has followed Jin Yan for many years and knows the temper of the third prince well. BRBR he has always been proud, never willing to bow his head to ask for help, let alone take risks for irrelevant people. BRBR today he actually asked her to take action, and it was for a foreign man? BRBR but then, a subtle voice suddenly came into her ears, which was the sound transmission of Jin Yan's spiritual consciousness. BRBR Senior Aunt Chan, for a while you pretended to contain those two Buddhas and elders, and used the technique of burning the heart with red flames to arouse Xianbei's inner demon. I want Chu Feng to die. BRBR Fox Xuechan's pupils trembled, and the surprise on her face flashed across her face. BRBR she glanced sideways at Jin Yan, only to see that he still had a gentle smile on his face and nodded slightly towards Chiyang Fan, as if the message transmission just now had never happened. BRBR there was a wave of excitement in her heart. The third prince was trying to kill someone with a borrowed knife. BRBR okay. BRBR Chiyang Fan saw Fox Xuechan nodding, and the big stone hanging in his heart finally dropped a little. BRBR thank you, third prince, for your help. Chiyang Fan will never forget this kindness. BRBR Jin Yan looked at Chiyang Fan's expression of tears of gratitude, and felt an indescribable joy in his heart. BRBR the corners of his mouth were slightly raised, revealing a gentle and warm smile, as if he was really just a humble gentleman who was willing to help others. BRBR Fairy Chiyang Fan doesn't have to be like this. How can Jin Yan stand by and watch what happens to the fairy? BRBR his eyes moved away from Chiyang Fan and fell on Chu Feng, with a coldness flashing deep in his eyes. BRBR the love rival that made him feel like he was choking will soon disappear from this world. BRBR Fox Xuechan's body swayed and she stood beside Master Miaochan. BRBR with a flick of her wrist, a long W. Hip drew a silver arc in the air, blocking the path of the three people from the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas. BRBR Xianbei's face suddenly sank when he saw Fox Xuechan standing in front of him. BRBR this is a matter between the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas and the Fanning Jingzong. The demon clan is also going to intervene? BRBR Jin Yan smiled slightly, and his voice was neither humble nor arrogant. BRBR Master's words are serious. I just saw that Fairy Chiyang Fan was in trouble, so I just tried my best. BRBR as for the grudges between the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas and the Fanning pure sect, I have no intention of getting involved. BRBR Xianbei snorted coldly, and then said to the two Buddhas and elders beside him, BRBR Master Miaochan has been injured. You two just need to restrain the demon woman. BRBR. As soon as he finished speaking, he formed seals with his hands and struck the Vajra seal towards Master Miachan. BRBR. Master Miachan gritted his teeth, held on to his injuries, and took the blow forcefully. BRBR. The two fought instantly, and the power of the 8th level of Mahayana collided, making the world tremble. BRBR. On the other side, the two Buddhas were also entangled by Foxuachan. BRBR. The silver whip shadow was in the air. Arcs were drawn in the middle, sealing the path of the two. BRBR. During the fight, a red fireball formed on Fox Yuachan's fingertips. BRBR. While Xianbei and Miao Zhen were flawless. As he looked, she flicked her wrist and hit Xianbei's back with the red fireball. BRBR. Xianbei seemed to have noticed something, and scattered the fireball with a backhand without even looking back. BRBR. However, the flames of the red flame burning heart technique penetrated into his palm at this moment. BRBR. After dozens of moves, the power of the red flame burning heart in Xianbei's body finally exploded into flames. A torrent surged into the depths of his soul, stirring up all his greed and murderous thoughts that had been hidden for tens of thousands of years. BRBR. Xianbei's eyes were instantly red as blood, and a crazy light reflected in his pupils, as if there were two flames burned in his eyes. BRBR. The originally kind-hearted Buddhist monk now looked like a sure demon crawling out of hell. BRBR. Roar. BRBR. He let out a roar that didn't sound like a human voice, which made the whole valley tremble. BRBR. Then his moves suddenly lost their control and became extremely violent. BRBR. A huge black palm print hit the heart of Venerable Miao Zhen hard. BRBR. Venerable Miao Zhen was already at the end of his strength, and could only barely raise his hands to form a barrier in front of him. BRBR. But that barrier was as fragile as paper in front of the 10,000 Buddha's demon-destroying seal. BRBR. Bang. BRBR. The black palm print hit Master Miachan hard on the heart. Her body stiffened suddenly and her pupils suddenly dilated. BRBR. What was even more terrifying was that the red flame inner demon actually invaded her internal organs along with that palm. BRBR. In her mind, countless false thoughts of calamity began to breed. BRBR. Seeing this, everyone was in an uproar. BRBR. Master Xianbei actually went crazy. The power of this inner demon is too terrifying. Even the strong men at the 8th level of the Mahayana can't handle it. BRBR. Master Miachan was severely injured. Now Chu Feng has no one to protect him. Wanfo. The people in the ancient cave will definitely not let him go. BRBR. Look at the injuries on Venerable Miachan's body. It seems that the inner demons have invaded the internal organs. BRBR. Jin Yan stood in the crowd and had a panoramic view of it all. BRBR. A trace of pride flashed in his eyes, and the pride flashed away so fast that almost no one noticed it. BRBR. The plan was successful. BRBR. Xianbei went berserk, Master Miachan was seriously injured, and Ch. Yufeng lost his last refuge. BRBR. Next, he only needs to wait for Xianbei to finish Chu Feng, and then he can take the beauty back. BRBR. The furious Xianbei turned his head to look at Chu Feng. BRBR. There was only one thought left in his mind: kill him. BRBR. Death. BRBR. A huge beam of light blasted towards the top of Chu Feng's head. BRBR. No. BRBR. Qing Fan's face instantly turned pale, and before she even had time to think, her body moved before her consciousness. BRBR. She opened her arms and stood in front of Chu Feng without hesitation. BRBR. At this moment, there was no fear in her heart, only an indescribable relief. BRBR. At this critical moment, the golden light of 10,000 Buddhas around Chu Feng suddenly surged. BRBR. The colorful Buddhist flames on the prayer pillar suddenly shot up and turned into a flame barrier, lying in front of Chu Feng and Qing Fan. BRBR. Chu Feng suddenly opened his eyes, like a Vajra glaring with anger. The sky and the earth suddenly changed color, and dark clouds gathered over the valley. BRBR. Buddha's light that spanned the heaven and earth condensed in Chu Feng's palm. BRBR. Chu Feng pressed down with his palm, and the beam of light crashed down. BRBR. The people around who had not dispersed felt as if they were hit by an ancient sacred mountain just by the aftermath of the light beam. BRBR. Dozens of monks instantly vomited blood and flew out like kites with broken strings. BRBR. They looked at the beam of light that destroyed the world with horror on their faces, and couldn't help but scream in surprise. BRBR. Run quickly, if you don't run, everyone will die. BRBR. And Jin Yan, who was directly under the light beam, was already scared to death. BRBR. I save her. Don't kill me. BRBR. However, it was too late. BRBR. Chu Feng's murderous intention was determined, and there was only cold indifference in his eyes, with no intention of stopping at all. BRBR. This person dares to threaten Qing Fan with this, and deserves death. BRBR. Seeing that begging for mercy was useless, Jin Yan's eyes flashed with a trace of desperate madness. BRBR. Chu Feng, I will come back. BRBR. He took out a talisman, which was his treasured escape talisman. It was refined with a ray of space law power from the ancient power. This was his trump card to save his life. BRBR, open it for me. BRBR, in the void, a dark space crack spread out, emitting a heart-stopping suction force. BRBR, as long as he gets into this crack, he can teleport thousands of miles away in an instant. BRBR, however, at the moment when the spatial cracks just unfolded, the beam of light had already arrived. BRBR, rumble. BRBR, the terrifying light pillar hit the crack in space, causing the space to become chaotic immediately. BRBR, Jin Yen was strangled by the turbulent flow of space without even letting out a complete scream. BRBR, at this moment, Master Miaoza. And suddenly spurted out a mouthful of blood, and the blood was actually mixed with red flames. BRBR, Master. BRBR, Qing Fan and Lingxi exclaimed and quickly supported the crumbling Master Miachan. BRBR, the red demon inside Master Miaozan completely exploded, and the red demonic fire swept across her body in an instant, burning her cold and holy robe to black. BRBR, her originally clear eyes were swallowed red again at this moment. She was like a mad beast, tearing at her clothes desperately, and kept murmuring in confusion, BRBR, no, no. We can't, BRBR, I can't do anything that I'm sorry to Qing Fan, don't do this, please, let me go, BRBR, Qing Fan, I'm sorry, ah. BRBR, Qing Fan was confused and couldn't understand what the master meant by these words. BRBR, Master loves her so much, how could he do anything that is sorry to her? BRBR, impossible, absolutely impossible. BRBR, Master, no matter what you do, I will not blame you. BRBR, only Chu Feng stood aside, with a hint of guilt in his heart. BRBR, of course he knew what Master Miaozan was talking about. Those chaotic murmurs were clearly her and herself in the illusion. BRBR, this inner demon arose because of him and was deeply rooted in him. BRBR, we can't delay it any longer. BRBR, Chu Feng took a deep breath and suppressed the distracting thoughts in his heart. BRBR, he immediately mobilized the remaining power of the sutra pillar behind him, hoping to suppress the red flame inner demon in Master Miaozan's body. BRBR, he raised his hand and waved, and the sutra pillar erupted with the last ray of Buddha's light, turning into a huge golden palm and covering the Miaozen master. BRBR, however, he soon discovered that the situation was worse than he imagined. BRBR, the original Buddha power of Jingzhuan has been exhausted in the fight with Xianbei just now. When the golden palm touched the red demonic fire on the surface of Master Miachan, it was instantly bounc. Ed away. BRBR, damn it. BRBR, Chu Feng, what should I do? My master can't hold it anymore. BRBR, Qing Fan's eyes were red and he turned to look at Chu Feng, his voice filled with tears. BRBR, Chu Feng did not dare to delay, and immediately formed a seal and activated the 10,000 Buddhas suppressing prison sutra. The huge Buddha seal in the void suddenly collapsed. BRBR, then the golden light in the sky turned into several golden chains, like spiritual snakes, instantly wrapping around the delicate body of Master Miaozan. BRBR, the chain tightened, forcibly locking the red flame inner demon running around in her body. BRBR, suppress. BRBR, Miachan Venerable let out a painful groan and his body stiffened suddenly. BRBR, then, the redness in her eyes quickly faded, and a trace of clarity returned. BRBR, she was breathing heavily, looking at Qing Fan and Chu Feng in front of her with distracted eyes. BRBR, Qing Fan, what's wrong with me? BRBR, Master, you're awake. BRBR, Qing Fan cried with joy and hugged Master Miachan tightly. BRBR, you just went crazy and scared me to death. BRBR, however, Chu Feng's brows did not relax. BRBR, the situation cannot last long at all. Once the Buddhist power of the sutra pillar is exhausted, the inner demon will only come back. BRBR, at that time, Master Miaozan will be completely reduced to the puppet of the inner demon. BRBR, Chu Feng, Master, BRBR, Qing Fan also noticed something was wrong, and the golden chain was cracking bit by bit. BRBR, Chu Feng took a deep breath and then looked at the Buddha bones above the prayer flags behind him. BRBR, Senior, I'm offended. BRBR, as soon as he finished speaking, he directly operated the heaven refining diagram and squeezed the power from the Buddha's bones. BRBR, the Buddha's bones shattered directly, and the majestic Buddha power condensed into a golden barrier. BRBR, within the golden barrier, the atmosphere was so oppressive that it made people breathless. BRBR, although the demonic fire in Master Miaozan was temporarily suppressed by the golden chain, the aura in her body was still violent. BRBR, the red flame inner demon was like an imprisoned ferocious beast, rampaging through her meridians, ready to break out of the cage at any time. BRBR, her originally cold eyes were now bloodshot. BRBR, looking at Chu Feng walking in front of her, a trace of determination flashed in her eyes. BRBR, Chu Feng, kill me immediately. BRBR, the inner demon in my body will soon be uncontrollable. I can't hurt you, let alone Qing Fan. BRBR, as the head of the Fanning Jing sect, she has cultivated impurity all her life, and never thought that she would end up like this. BRBR. Chu Feng looked at her decisive look and felt a slight movement in his heart. BRBR. But before he could speak, Master Miaozen spoke again. BRBR. Let's do it, while I still have sense. BRBR. Chu Feng walked up to Venerable Miachon and caressed her face. BRBR. I have a way to save you. BRBR. Miachon Master suddenly opened his eyes and looked at him in disbelief. BRBR. Really? BRBR. Chu Feng nodded with a solemn expression. BRBR. However, you have to endure some hardships. BRBR. I can endure any hardships. Master Miachon agreed without hesitation. As long as you can get rid of this inner demon, I can do anything you want. BRBR. Chu Feng looked at her appearance and sighed in his heart. BRBR. There is a 9th grade elixir sealed in my dantian, called Wu Devouring Tribulation Pill. This elixir can break the red flame inner demon in your body. BRBR. Wu Devouring Tribulation Pill? BRBR. Miaozen murmured to himself, with a trace of doubt flashing in his eyes. BRBR. Then, a flash of lightning flashed in her mind, and a feeling of uneasiness suddenly arose in her heart. BRBR. No. Don't. BRBR. Miachon Master shook his head violently and said firmly. BRBR. I will. D rather die than do anything that would be disrespectful to Qing Fan again. Ugh. BRBR. After a stick of incense. BRBR. Miachon Venerable groaned and his body trembled suddenly. BRBR. The Wu Devouring Tribulation Pill melted in her mouth, turning into a warm liquid that poured into her body. BRBR. Then, the liquid medicine turned into a warm current, sweeping through her body in an instant. BRBR. BRBR. A thunderous sound came out of Venerable Miaozen's body. As Qi Yan's inner demons dissipated, the cracks in her Taoist base began to repair quickly under the moistening of the medicinal liquid. BRBR. The moment the Qi Yan inner demon completely dissipated, a crisp sound exploded in the body of Master Miaozen. BRBR. The original bottleneck of the 8th level of the Mahayana period was shattered at this moment. BRBR. Her aura suddenly surged, and she instantly reached the 9th level of the Mahayana stage. BRBR. A powerful coercion emanated from her body, causing the golden chains around her to tremble slightly, and then shattered. BRBR. At this moment, the beautiful eyes of Master Miaozen have completely returned to their coldness. BRBR. Only her cheeks were strangely crimson and slightly sore. BRBR. She was breathing heavily, her eyes blurred, as if she had just experienced a life and death battle. BRBR. I broke through? BRBR. Feeling the power in her body, she subconsciously looked at Chu Feng. BRBR. However, the moment she looked into Chu Feng's eyes, she immediately looked away. BRBR. The 9th level of the Mahayana stage. Chu Feng raised his chin and forced her to look at him. Congratulations. BRBR. Miachon Venerable lowered his eyes slightly and then stood up. BRBR. She moved her body, and the pain in her knees disappeared instantly. BRBR. Thank you, Chu Feng. BRBR. If it weren't for Chu Feng, she would have been devoured by her inner demons and become a demon puppet. BRBR. Chu Feng came close to her ear and whispered. BRBR. How are you going to repay me for saving my life? BRBR. Hearing this, Master Miaozen's cheeks turned red again. BRBR. She thought of the scene just now, and a complex emotion suddenly surged in her heart. BRBR. Let's go, Qing Fan is still waiting outside. BRBR. Hearing this, Chu Feng did not continue to ask any more questions, but just waved his hand and removed the golden barrier. BRBR. The barrier slowly dissipated, and the two figures were revealed. BRBR. Outside the barrier, Qing Fan and Lingxi were waiting anxiously. BRBR. Seeing the two people walking out safely, Qing Fan hurriedly greeted them. BRBR. Master. Are you okay? BRBR. Qing Fan looked at Master Miachon up and down, his eyes full of concern. BRBR. Chu Feng felt refreshed, but Master Miachon's cheeks were red, his eyes were evasive, and he did not dare to look into Qing Fan's eyes with a guilty conscience. BRBR. She lowered her head and her voice was weak. BRBR. I'm fine. BRBR. Lingxi hurriedly ran forward, and just as she was about to ask, she felt the surge of cultivation on the master's body, and her eyes widened instantly. BRBR. Master. Your cultivation level has broken through to the 9th level of the Mahayana stage. BRBR. Master was still at the 8th level of the Mahayana stage before. How can you go in and not only relieve your inner demons, but also directly break through? BRBR. This is incredible. BRBR. After being shocked, Lingxi tilted her head again, moved closer with curiosity, and stared at the face of Master Miachon. BRBR. But Master, why are your lips swollen? Was it bitten by something just now? BRBR. As soon as these words came out, Master Miachon's face was so red that he was almost bleeding. BRBR. She subconsciously raised her hand to cover her lips, and turned her face away more and more guiltily, unable to even utter a complete sentence. BRBR Chiyang Fan also noticed something strange about his master, and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. BRBR Master, why is your face so red? Do you feel uncomfortable somewhere else in your body? BRBR Master Miachan stammered, his eyes wandering. BRBR I'm fine, just a little hot. Those light blades were all crystal white, with edges as sharp as knives. They exuded a sharp and cold aura. Each one contained terrifying power that could kill a strong man in the early stages of the Mahayana. BRBR The blades of light stretched across the sky, densely packed, covering the sky and the sun, dyeing the entire sky silvery white. BRBR The glow of rays tore through the clouds, and a sharp sound of breaking through the sky resounded between heaven and earth. BRBR The vision was shocking, the wind and clouds changed color, even the distant mountain peaks trembled in the aftermath of the light blade, and gravel rolled down. BRBR The blades of light poured down like a torrential rain, sweeping across the entire place. BRBR At that moment, there was only a dazzling white light between heaven and earth, and the overwhelming light blade. BRBR All the elders in the 10,000 Buddha's ancient cave had no time to react, or even let out a scream before they were drowned by the light blade. BRBR Those light blades accurately avoided their vital points, but cut on their arms, legs, feet, and chests mercilessly. BRBR Each light blade carries a devastating power, easily tearing apart their body-protecting Buddha light and smashing their body-protecting magic weapons. Blood splashes everywhere and pieces of flesh fly everywhere. BRBR Several Buddhas and elders were covered in blood, their meridians were severed, and they fell to the ground with severe injuries. BRBR Their golden cassocks were cut to pieces by the light blade, revealing the blood-stained skin inside. BRBR Everyone dared not say anything and ran away in a hurry. BRBR However, after escaping thousands of miles away, they stopped. BRBR Several Buddhas and elders who were slightly injured gathered together, panting and pale, but their eyes were still staring in the direction of the Guishu platform, their eyes full of unwillingness. BRBR They leaned against the bold. Breathing heavily. BRBR Just give up like this, that is the supreme treasure. BRBR What can we do if we don't give up? Venerable Miachan is already at the 9th level of the Mahayana, and we are no match for her at all. BRBR But she alone can never open that restriction. The 10,000 Buddha's soul locking forbidden is an ancient Buddha. The Emperor personally declared it, and only recognized the original inheritance of the Buddha. Yes, no matter how high she is, she can't break it by force. BRBR We will guard here, maybe there is a chance. BRBR Xianbei was supported by 2 disciples, his face was as pale as paper, and his breath was weak. BRBR He listened to the discussions of the Buddhas and elders, feeling a little uneasy in his heart. BRBR Because he is the only one who knows that Chu Feng has obtained the inheritance of the 10,000 Buddha's Sutra of prison suppression, and is very likely to be able to open that restriction. BRBR Outside the Guishu platform, Chu Feng, Master Miachan, Chiyang Fan, and Ling Tide stood in front of the ban. BRBR Chu Feng took a step forward and his eyes fell on the golden restriction. BRBR On the restricted surface, the 9-layer ring array is still slowly rotating. BRBR The cracks left by the combined attack of the 10,000 Buddha's ancient cave just now have healed on their own, as if they had never existed. BRBR He raised his right hand, and a ray of golden Buddha light condensed on his fingertips. BRBR That is the original Buddhist power of the 10,000 Buddhas suppressing prison sutra, with the aura of the ancient Buddha Emperor. BRBR His fingertips moved gently in the void, and fine Sanskrit characters flew out from his fingertips, like golden butterflies, dancing in the void, and then slowly blended into the cracks of the restriction. BRBR The restriction suddenly trembled, and the 9-layer ring array opened one by one, like a blooming gold. And lotus. From the outermost layer to the innermost layer, it separated to both sides in order, revealing a golden passage in the middle. BRBR The 10,000 Buddhas locking spiritual imprisonment felt the aura of the authentic Buddha Emperor's inheritance and automatically unlocked it. BRBR The golden light slowly dissipated, and the inner space of Guishu Terrace was completely opened. BRBR At the end of the passage is a deep and quiet space, with a faintly richer Buddhist energy pouring out from it, making people feel peaceful. BRBR Chu Feng retracted his hand, turned to look at the 3 people behind him, and raised the corners of his mouth slightly. BRBR Let's go. BRBR Miachan Venerable, Chiyang Fan, and Lingxi looked at each other and hurriedly followed. BRBR The figures of the 4 people were shrouded in golden light and disappeared into the passage. BRBR The moment you step into the forbidden area, a strong Buddhist aura hits your face, refreshing your spirit. BRBR The spiritual energy here is many times richer than that of the outside world. After taking one breath, you can feel that the spiritual energy in your body has become a little more active. BRBR The internal space of Giksutai is much larger than it looks from the outside. BRBR In the center of the space is a circular stone platform. On the stone platform, a withered skeleton sits cross-legged. BRBR, that is the remains of the ancient Buddha Emperor, the body of the Emperor. BRBR. Chu Feng stepped forward and his eyes fell on the relic suspended in the dantian of the withered bones. BRBR. The relic is round and emitting golden light. BRBR. He took a deep breath and raised his hand towards the relic. BRBR. The moment the fingertips touched the relic, a warm touch came, as if holding a ball of warm jade. BRBR. But immediately afterwards, a sudden change occurred. BRBR. The relic suddenly burst out with a burst of bright light. The light was so dazzling and it instantly illuminated the entire interior space of the Guishu platform. BRBR. Chu Feng's pupils suddenly shrank, and he wanted to withdraw his hand, but found that he could not move at all. BRBR. A golden stream of light shot out from the relic and submerged into Chu Feng's sea of consciousness. BRBR. Chu Feng's body suddenly stiffened, and he stood motionless, as if he had been cast a restraining spell. BRBR. His brows frowned, and the aura around him began to become disordered, as if he was suffering some huge impact. BRBR. Chu Feng. BRBR. Chiyang Fan exclaimed, raised his foot and was about to rush forward, but was held back by Master Miachan. BRBR. Don't move. BRBR. Miachan Master's eyes were fixed on Chu Feng, his eyes full of horror. BRBR. That is the remnant soul of the Buddha Emperor. Hidden in the relics is the remnant soul of the ancient Buddha Emperor. He wants to seize Chu Feng's body. BRBR. Ling Tide's face turned as pale as a sheet of paper in an instant and she lost her voice. BRBR. Seize the body? Then Chu Feng, isn't it? BRBR. She didn't dare to say any more, her little hands tightly covered her mouth, and her eyes instantly turned red. BRBR. Chiyang Fan's delicate body trembled violently, and his voice trembled. BRBR. Master, what should we do? How should we help him? BRBR. The remnant soul of the Buddha Emperor. That is the remnant soul of the ancient Buddha Emperor. How could Chu Feng be his opponent? BRBR. Miachan Venerable's heart also sank to the bottom. She naturally knew the horror of seizing a body. BRBR. Once Chu Feng's soul is swallowed by the remnant soul of the Buddha Emperor, his body will become the container for the Buddha Emperor's rebirth, and Chu Feng will completely disappear from the world. BRBR. She gritted her teeth, a trace of determination flashed in her eyes. BRBR. I'll go in and help him. BRBR. Miao Zen Master Qing Xian Dream Entering Technique. This technique can use the soul to leave the body and enter the sea of consciousness of others. BRBR. You guys stay outside and no one is allowed to come near. BRBR. As soon as she finished speaking, a light silver light emerged from her eyebrows, turned into a thin trace of light, and disappeared into Chu Feng's eyebrows. BRBR. BRBR. In Chu Feng's sea of consciousness. BRBR. Over the sea of consciousness, there is a shadow of a sutra pillar suspended, which is the imprint of the 10,000 Buddhas suppressing prison sutra. BRBR. In the center of the sea of consciousness, two figures were facing each other. BRBR. Besides Chu Feng's soul, the other one is the shadow of an old man, wearing a cassock and with white beard and eyebrows. It is the remnant soul of the ancient Buddha Emperor. BRBR. Although his figure is illusory, it exudes a suffocating sense of oppression. BRBR. Emperor Buddha looked at Chu Feng and showed a ferocious smile. BRBR. Finally, someone finally came. I have waited for who knows how long, and finally I got a living person. BRBR. He was pacing back and forth in the void, waving his hands, like a prisoner who had been imprisoned for too long and finally saw a living person, and kept talking. BRBR. Do you know how I have lived these years? BRBR. Fortunately you are here. BRBR. Not only are you here, you have also inherited the 10,000 Buddhas suppression of prison sutra that I left behind, and you also have such a perfect body. BRBR. This is God's will, God's will. BRBR. At this moment, Chu Feng finally figured out one thing. BRBR. Did you do the sinking of the secret realm? BRBR. Emperor Buddha chuckled lightly and then gently stroked his beard. BRBR. Yes, I deliberately caused the secret realm to collapse to bring you in. The scripture inheritance I left behind is also for this moment. BRBR. Only those who inherit my skills can become my target for seizing the body. BRBR. Your cultivation talent is definitely the best among the younger generation, better than me when I was young. BRBR. This kind of body is the best container for my rebirth. BRBR. Chu Feng stood there with a calm expression, and there was even a faint smile on the corner of his mouth, as if he was watching a clown's performance. BRBR. The remnant soul of the Buddha Emperor had laughed enough, and finally stopped his smile, with a flash of light in his eyes. Killing intent. BRBR. He raised his hand, and the light in the sea of consciousness surged, turning into a huge golden handprint, and slapped it towards Chu Feng's body. BRBR. Okay, you can go on your way now, I will be the master of this body from now on. BRBR. Unexpectedly, Chu Feng stood there and suddenly said, BRBR. Thank you for your inheritance. BRBR. Before he finished speaking, the heaven refining diagram suddenly unfolded, covering the entire sea of consciousness in an instant. BRBR. The golden handprint, in front of the heaven refining diagram, was like a mud cow entering the sea, and was swallowed up in an instant without causing even a trace of waves. BRBR. The pupils of the Buddha Emperor's remnant soul trembled, and the pride on his face instantly shattered. BRBR. Refining. The heaven refining diagram. How could you have the heaven refining diagram? BRBR. With a thought in Chu Feng's mind, the heaven refining diagram was like a black hole, beginning to swallow up the soul power of the Buddha Emperor. BRBR. The Buddha Emperor's figure quickly became illusory under the devouring power, and the power of the soul was like a flood that broke the embankment, pouring into the heaven refining diagram continuously. BRBR. I am willing to serve you as my master. Don't swallow me. BRBR. The Buddha Emperor never expected that after waiting for so many years, he would be kicked directly on the steel plate. BRBR. His figure became lighter and lighter, from translucent to almost invisible, as if he would disappear at any time. BRBR. No. BRBR. In just a moment, the Buddha Emperor's remaining soul was completely swallowed up by the heaven refining diagram, and turned into the purest form. The power of the soul merged into Chu Feng's body. BRBR. Chu Feng's soul suddenly shook, and an unprecedented sense of fulfillment surged into his heart. BRBR. The power of his soul surged, and his consciousness became clearer. BRBR. At this time, a light silver light returned. Coming from the edge of the sea of consciousness, it condensed into a slender figure. BRBR. Seeing Chu Feng standing there unharmed, the tense nerves in her eyes instantly relaxed. BRBR. Her eyes instantly turned red, and tears welled up in her eyes. BRBR. Then, she hugged Chu Feng, tightly wrapped her arms around his waist, and buried his face. BRBR. You scared me to death. I thought I would never see you again. BRBR. Chu Feng was slightly startled, feeling the soft and warm body in his arms, and felt a warmth in his heart. BRBR. He lowered his head slightly and gently held up her chin with one hand. BRBR. The red eyes were full of tears. BRBR. The next moment, Chu Feng turned his head and kissed her lips. BRBR. Miachan Venerable's delicate body stiffened suddenly, and his red eyes widened instantly. BRBR. She subconsciously wanted to push him away and put her hands on his chest, but found that she couldn't use the strength at all. BRBR. Don't be like this. Chiyang Fan is still watching from outside. Beyond the sea of consciousness, BRBR. Chiyang Fan and Lingxi stood there, staring closely at the bodies of Chu Feng and Master Miachan. BRBR. The two of them remained motionless, like two sculptures. BRBR. Chu Feng closed his eyes tightly, his brows relaxed, and there was even a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. BRBR. Miachan Venerable made a seal with his hands and his face was calm, but her cheeks were getting redder and redder. BRBR. Lingxi looked at the increasingly red cheeks of Master Miachan, and felt more and more worried in her heart. She clutched the skirt of her clothes with her little hands, and her voice was full of anxiety. BRBR. Senior sister, why is Master's face getting redder and redder? BRBR. Is there something wrong? Will she be okay? BRBR. Chiyang Fan gritted his teeth and whispered. BRBR. It should be fine. There will be no problem with Master's technique, and she will definitely be able to help Chu Feng. BRBR. Miachan Venerable's voice was vague and unclear, overflowing from the lips of the two people, with a kind of coquettish annoyance that wanted to resist but welcome. BRBR. She put her hands on his chest, trying to push him away, but the force was so light that it had no effect at all. BRBR. Chu Feng let go of her lips, pressed his forehead against hers, and breathed together. BRBR. This is in my sea of consciousness, and I am the master here. BRBR. He leaned close to her ear, his lips almost touching her auricle, and exhaled a breath of hot breath. BRBR. Here, you only belong to me. BRBR. Miao Zhen Venerable's delicate body trembled again, and the throbbing that spread from the ears to the whole body made her whole body soften. BRBR. She is about to ascend. Once she ascends to the fairy world, she will be separated from Chu Feng by heaven and earth. BRBR. Will he still remember her after she ascends? BRBR. Thinking of this, a strong sourness surged in her heart, and sourness turned into an impulse. BRBR. Her hands changed from pressing against his chest to wrapping around his neck, her fingertips sinking into his hair. BRBR. Miachan Venerable's lips came close to Chu Feng's ear, with a longing that had been suppressed for a long time. BRBR. Master. BRBR. The golden light surged like a tide, dyeing the entire space into a blur of color. BRBR. The phantom of the sutra building slowly rotates over the sea of consciousness, Sanskrit words are flowing, and Sanskrit sounds are humming, but it cannot cover up the charming sound of the two entangled figures. BRBR. The clothes of Master Miaozhen have long been scattered. The plain white dress was taken off at some point and fell on the ground of the sea of consciousness, like a withered white lotus. BRBR. The red belly band is flying in the air, like a light red leaf. BRBR. Her skin showed a radiant luster in the state of ecstasy, like fine mutton fat jade, delicate and smooth. BRBR the light in the sea of consciousness became stronger and stronger, shrouding the two figures in it. BRBR Miachan Venerable's delicate body suddenly arched, like a fully drawn bow, and every inch of his skin was trembling. BRBR an hour later. BRBR Master Miachan leaned in Chu Feng's arms and had no strength to even lift his fingers. BRBR Chu Feng's hand slid down and hugged her plump legs. BRBR I have an enemy in the upper realm. If you meet her after ascension, help me kill her. BRBR upper realm? BRBR Master Miachan trembled suddenly, and his beautiful eyes with lingering charm suddenly widened. BRBR she looked at Chu Feng in disbelief, and her voice changed. BRBR you actually come from the upper world? BRBR she had long known that Chu Feng had the destiny of being a great emperor and was destined to reach the pinnacle and become the top being in the world. BRBR but she never thought that the young man in front of her was not a mortal Ankh at all. BRBR Chu Feng did not directly respond to her question, but continued. BRBR the name of that person is Empress Shihuang. However, she has now probably completed the rebirth with the help of the blood of the same clan, and is no longer the empress of the upper world. BRBR you have to be careful, although her cultivation has declined, she is still cunning and vicious. BRBR who are you? BRBR Master Miachan looked at Chu Feng, and there was an indescribable shock in his heart. BRBR the secret in this man seems to be far more earth-shattering than she imagined. BRBR Chu Feng lowered his head and raised a slight smile on his lips. BRBR if you want to know the answer, just fly to the fairy world and find it yourself. BRBR before Master Miachan finished speaking, he couldn't help but exclaimed. BRBR no more, BRBR thousands of miles away in the mountains and forests, Xianbei and several Buddhas and elders held their breath and hid, their eyes fixed on the direction of the 10,000 Buddhas returning to the ruins. BRBR they waited for a full hour, but there was still no movement at the Guishu platform. BRBR everyone could not hold back, their eyes were full of suspicion. BRBR the restriction was placed by the ancient Buddha Emperor himself, how can it be broken so easily? BRBR at this moment, Venerable Miachan and Chu Feng must have exhausted their energy in order to break the restriction, and they are very anxious. BRBR wait a minute, if they really have an accident, this Buddha Emperor's relic will still be in our possession after all. BRBR although everyone was itchy and wanted to go forward to investigate, they were afraid of the strength of the 9th level of Mahayana Master Miachan and did not dare to act rashly. BRBR Xianbei stood at the front of the crowd, staring sinisterly in the direction of the Guishu platform, making calculations in his mind. BRBR wait a not. Her quarter of an hour. If there is still no movement, we will go up and have a look. BRBR a quarter of an hour passed, and the Guishu terrace was still dead. BRBR Xianbei waved his hand and lowered his voice. BRBR let's go. BRBR he took the lead and turned into a golden stream of light, flying towards the Guishu platform. BRBR all the Buddhas and elders looked at each other and quickly followed. BRBR they quietly approached the Guishu terrace and came outside the restriction. BRBR when they saw Chu Feng and Master Miachan with their eyes closed, motionless, like two sculptures, everyone was instantly overjoyed. BRBR sure enough, they must have suffered the backlash of the ancient prohibition when they broke the prohibition, and now their souls are trapped. BRBR God is really helping us. Without the obstruction of Master Miachan, the Buddha Emperor's relics are at our fingertips. BRBR so what about the 9th level of the Mahayana, it's not like he fell under the ancient restriction. BRBR then what Chu Feng said about inheriting the Buddha Emperor's inheritance is nothing more than that. The restriction did not recognize him at all, but turned back on him. BRBR seeing this, Qing Fan and Ling Tide immediately stood in front of Chu Feng and Master Miachan. BRBR the two of them opened their arms like hens guarding their young, protecting the two motionless figures behind them. BRBR please retreat quickly. My master is only temporarily in trance. If she is angered, you will not be able to run away by then. BRBR her gaze swept across the people in the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas, and there was no trace of fear in her eyes. BRBR Lingxi also nodded, her voice crisp but with a hint of trembling. BRBR that's right. My master is a strong man of the 9th level of the Mahayana. If you dare to come forward, I will ask her to slap you all to death. BRBR hearing this, everyone in the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas not only showed no fear, but also made ridicule. BRBR enter meditation, I think she was turned into a living dead by the restriction. If she could really wake up, she would have slapped her over with a palm. Why do you two little girls need to bluff here? BRBR what about the 9th level of the Mahayana? Under the restriction, even if you don't die, you will have to shed your skin. Are you afraid that you can't even stand still? BRBR two little girls who are still young, dare to yell in front of us? BRBR the Buddha with the name Kongji immediately stepped forward, his monk's robes were hunting, and the Buddha's light surged around him, and the pressure of the fifth level of the Mahayana swept out like a tide. BRBR his gaze crossed Qing Fan and Lingxi and fell on the motionless figure of Master Miaozhen. BRBR, today I want to see if she can wake up and stop me. BRBR before he finished speaking, Kongji gathered all the Buddha power in his body. BRBR the golden Buddha light surged crazily in his palm and turned into a Buddha blade. BRBR the Buddha's blade was about 10 feet long, crossing the void and heading straight towards Master Miaozhen. BRBR if he can kill a strong man in the 9th level of the Mahayana stage, he can brag for a lifetime. BRBR Qing Fan was shocked. She had no time to think about it, or even whether she could block the blow. Her body moved before her consciousness. BRBR she immediately used her spiritual power to condense a spiritual barrier. BRBR unfortunately, this barrier is like a layer of window paper in the face of the Mahayana attack. BRBR bang. BRBR the Buddha blade's powerful Gang Chi alone has directly shattered the barrier condensed by Qing Fan. BRBR just when the Buddha's blade was about to fall on Qing Fan, Venerable Miaozhen, who had been keeping his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. BRBR in those beautiful eyes, a cold light suddenly appeared, with a murderous intention. That made people's souls tremble. BRBR she just raised her hands lightly and waved her slender fingers gently in the void. BRBR a jade technique blasted out like a tsunami, instantly engulfing Kongji's Buddha blade. BRBR the Buddha's blade instantly shattered and turned into golden light spots that filled the sky and dissipated. BRBR the remaining power of the jade technique had not subsided, and it hit the elder Kongji Buddha hard. BRBR bang, BRBR the loud noise shook the sky, and the entire Guishu platform was shaking slightly. BRBR Kongji didn't even let out a scream, but his body was blown to pieces and turned into a scarlet blood mist, slowly floating in the void. BRBR the powerful Buddhist master of the 5th level of the Mahayana, under the palm of Venerable Miaozhen, both body and soul were destroyed. BRBR everyone present at the 10,000 Buddha's ancient cave stood stunned for an instant, with horror written all over their faces. BRBR the faces that were still sarcastic and mocking just now froze one by one, with their mouths open wide enough to hold an egg. BRBR song, Kongji was killed instantly like this? BRBR one move, only one move. BRBR didn't she get backlash at all? BRBR Songji didn't even catch a single move, and we're going to die. BRBR Qing Fan looked at Master Miaozhen behind her. She thought that the palm would fall on her, but she didn't expect that the master would wake up at the most critical moment. BRBR at this moment, Venerable Miaozhen's soul completely returned to his physical body. BRBR the lingering feeling in the sea of consciousness for an hour is all reflected back to the physical body in an instant. BRBR her delicate body trembled suddenly, and a numbness spread from the top of her head to her toes, making her whole body feel as if she had been electrocuted. BRBR Master Miaozhen's body went limp. He could no longer support his body and collapsed directly to the ground. BRBR the spiritual power all over the body was a little chaotic, like a stirred lake, surging endlessly. BRBR seeing this, Lingxi and Qing Fan hurriedly stepped forward and supported her tightly, one on the left and the other on the right. BRBR Master, are you okay? BRBR Master Miaozhen's chest rose and fell violently, and the plump curse wrapped in his clothes rose and fell with it. BRBR she took a deep breath, trying to calm the restlessness in her body, and waved her hands, with a trembling voice that could not be concealed. BRBR it's okay, it's just, the soul has dissipated too much. BRBR when everyone in the ancient cave of 10,000 Buddhas saw this, their original fear dissipated in an instant, and they all gained confidence. BRBR Miaozhen Venerable's face was crimson and his aura was disordered. This was obviously a man possessed. BRBR seeing this, Xianbei's eyes flashed with a hint of sinisterness. BRBR don't be afraid, everyone, her forceful attack has already triggered the backlash of the ban. BRBR being seriously injured at this moment, we may not be able to kill all of us before our spiritual power is exhausted.